Howoo was a mediocre twink NPC who got devastated when a giant monster attacked their city. The twink NPC wanted a swift, easy death, but he was saved by a top gigachad hunk celebrity Yool, who also happened to be an Esper. Not long after, Yool moved to an apartment next to Howoo, who immediately activated his gay romcom fantasy. Along the way, Yool had developed an unusual desire to develop plot with the twinkledouche NPC. Would the love story between an NPC and a celebrity really be possible? Time to find out. It was a hot, sunny day in the city, where a twink salaryman NPC named Howoo was walking along with his fellow civilians. Okay guys, I'm telling you now, I'm going to mess up his name in this story. I'm not sure if it's Howoo, Howoo, or Howoo, so bear with me, but I'll do my best. Anyway, the twink NPC was sleepy, so he bought a coffee to wake himself up. While sipping his coffee, he realized that there was something else that he wanted to sip. Nonetheless, the twink civilian continued walking, realizing how ordinary his life was as an NPC. One day, despair spread like fire as a two-headed, ugly, disgusting monster attacked the city. Amidst the chaos, Espers who could fight monsters made their debut and guides who could control the Espers from going berserk. Upon the appearances of the Espers and guides, humanity fought the monster invaders. Human civilization had returned to what it used to be, but ordinary NPCs could no longer leave the city. Nonetheless, city life had gradually grown safer as the number of monsters declined. The Espers became popular figures in society, and they continued hunting monsters. Then, when peace was re-established, the majority of the people became useless NPCs. As a precaution, the Espers and guides were tracked in the city, where everyone was required to take a test. Due to their extraordinary powers, Espers were easily recognized, but the same could not be said of the guides. The number of guides was far less than the number of Espers, so they were automatically brought to the Bureau of Espers and Guide Management, no matter what. Being an Esper or a guide guaranteed a lifelong high-paying job, so many people wanted to be like them. However, as an ordinary civilian, the mediocre twink was simply on his way to his job as an average salaryman. He sipped his iced coffee and wondered how his day would be when suddenly, he noticed something massive flying above. Apparently, a winged monster passed over him, shocking him in that instant. The monster started raging on top of a building, when all of a sudden Rubble-kun decided to isekai him since Truck-kun was on a vacation. Howoo was stunned and his body trembled as he watched how it would end his life. As it got closer to him, he shouted for his dear life and closed his eyes. But deep inside, he was hoping to finally end his miserable life. Suddenly, a weird sound interrupted the tragedy, and the twink NPC dropped his iced coffee. As he slowly opened his eyes, there was a massive ice crystal in the surroundings, and a handsome gigachad with ocean eyes. At that moment, the miserable twink was surprised to finally see his knight in shining armor with a face card that could score 10s across the boards. The handsome gigachad looked at him with a smile, and soon enough he stepped towards him, ready to help him get up. He offered to escort him to a safer place, making him blush and thank him for his help. When their hands grabbed each other, a sudden electrifying sensation flowed over their body, making the Howoo suddenly feel sick. His body started quivering in front of the handsome gigachad, so he pulled him up for him to stand and held his other hand for support. As the handsome gigachad squeezed his small hand, Howoo told him not to worry because everything was fine, even though his face was telling the opposite. Howoo was slowly losing consciousness and could only watch his hero grow increasingly blurred. Moments later, the twink NPC lay on a couch, recalling how he woke up in a hospital and called his work to tell them he was taking a day off. Back at the present time, the miserable twink decided to take the opportunity to take a rest. Not long after, a sudden news flash was broadcast, with the reporter informing everyone about the monster that had recently attacked their city. That said, Howoo blushed again upon recalling the face of the handsome gigachad who saved him. The twink NPC could not help but compliment his hero's face card. Upon realizing that the Bureau posted information about their Espers, Howoo quickly tossed his pillow to check his hero's profile on his laptop. He browsed through the Espers' profiles and found the handsome gigachad's profile, discovering he was an S-class Esper named Yool. At that moment, Howoo realized that Yool was the first S-class Esper to ever appear in Korea, with his power manifested at an early age. As he grew older, his power grew stronger as well, and he became the captain of Esper Team 1, having the ability to control water and freeze it. Currently, he was the top G among the Espers in Korea, making the twink NPC realize that he was saved by the GOAT. Howoo wanted to thank him, but he knew to himself that the chances of seeing him were almost 0%, because he lived in a world of main characters while he was just a mere NPC. He mumbled his savior's name and felt some kind of connection with him that he couldn't explain. 2 months after the most recent monster attack, the company building where he worked was quickly restored with the help of some Espers. When he returned to his workplace, he noticed some empty seats and their workloads were passed on to him. A moment later, the twink salaryman slammed his body onto his bed, feeling so gloomy and tired from overworking. Howoo was so tired that he could not even go for a shower, but suddenly his doorbell started ringing and he was confused about who it was. The doorbell ringing continued, and it started to piss him off, so Howoo stood and angrily walked towards the door. However, he was stunned to see a man's broad chest on the screen of his front door cam. The NPC Twink was confused, so he clicked the voice message asking the person outside who he was. The hunk revealed he was his neighbor next door, revealing he had just moved that day, making him even more confused. Howoo then decided to open the door and saw a handsome gigachad right before his eyes, bringing a chocolate-flavored dessert. It was offered to him, and for some unknown reason, the hunk seemed familiar with Howoo. The Twink NPC realized it was Yool, so he immediately closed his door, then opened it again, awkwardly asking if he had just moved next door. The two engaged in a staring contest until Yool smiled at him and confirmed his question. He was about to pass the plate of rice cake when their fingers touched, and Howoo felt the same feeling as last time. Howoo looked at the rice cake, utterly confused from what just happened. Then the hunk told him to eat it while it's still hot. However, Howoo noticed that it was already cold, so the two awkwardly laughed at each other. Suddenly, the NPC Twink stopped laughing upon noticing that the rice cake began steaming. Howoo flinched from the sight of it, and the hunk told him it tasted good. Yool looked at the Twink NPC's eyes, making him blush immediately. The next day, Howoo was still thinking about the rice cake, thinking it tasted so good. Suddenly, someone caught his attention, and it was no other than his hunk neighbor. The Twink NPC couldn't help but stare at the handsome guy beside him, making the guy ask if he had something to say to him. Just then, Yool pointed out that the elevator door had already opened, so the two immediately entered it. Inside, Howoo awkwardly told him that he thought an Esper like him would not take an elevator, making Yool laugh at him. The gigachad hunk explained that if he simply jumped from the building, he might startle people living in it. When the elevator opened, Yool formally introduced himself to him, and Howoo did the same. However, the Twink NPC was surprised upon knowing that Yool already knew him. Later, they walked downstairs and exited the building, where Yool talked about visiting the hospital because he was to see someone, leading Howoo to ask if he knew a patient there. At that point, Howoo realized that Espers were like normal humans too. As they continued walking, Howoo giggled upon imagining Yool doing his clerical jobs. When they reached the subway, Howoo was shocked to see Yool suddenly disappear, so he looked back and saw Yool on the other side of the escalator. The Twink NPC looked at the gigachad hunk, who romantically wished him a safe trip to work. Moments later, Howoo was caught searching for Espers, making his Twink coworker Kim wonder if he was interested in them. He denied it, and his coworker told him that they could be considered celebrities. The two Twinks continued their conversation, and Howoo revealed he was searching for info about Yool. However, he noted that they were too private and info about them was limited. Apparently, the only information about Espers was too basic, and there's nothing more to find out about them because Espers and civilians were living in completely different worlds. Kim wondered why he was searching for the food that Espers liked, so he told him that he was just curious. Just then, he told Howoo that the Espers might like the same delicious food they enjoy. That said, the NPC Twink bought some sweets and put them on a plate. Then he went to Yool's place and knocked on his door, and when it slowly opened, Howoo started getting nervous. Suddenly, he saw Yool dressed in some typical cleaning outfit. The NPC Twink was flustered upon seeing him, and the gigachad hunk invited him to come inside, but he immediately refused to do so. Howoo did not want to bother his rest, so he only gave him the sweets and was ready to go. But Yool stopped him and asked him if he had eaten dinner already. He told him that he had not yet taken his dinner, so he told him that he might end up cooking too much, confusing the NPC Twink in the process. Then, just like that, Yool awkwardly invited Howoo to have dinner with him. Upon entering the hunk gigachad's place, the Twink NPC was surprised to see how clean it was, unlike his place, which was a total mess. Suddenly, Yool touched his face and Howoo felt the same sensation again. While rubbing his face, Yool awkwardly asked if touching him caused him pain, so Howoo asked if Espers have some kind of electricity running through them. He denied it, and the Twink NPC wondered why he asked if it hurt him. The gigachad hunk explained that they were much stronger than civilians, and he was struggling to control it sometimes. Yool then turned around, telling Howoo that the dinner was ready, so he silently looked at Yool. Soon enough, the Twink NPC chugged down the gigachad hunk's tasty meat down his throat. Then Howoo was surprised when Yool noticed they had the same taste in food. The gigachad hunk was delighted that the Twink NPC enjoyed his meat. Just then, Howoo noticed that Yool was getting a call, pissing him off in that instant. He quickly stood and told him that he had to go, but he did not allow Howoo to go because he wanted him to finish eating his meat. The Twink NPC refused to do that, but the gigachad hunk told him it was fine before grabbing his coat and jumping from the balcony. Yool then smiled at him and told Howoo that he would see him later. Howoo could only look at him as he jumped from the balcony like a gust of wind, leaving him alone in Yool's apartment. Later on, the Twink NPC was having a dream about him walking down a bright, magical space that he had been dreaming about since he was a kid. The place in his dream seemed very comfortable, and he remembers how the hand that touched him grew along with him. Suddenly, a seemingly hot guy called his name, and he suddenly woke up feeling something weird. A new day means another day of work for Howoo. when suddenly he noticed a present from Yool. He took the present and blushed as he looked at it, realizing the paper bag was filled with his favorite snacks. While looking at the present, Howoo thought of inviting Yool for a meal that they can share together. That said, he left the sticky note on Yool's door, which contained his invitation. Meanwhile, the Espers assembled, led by Yool, ready to fight the monsters invading the city. A massive spider monster was rampaging when suddenly Yool sliced it down and the blood that splattered smudged his face. Soon enough, a red-haired Esper joined him, and he created a flaming barrier to protect them from the monsters that surrounded them. Then another Esper that uses wind magic chimed in, telling him that their formation had fallen apart. Hearing that, Yool ordered everyone to gather around. The compatibility between an Esper and a guide was called sync rate, but Yool was not compatible with most guides because they could not handle his growing power. This made Yool feel frustrated because he also suffered from incompatible guiding. Apparently, the Bureau continued assigning guides to Yool, even last night when he was suddenly summoned. The head introduced a newly manifested guide to him, but he seemed unhappy about it. Despite that, he pretended to be receptive to the Bureau's effort to find him a guide, and he received guiding until his eyes turned black. That said, 20 guides had fainted from the strain coming from him. It turned out that whenever he used too much power, he had to receive painful guiding. Nonetheless, Yool did not hesitate to use his full power to finish all the monsters because he knew that Howoo would get out of work soon. Meanwhile, at work, the twink coworker noticed a bright aura from Howoo. Then he asked him if he had brought an umbrella, so he told him he did not because he didn't expect it to rain that day. That said, he invited him to go out for a drink, and the NPC twink agreed to do so. It's raining very heavily outside, and the two realized that even with an umbrella they would still get wet. All of a sudden, they noticed an Esper walking under the heavy rain, and people seemed to avoid him. Howoo realized that ever since Yool saved him, he often noticed Espers around them. Suddenly, a man began approaching them, and he called Howoo's name, shocking Kim in the process. It was no other than Yool, and he asked if Howoo's office was nearby, revealing he was about to call it a day. The twink NPC happily told him that he was about to have a drink with his coworker, who seemed to be trembling in fear. Kim nervously greeted him, and Yool greeted him back and introduced himself to him. He could not stop trembling at the presence of Yool, and he felt sad because people were usually afraid of them. Howoo noticed his mood changed, so he turned to Kim, who immediately canceled their drinking plans, before he quickly went away, leaving the two under the heavy rain. Yool wondered if he had ruined their dinner plans, which Howoo quickly denied. Unfortunately, neither of them brought an umbrella, so he was worried that both of them would get drenched in the rain. Hearing that, Yool removed his glove and swung his hand, activating his power, which caused the sky to clear up instantly. When the sun suddenly appeared, Howoo was so amazed at what he had just witnessed. Howoo asked Yool if he was the one behind it, so he smiled and told him that he should have done that sooner. Yool also used his magic to extract the rainwater from Howoo's clothes, making him feel amazed even more. The twink NPC noted that with his magic, he could stay dry like a desert in the rainy season, which made Yool laugh. Then the two went to the subway, and as usual, Yool did not follow him on the escalator. Realizing this, Howoo suddenly paused, turned back to Yool, and asked him if Espers were taking subways. Yool confirmed this, but explained that if he were to take it, people would be afraid to him. Howoo then asked Yool to meet him in the subway near their apartment, but realizing they could not go home together, Yool became sad. That said, Yool offered a more convenient way, which Howoo accepted. Just then, he grabbed Howoo's hand and pulled him towards him, shocking the twink NPC in the process. He lifted him like a princess and jumped in midair, making Howoo feel scared. However, Yool smiled at him and told him he wouldn't let him fall, so he eventually relaxed and took a glance at the beautiful cityscape. The twink NPC was astonished by what he had just witnessed, and Yool laughed at him as he blushed like a ripe tomato. The gigachad hunk looked at him as he awkwardly blushed even more. Yool put Howoo's hand close to his chest, and he felt a weird sensation. Soon enough, they reached their apartment building, and the NPC twink quivered from the experience. Just then, he felt extremely awkward when Yool allowed him to touch him however he wanted. The gigachad hunk then grabbed Howoo's hand and put it on his face, making him blush harder from so much thrill. His hand started flinching as he awkwardly looked at Yool's face. The next day, Kim apologized for leaving Howoo behind the day before, admitting he had been overwhelmed by Yool's presence. He then told him that he could not face him anymore, so he wanted to apologize through him, making him feel better. Just then, Kim asked Howoo why he was not scared of Yool. When he got home, the question lingered in his mind, so he started browsing the internet for more information about Espers. From his search, he found that guiding involved physical contact, which made him realize that it was the very reason touching him was not a big deal for him. That said, Howoo thought it would be better to keep his distance from him. Not long after, he heard a series of loud bangings on his door, making him wonder who the heck it was. Suddenly, he heard a familiar voice calling him from outside, so when he opened the door, he quickly asked why he was there on a weekend. His visitor was a handsome silver-haired guy bringing some food and drinks for them to share. Howoo asked the handsome guy named Dohyun what he knew about espers, and he found it very random. After chugging the beer down, Dohyun wondered if he was caught by an Esper doing something bad. Pissed off, the twink NPC asked if he really knew something about Esper stuff. Dohyun continued chugging down the booze, while Howoo started pouting about it. Dohyun got pissed and told him to stop beating around the bush. That said, he told him that a friend of his could not stop thinking about a guy, but Dohyun knew he was referring to himself. Howoo continued that the guy helped him 2 months ago, making Dohyun realize that he had a crush on someone. He continued telling that his friend and the guy met again, and the guy remembered his friend, but Dohyun was not convinced. Then Howoo revealed that his friend was invited to dinner in his place, shocking Dohyun in the process. The twink NPC continued his story, making Dohyun feel uneasy, so he clarified that his friend was not invited to join a cult or a pyramid scheme. Their conversation continued, and Howoo insisted that he was not the one in his story but his friend. When Dohyun asked him what his friend wanted to do with the Esper, he blushed and became speechless. That said, Dohyun told him to tell his friend to stop dreaming because Esper's brains work differently. He even revealed that Espers rely on their guides and that a relationship with one would mean you are okay for someone else to touch your partner. That said, Dohyun concluded that he was just hitting for Howoo for fun. When the twink NPC asked if he was just fooling around with him, Dohyun did not hold back in confirming it. Howoo then wondered if that was true because he was just an average-looking guy, which Dohyun also agreed with. Suddenly, the two were shocked to hear loud door bangings outside. When they checked it out, it turned out to be a female guide named Hewon, who seemed very mad at Yool's sudden request. She immediately gave a cold stare at the two for eavesdropping, but she quickly apologized for the commotion she had caused. The two then tried talking to her, who was now tapping at the door like a prim and proper girl. She then started calling Yool's phone, and the irritation on her face was too loud not to be noticed by the two losers. Dohyun moved closer to Howoo and wondered what exactly was going on. The female guide was fuming in anger, so Dohyun moved even closer and squeezed Howoo's shoulder upon hearing Yool's name. Soon enough, the gigachad hunk came out and gave a menacing glare at Dohyun, who was touching his twink neighbor. Dohyun felt the chill down his spine, but Yool started talking to Hewon, while Howoo removed his friend's hand. Hewon started complaining about Yool's behavior, but he seemed not to care, as he immediately grabbed her by the hand and told her to start guiding her right there and then. Hewon could not say no, so she did it, and the guiding happened in that instant. Suddenly she felt sick, and she absorbed all of Yool's sinister aura, turning him back to normal. After the guiding, Hewon felt even more sick and left the building, almost ready to pass out. The gigachad hunk looked at the two and apologized for the commotion, and the twink NPC quickly asked him if he was sick. While they were talking, Yool gave a cold stare at Dohyun, making him feel scared. Howoo introduced Dohyun to Yool, and they went back to their respective apartments. Then, the twink NPC told the gigachad hunk that they would be quiet so he could relax. However, Yool was left standing outside, seemingly uncomfortable because his twink neighbor was with someone else. Moments later, Dohyun started feeling jealous, seeing how Howoo slept peacefully in Yool's arms after getting sober from drinking beer. Yool stared at the twink NPC, making Dohyun feel upset by the sight, so he kept chugging the booze down his throat while playing his third wheel role. Moments earlier, the Howoo was so anxious about what kind of medicine he should give to his Esper neighbor. Then their conversation was diverted to whether Yool was a human or not. Howoo kept on checking the medicines until he found one, so Dohyun simply told him to give it to Yool, making him very happy. When Howoo gave the medicines, Yool accepted them, and he blushed as he expressed his appreciation towards him. At that moment, Howoo's eyes sparkled upon witnessing such a face card. He then smiled at him and told him to always let him know next time if he was sick. The gigachad then tried to deliver a pickup line, and suddenly he looked at his eyes and moved closer, making the twink NPC get stunned. He blushed and tried to look the other way, but Yool took the chance to riz him even more, moving even closer and making him blush even harder. The moment was interrupted by Dohyun, who called Howoo to go inside already, but upon seeing Yool, he started emanating fear. Howoo bid him farewell, but the gigachad hunk decided to join them for a drink instead. The twink NPC felt confused because he needed to rest, but still decided to let him join. That said, Howoo immediately went to Dohyun to inform him, making Yool happy. Upon hearing their conversation, Yool smiled, but when he heard Dohyun's comment about Howoo, his mood suddenly changed. Back at present, Dohyun seemed not in the mood, as he was so pissed off to see how comfortable Howoo was sleeping with someone else. Howoo began snoring from deep sleep, so Dohyun simply looked at him. Soon after, Dohyun confronted Yool about his interest in Howoo, telling him to stop if he was just toying with him. Dohyun continued talking about his concern for Howoo, but Yool remained quiet, making Dohyun wonder if he heard him. Just then, the gigachad hunk gave him a cold stare, asking why he should listen to him. Howoo felt the cold, so Yool immediately changed his mood so that he would not make him feel cold. Dohyun was weirded out by Yool's mood swings, so he asked him if he was serious about Howoo, but he told him that it was none of his business. Do-hyun got scared when Yool revealed that he was only letting him live because he was Howoo's friend. He then asked Yool if he lost his mind, and Yool responded by emanating a menacing aura. His action sent chills down Do-hyun's spine as Yool looked at him with a menacing glare. The next morning, Howoo woke up with a severe hangover and feeling too dizzy, when suddenly, he was surprised to see his apartment so clean. The twink NPC knew that Do-hyun could not do such cleaning, so he assumed it was Yool who did it, considering how clean he was in his apartment. However, that made him realize that he owed him an apology again. Nonetheless, Howoo knew that he needed to get ready for work because his phone was ringing the alarm. Moments later, while on his way to work, the twink NPC decided to call Do-hyun to know if he had gone home safely. While on call, Do-hyun told him that he had a conversation with Yool, and he thought he was not a bad guy. Then, Do-hyun expressed his approval for Yool, which made Howoo feel a little confused. Howoo expressed his confusion, so Do-hyun clarified that upon talking to Yool, he realized that he was a good guy, and he ended the call because he was still driving. Hearing that, Howoo felt relieved and happy that everything seemed fine. Moments later, Do-hyun texted him because he was on the news, and he knew it was him based on the picture, and Howoo confirmed it. Apparently, reporters had released some speculations about the two, and Howoo could not stop blushing with embarrassment while boarding the subway. Do-hyun then reminded him not to read the comments, so he decided to delete the message so it would not pique his curiosity. Suddenly, the twink NPC felt something weird, and as he stood there, the feeling intensified. While wondering where the passengers went, a man bumped into him. Howoo apologized to him, but when he looked at him, he realized that he was also an Esper. The red-haired Esper gave him a cold stare, and the two ended up in a staring contest. While the Esper stared at him, Howoo asked him if he was okay, so the Esper revealed that he knew him because of Yool. He wondered why he wasn't afraid of Espers like him, so he laughed and told him that it was nice meeting him. He introduced himself as Seung-won and shook hands with Howoo before asking him if he had seen the news already. Howoo confirmed it and asked him if his presence on the subway wouldn't attract more attention. Seung-won agreed, so he removed his coat, surprising Howoo in the process. Seung-won then laughed before using his jacket to cover the twink NPC as he pulled him out of the train. Howoo asked him if it would not only create a bigger commotion, but he simply smiled at him and told him that it was time for them to pass through. As usual, civilians paved a way for the Esper, and Howoo started trembling because of what was happening. He could hear people murmuring around them, and soon enough he found himself sitting beside a secluded table. Howoo began overthinking, and when he noticed the cracked and stained walls, he started trembling in fear, thinking he was kidnapped. Howoo was quivering in fear when he heard two familiar voices talking about him as a guide, and they turned out to be Yool and Seung-won. Yool immediately changed his aura when he looked at Howoo, which Seung-won immediately noticed. Seung-won lost his mind when Yool started acting sweet towards the twink NPC. Meanwhile, Howoo's fear suddenly shifted to relief upon seeing Yool around. He then asked him if he was feeling better, so the gigachad hunk revealed that he was feeling better because of him. That said, the twink smiled and offered his help if Yool became sick again, which he gladly accepted. Seung-won could not believe his eyes because Yool was acting completely strange. All of a sudden, Yool gave him a menacing glare, and all Seung-won could do was awkwardly smile. He quickly shut the door, and the gigachad hunk smiled at Howoo, asking if Seung-won was rude to him. Suddenly, Yool's mood was spoiled when Howoo complimented Seung-won for being creative when he caught him like a criminal. He told him that it was an unusual experience and asked what Seung-won meant when he showed up to protect him. Yool then got the coffee and transferred some into a mug, explaining that his involvement with him might cause him trouble. The gigachad hunk offered him the coffee, and he thanked him for it. Yool then called another Esper named Jin-hyuk, while Howoo quietly sipped his coffee. The Esper revealed that 3 reporters had been caught snooping around his apartment, and Howoo was left stunned upon hearing they would dump them for another week. He explained that the article would probably get a lot of views, leaving the twink NPC speechless. Apparently, people were dying to know his identity, but he assured Howoo that things would calm down in a week. That said, he told him that he could stay there in the meantime, shocking Howoo greatly. Yool took his hand, grabbed his finger, and told him that he would take him to a place where he would stay. Moments later, a beautiful facility was shown by Yool, and Howoo was amazed by the beauty of the place where he would be staying. He couldn't help but stare at the beautiful fountain outside, while Yool quietly stood behind him. The whole building is massive, and Yool explained that he needed to accompany him whenever he needed to leave, because he had no access card. Then he told him that if he had any questions, he could ask him any time. The twink NPC wondered if it was okay for him to stay there, so the hunk gigachad assured him about it. Yool explained to him that he could have anything he needed because Jin-hyuk could bring them all to him. When he opened the door, Yool showed him a massive room, which greatly surprised Howoo for its aesthetic. Yool was happy that he liked his room, and he asked to give him his hand because he gave him a pager watch. Once again, Howoo wondered if it was okay for him to use that, so Yool blocked all the other functions, leaving only the access to call him. Suddenly, the twink NPC apologized before bowing his head, and telling Yool that he should go get some rest. Howoo sat on the sofa and Yool removed his coat and put it on the couch. While the twink NPC looked at his white coat, the gigachad hunk took off his clothes, shocking him in that instant. Yool looked at the blushing Howoo before flexing his muscular back to him and revealing that he would stay there as well. Yoon Saikin then gave Howoo something to eat, so his hungry self could not help but eat what was served. His mind was filled with the gigachad hunk's topless moment. Suddenly, he grew worried about them sleeping together, recalling Dohyun's words about him sleeping with someone else. Unexpectedly, the door opened and his eyes widened upon seeing the gigachad hunk in his wet look, flexing his hard rock abs and asking him if there was a problem. Yoon Saikin asked him if he wanted to say anything, but Howoo immediately denied it. Not long after, Yoon Saikin asked how he felt whenever he addressed him too formally. Yoon Saikin and to do the same to him, making Howoo feel awkward. Then the gigachad hunk pointed out he felt the same way, so he wanted him to call him more casually. Howoo wondered what he would suggest, and he was surprised when he wanted him to call him Hyung, meaning older brother. The twink NPC was completely dismayed by the brother's own moment, which hurt Yoon's feelings. He then explained his side about being comfortable with people, so Yoon suggested calling him by his first name to make it less awkward. That said, when Howoo called him Yoon, he was stunned, and he felt so happy. The next morning, the twink NPC woke up feeling legally confined and he saw some flashy clothes for him to wear. He then started crying about his situation, called his department manager and was surprised when his manager granted him a week off before he bid his manager goodbye. When he started checking what was outside, he saw the female guide who had visited their apartment before. Hee-sun immediately felt embarrassed upon recognizing him. She found Howoo's outfit so adorable and realized that Yorn was the one behind it. Hee-sun reminded him to be careful around Yorn, and the two engaged in a conversation about Esper's doing everything they can to get the guide that they wanted. However, Howoo explained that he was not a guide and that Yorn was just being nice to him, and Hee-sun could not believe what Howoo just said. While on it, Hee-sun explained that Howoo should be careful around Espers with purple eyes, and informed him about Seonwoo, who was the mind control Esper of Team 1. Hee-sun reiterated that all Espers were dangerous. Soon enough, she asked Howoo why he called out to her, so he asked about the whereabouts of Yorn. Hee-sun then checked his device and informed Howoo of Yorn's location, making the twink NPC very happy. Nonetheless, Hee-sun told him to change his outfit first. Then, just like that, Howoo wore a guide's uniform, and Hee-sun was delighted to tell him that it suited him well. The two then made their way to Yorn's location, and when Hee-sun opened the door, Howoo was left dumbfounded by the sight of two Espers fighting with their full power. Yool recalled Howoo's word complimenting Seong-won's creative act, which obviously pissed him off. Soon enough, Seong-won entered their training ground to have a one-on-one with the gigachad hunk, who seemed extra scary at that moment. The two did not waste time. They activated their powers, with Seong-won initiating the fight. He clashed his flame power against Yool, who seemed unfazed at all as he blocked it with his ice power. Seong-won was ready to deliver another finishing blow, but Yool simply countered it with his water magic. Seong-won got injured in the process, but Yool seemed not satisfied as he activated his ice power. Seong-won grew excited and prepared to deliver a powerful strike in one go. The two charged their power, and soon enough they attacked each other. The impact of their clash triggered a massive explosion. When the dust settled, Yool was standing before Seong-won, who was lying on the floor. Seong-won struggled to stand up, but Yool was giving him the "you deserved it" face. Just then, Yool noticed Howoo and Hee-won watching them, so he decided to move closer to them, leaving Seong-won alone. Hee-won immediately made her exit excuse to get away from Yool, when suddenly Howoo informed Hee-won that Yool was already looking at them through the looking glass. Yool wrote a note on the window telling them to wait for him, but Hee-won continued with her exit excuse, telling Howoo that if he heard that she died, she wanted him to kick Yool's man plot for her. Apparently, that was the only way he knew he could do any damage to him. Then she quickly ran like she was in a marathon, leaving Howoo alone. Not long after, Howoo noticed that the place was well built, while the two facilitators were starting to worry about Yool's arrival. Soon enough, the gigachad hunk arrived like a breeze of cool wind right behind Howoo, who confronted him for scaring him that way. Then his mood shifted, asking about Hee-won's whereabouts. When Howoo revealed she had run away, Yool turned to the facilitators, asking if they had let her leave. However, Yool's mood turned back to normal when Howoo apologized for the trouble he caused. He told Yool that as a civilian, he should not wear the guide's uniform. Seeing that, Yool told him the uniform suited him well, but warned him not to wear it again, knowing other Espers would start flirting with him. That said, Yool offered him his hand to Howoo so they could go back to their room. Howoo blushed at the situation and happily held Yool's hand. Soon enough, the Espers group chat started talking about Yool and the assumed new guide, who happened to be Howoo. Meanwhile, Yool asked the twink NPC to take a walk after lunch, which Howoo happily agreed to. The two were holding each other's hands like a couple, while the people behind them started whispering about it. Nonetheless, they continued holding hands like true lovers. Moments later, the two shared a very delicious lunch while talking about Howoo's work leaves. While Yool asked him about it, Howoo kept on munching the food as usual. Howoo then explained that taking time off would mean a ton of work would be waiting for him. After getting scolded by Howoo, Yool started sulking like a kid. Seeing his reaction, Howoo decided to give him comforting words before informing him about Hwon's message for him. When he revealed that it was about his guiding, Howoo suddenly noticed Yool pouting like a little kid. As they continued eating, Yool explained the drawbacks of incompatible guiding to both espers and guides. Then Yool revealed he had only 38% guiding compatibility, meaning he needed 20 high-level guides to complete his guiding. Yool revealed to him that he had found a compatible guide for himself, but explained that the person was very unique and he could not let the Bureau treat him like property. He further explained that given the extremely low number of guides, he could not control the espers out there from using that guide for themselves. Just then, Yool stood up and leaned closer to Howoo, telling him that it was the representation of the uniform he was wearing. That said, he wanted him to take it off. After changing his outfit, Howoo called Yool too formally again, so Yool did not respond to that call. Yool only responded when Howoo called him by his name, making Howoo realize what just happened. Nevertheless, the twink NPC found his childish behavior cute. While Yool was doing their laundry with his convenient power, Howoo told Yool that he was reminded of a washing machine as he spun the clothes. Yool then volunteered to wash Howoo's clothes, making him startle. Seeing that, Yool smirked and reiterated that Howoo actually compared him to a washing machine. When Howoo told him he'd just misspoken, Yool riz him, saying he would wash his body from head to toe. The twink NPC then simply thanked him for his offer. Moments later, the two started walking in the park, but little did they know that Hwon was just nearby watching them. While wondering if something bad was about to happen to Yool, an Esper suddenly whispered in her ear. Apparently, he went to her for guiding, so she grabbed his hand to perform it. However, the Esper seemed pissed and annoyed at how Yool ordered him to monitor the reporters while he was simply enjoying a date. It turned out that the Esper had purple eyes, the one that Hwon warned Howoo about. Fortunately, Seonwoo seemed no longer interested in civilians, because his mind control over them often did not end well. Hwon told him he would always follow Yool's orders, and Seonwoo agreed, knowing how frightening Yool was. Hearing that, Hwon was pissed off and ended her guiding for him. Not long after, the door opened and Seonwoo stepped out to greet Howoo. Howoo got scared by his presence, so he hid behind Yool. Just then, Seonwoo greeted his captain, but Yool seemed not in the mood for his BS, so he immediately informed him about the task he assigned to him. Seonwoo then asked him if Howoo was his neighbor, but Yool simply called out his full name and gave him a menacing glare. Seonwoo simply smiled and leaned closer to Howoo, greeting him and introducing himself to him while looking at him with his purple eyes. Seonwoo handed his hand for formality, and Howoo happily smiled and introduced himself to him. The two shook hands and Seonwoo felt a weird sensation, so he asked Yool to confirm if Howoo was a guide, which he immediately denied. Seonwoo then asked if Howoo got tested when he was 15, which he confirmed, revealing that he was not an Esper nor a guide. Seonwoo then suspiciously glanced at Yool, who seemed worried about something. That said, he asked Howoo if he wanted to get tested again, irritating Yool even more. The gigachad hunk then grabbed Howoo's hand and told Seonwoo to stop being rude to his guest. Seeing that reaction, Seonwoo became even more interested, especially upon seeing how soft Yool was to Howoo. Seonwoo then reiterated that he was just suggesting before assuming that Howoo was Yool's boyfriend, making him blush so hard. Howoo denied it, so Seonwoo continued interrogating him, making Howoo reveal that they were just neighbors, which pissed Yool so much. Seonwoo kept interrogating them as he watched them hold hands. Howoo noticed where he was looking, so he immediately removed his hand from Yool's, hurting his feelings in the process. Yool became even more sad when Seonwoo began flirting with Howoo, showcasing his face card right before his eyes. However, Howoo rejected him right away, making Yool grab him, which surprised Seonwoo even more. Yool started pouting before Howoo with his teary eyes, seeing that Howoo became so worried about him, so he tried giving him some comforting words. However, Howoo clarified to him that they were not dating, so Yool asked again before admitting he had never been close to anyone since childhood. The twink NPC felt guilty about it, so he quickly apologized, making Yool hug him so tight. Just then, Yool's eyes sparkled, fascinating Seonwoo in the process. Seonwoo then told Yool that Hwon was waiting in Team 1's guiding room before bidding them farewell. Moments later, Hwon was in the guiding room when Yool and Howoo came to her. As usual, Hwon was very unwilling to do Yool's guiding but still decided to do it anyway. Yool then looked at Howoo for approval, so Howoo watched over him as he walked towards Hwon. He stared at the process of guiding and realized that he had been receiving that treatment since he was younger. Seeing Yool struggling, Yool couldn't help but feel bad for him. Just then, the gigachad hunk asked him if he was not bored, which he denied immediately, explaining to him that he found guiding really interesting. Apparently, the effect was way worse for the guide, so after reaching her limit, Hishin sat on the bed and lay down, feeling very weak. Yool seemed not yet okay, so Hishin asked him if he would summon more guides. The gigachad hunk knew he could not force Hishin to continue, so he contacted other guides to complete the guiding. Soon enough, they heard people outside the room, knocking on the door. When the door opened, they were a bunch of guides who seemed very unwilling to do guiding with Yool. Yool looked at them and with a cold aura he told them that he needed guiding. After doing several guiding processes, several guides had fainted, and Yool seemed tired from it as well. His blue eyes turned back to black in the process, so Howoo asked him if it hurt a lot. He looked very worried for Yool, so Yool leaned on him, assuring him not to worry about him. Not long after, Howoo asked Yool about the one he mentioned with a high sync rate with him. Yool explained that he met that person even before he entered the Bureau 21 years ago, when Yool's Esper ability manifested at the age of 9. Howoo recalled that Yool considered that person unique, so he asked whether he was already a guide when they met. Yool told him he wasn't a guide, but Howoo hoped he would meet that guy again so everyone would be happy and Yool wouldn't suffer anymore. Nonetheless, realization came to Howoo upon thinking that one day Yool might need to share a bed with somebody else. The sun is setting, and the sound of the beeping pager watch woke up Howoo. Suddenly, he saw Yool leading the Espers and guides, but the gigachad assured him there's nothing to worry about. Just then, Hewon chimed in and Yool told her to go to the location first. The beeper sounded to remind Yool not to be late, so Howoo asked him if he would be gone long. Yool gave him the key card and assured him it would be quick and that he would be back soon. The two engaged in a staring contest, and Howoo smiled and bid him farewell. When Yool left, Howoo walked towards their room, but when he was about to enter the door, someone pulled him back and threw him, crashing on the floor. It was a white-haired Esper who came late from the emergency gathering. The Esper gave Howoo a cold stare and asked him how long he was going to stay on the floor, and asked him why Yool was fixated on him. Then he nudged his shoe on his back and asked him if he was good with plot development. The Esper's eye turned green and a wind slashed Howoo's face because he got pissed off by Howoo ignoring him. Apparently, his voice sounded familiar to Howoo, and the Esper told him that he should know his place. Howoo recalled a green light caller from the Yool's pager and realized what his name was. The Esper asked why he dared to get close to Yool, and he twitched when Howoo called him Moon, which was his name. The twink NPC wondered what Moon was thinking, but he clarified his accusations with him and happily told him that he was free to love Yool all he wanted, then dashed away from him. Moon was pissed and he felt bad because he did not mean that to happen. Not long after, Yool entered the room and stood behind the door, before sliding downward with his injured knee. He then recalled Do-hyun's words about Espers and realized why Yool did not want him to wander around. Howoo recalled Moon's words and felt bitter about it because in that place, he knew that he was nobody. Howoo patched his face cut with a band-aid while staring at the ripped pants. He then recalled how Songwon and Sonwoo were not as intimidating as Moon, who scared the shit out of him. That said, he wondered if he should tell Yool about it, but then he thought that it would be pointless. Soon enough, he checked his phone and saw that Do-hyun's calls and messages filled his notification. And just like that, he contacted Do-hyun, who yelled at him because he was so worried about not hearing from him the whole day. Howoo apologized for leaving his phone and sat on the sofa, when suddenly Do-hyun interrogated him for not going to work. The twink NPC explained that Yool took him to the bureau, so Do-hyun told him through phone that Yool would not go that far if he did not like him. Howoo wondered why Yool would like him, so Do-hyun assumed that it could be love at first sight and that he should give him a chance. Apparently, Howoo had been in 2 failed relationships. The first one was with a cheating husband, and the second one was with an emo guy who both lost interest in him after a few days. Do-hyun pointed out that his past relationship had involved humans, but Yool was an Esper, and as long as he kept physical contact to a minimum, it should be fine. However, the twink NPC recalled Yool's words about that very unique person, and told Do-hyun that Yool had a problem, but he could not tell him. Do-hyun then assumed that Yool had a soft Excalibur problem, so Howoo immediately denied it. Howoo was pissed off by his words, so Do-hyun gave him some motivation before hanging up. Just then, Howoo felt extremely odd, and he wondered why Do-hyun suddenly becomes so encouraging about his relationship goals. Moments later, Yool came back to their room and saw a sleeping Howoo. The injuries that Howoo had on his body did not escape his eyes while he lifted him to put him on the other side of the bed. The next morning, Howoo woke up from Yool's hug, so he tried to let go, but Yool seemed deeply asleep. Just then, Howoo touched something hard, so he wondered what it was. But soon enough, he blushed so hard upon realizing that it was Yool's massive hard Excalibur. He then tried his best to wake up Yool, so he woke up, and their faces were too close to each other, and he told him to let go of him. Moments later, Yool interrogated Howoo about his injuries, but Howoo lied and told him that he had fallen over while he was running. However, Yool did not seem convinced by his story when suddenly someone knocked on his door. When Yool opened the door, it was no other than Moon, so Howoo quickly recognized him. Moon immediately noticed Howoo, so he quickly called his attention and started lashing out his anger to him. Hearing that, Yool figured out what really happened to Howoo. Yool started clenching his fist and told Howoo that he would take a day off, which surprised him. They all had a dead-air moment, so Howoo congratulated him on his day off. Just then, Yool informed him that it was the first time he would take a day off, and he asked Howoo for a date. Howoo blushed after hearing Yool's date invitation, infuriating Moon in the process. Moon could no longer hold back his frustrations, so he told Yool that he was doing the wrong thing. But Yool silenced him by simply calling out his name and making a gesture for him to shut up. Moon was left speechless, and Yool grabbed Moon's shoulder, telling Howoo to excuse him for a while. Howoo reluctantly agreed, and he was left alone inside the room, thinking about what was taking Yool so long. While thinking how Moon was rude to him, Howoo heard someone knocking the door. The man outside asked if anyone was inside because Yool sent him over. When he opened the door, a middle-aged healing Esper named Taishik introduced himself. Yool sent him over to heal Howoo's injuries, but the Esper told him that he looked fine to him because he thought that he lost his limbs, scaring Howoo in the process. Nonetheless, Taishik still healed Howoo's wound, and all his injuries were gone in an instant. Howoo was impressed by his healing ability, and he thanked him for it. Just then, Taishik wondered if Howoo was a guide by any chance, but Howoo immediately denied it. However, Taishik seemed not convinced because he was giving some Esper-like energy. That said, he asked Howoo to let him hold his hand, and he allowed him to do so. Unfortunately, Taishik only became even more confused, as the sensation was something he already felt before. Nonetheless, he told Howoo to ask Yool about it instead, because the difference between their abilities was massive, that anyone below A class would not sense it. Taishik then asked Howoo if he wanted to ask anything, so Howoo asked when Yool would come back. He assured Howoo that Yool would be back soon because it had been a long time since he had seen him that mad. Just then, the two bid farewell to each other, and Howoo watched Taishik exit the room. Moments later, in broad daylight, the two talked about Moon, and Yool assured him that he reprimanded him just enough. Soon after, Yool started feeling upset that Howoo's mind was preoccupied during their date. Howoo then paused for a while and asked Yool if he was interested in him, which he confirmed. That said, the twink NPC asked him why, because they barely knew each other. Yool then took the opportunity to riz him, telling him that they have known each other enough for him to love him. Howoo then looked down, explaining he was just a civilian, but Yool raised his head. Then Yool explained why he liked him, telling him that he was the only civilian who looked at them differently, unlike most people who looked at them with fear because to them they were like monsters. Just then, Howoo brought up what Seon-woo told him before about him dating a civilian, so Yool explained that Seon-woo only managed to date a civilian out of fear. He explained further that civilians could never truly understand Espers, which made Howoo feel bad. Yool then grabbed his shoulder and told him they weren't rushing because he wanted Howoo to see him as himself, not as an Esper. Howoo looked at Yool's hand and stared, blushing, while Yool simply smiled at him genuinely. Soon enough, the two went straight to a mall, where Yool asked him if Howoo liked watching movies. At the cinema, they chose an action movie entitled Mad Twan. Then Howoo revealed to Yool that he was watching in the cinema every now and then, while it was Yool's first time watching at the cinema. The twink NPC blushed so hard when he discovered that Yool saved his first time for him. Suddenly, Yool's pager started buzzing, so he apologized to Howoo and told him that he would be back before the movie started. Howoo looked at Yool walking away and gave himself a sigh of relief because he did not know how to react to Yool's words. He then began contemplating how to deal with Yool when a cinema attendant called his attention, asking them to move to a quieter area. Howoo stared at her and told her that his friend stepped out for a moment, so he could not leave his seat. The cinema attendant seemed troubled, so Howoo looked at the people sitting behind them who were talking about banning Espers from cinemas. She informed Howoo that some customers were feeling uneasy because of an Esper nearby. Not long after, Yool came back and asked what was going on, but the cinema attendant scaredly told him there was no problem at all. Howoo looked at Yool and upon realizing the situation, told him their movie date wasn't good that day before dumping the bucket of popcorn in the garbage station. Yool apologized for what happened and he seemed down because their date did not go well. He then asked Howoo to look at him, but Howoo refused, furious at how people acted the way they did. Howoo was upset that Yool seemed to be acting like it was fine with him. The twink NPC then began crying, and Yool let him know that the way he treated him was the very reason why he loved him. Not long after, Howoo calmed down and he apologized for his action. Yool then invited him to watch the movie later, and he assured him that they had a lot more things they could do. Yool reiterated that they could eat dinner at Howoo's place, watch the Mist movie, and told each other to inform each other if they got sick. Howoo blushed at the thought of it, so he covered his blushing face, which made Yool feel very happy. After that, Yool noticed Howoo's swollen eyes, so he used his ice power to ease the swelling. While Yool touched his face, Howoo confessed to feeling something weird whenever he touched him, unlike the other Espers. Yool then figured out that it was the reason why Howoo asked him before if he had electricity through his body. Yool also found it very odd, so he moved closer to his face and asked Howoo if it felt unpleasant when he touched him, but Howoo denied it, making Yool feel very relieved. The gigachad hunk then asked Howoo if he was not really afraid of him, so Howoo looked him in the eyes and smiled, telling him his eyes were beautiful. Yool blushed so hard when Howoo told him that his eyes were like jewels. That said, Yool moved closer to Howoo until their faces were just a few inches away. Howoo became speechless, anticipating what was about to happen. Suddenly, Yool kissed him on his forehead, which was way too far from Howoo's expectations. Howoo blushed so hard after that, and Yool asked him with a smile about where they should go next. Soon enough, the two entered a cafe, and as usual, people kept their distance from them as if they had COVID or something. Time passed, and it was already nighttime, so the two moved to a restaurant for dinner, but as usual, the waiter started shaking at the sight of an Esper. Howoo noticed it, and he could not help but clench his fist in annoyance. Later that night, the two sat on a bench in the park under the bright moonlight, talking about how much they enjoyed the day. Once again, Yool expressed his happiness on their first official date. Meanwhile, Howoo was speechless because of all the things that happened in between. Then, with teary eyes, Howoo told Yool that his shoelaces were untied. Yool immediately tied his shoelaces, but Howoo told him he could do it himself. The gigachad hunk told him in a sincere tone to give him the chance to do it for him. So he tied his shoelace properly and told him not to reject him just because he was an Esper. Yool then raised his head and looked at Howoo, telling him to let him stay by his side. Howoo's evil thought was telling him to snap out of it and face reality, but his good thought was telling him that Yool genuinely loved him and turning him down should not be an option. The evil thought then asked whether he was okay with other people guiding Yool, leaving the good thought speechless. However, the good thought fought back and asked whether he really disliked Yool, and his thoughts kept arguing in his mind. Moments later, Howoo felt terrible deep down because he couldn't decide what to do. Yool told him that even if his care for him was just out of pity, he was begging him to let him stay by his side. Howoo's mind was in a great chaos because Yool was an Esper, so Yool asked Howoo if he had a headache, which he immediately denied. Yool looked at him with worried eyes, telling him to tell him right away if he was unwell. Just then, Yool brought up Moon, the Esper that left a strong impression on Howoo. Apparently, he wanted to apologize to Howoo, but Yool reminded him that he was not required to forgive him right away. Howoo then learned that Moon was only 20 years old, which pissed him off because he was older than him. Yool then checked the time and told Howoo that Moon would be there any moment. Just then, Moon burst into their room as fast as he could and bowed his head before Howoo, apologizing for what he had done to him. Howoo was left dumbfounded by the sight of it, so he was left with no other choice but to forgive him. Yool, on the other hand, looked at Moon and told him he could leave already. Moon immediately agreed to do so, and he walked outside the room as fast as he could. Howoo then lost his mind when Yool told him that he could discipline him even more. Hearing that, Howoo told Yool that it would be unnecessary. After that, Yool also informed him that all the reporters outside Howoo's apartment were gone already, making him very happy as he could finally go home. Hearing that, Yool felt sad knowing they had to live apart again. Howoo tried to cheer him up, telling him they were neighbors, but Yool was still sad. The twink NPC then reiterated that they should sleep comfortably, thinking it would be awkward for them to sleep in the same bed. When Yool asked when he wanted to return, Howoo told him to get ready to leave. The two then reluctantly made their decision, although deep down they wanted to do it the other way around. Then they stood face to face with each other, and Yool blushed so hard when Howoo invited him for a movie dinner at his place. Yool gladly accepted the offer, and the two happily talked about the dinner they would share, then bid each other farewell. When twilight arrived, Howoo happily served the dinner he prepared. On the other hand, Yool seemed unhappy because it turned out that Do-hyun was also there for the movie dinner. Seeing their reaction, Howoo wondered whether they didn't like the food he'd prepared for them. Do-hyun then called Howoo to confirm the movie dinner he had invited him to, and Howoo confirmed. Howoo then told them he'd gotten some snacks and a movie for them. Apparently, Howoo only invited Do-hyun because he did not want to feel awkward about being alone with Yool. Do-hyun, on the other hand, realized what was happening, so he shrugged it off and decided to eat the food already. Soon after, they made popcorn and settled in to watch the movie, with Do-hyun sitting between them. Do-hyun activated his third wheel energy again, while Yool was convincing himself that everything would be fine. Just then, the two accidentally touched each other when they decided to get popcorn. The two then engaged in a staring contest as the movie they were watching turned into a kissing scene. Their eyes sparkled as they romantically stared at each other. Just then, Do-hyun broke their momentum when he suddenly got up and started stomping his way out. It turned out that Do-hyun decided to go somewhere else, but Howoo grabbed his hand and asked him why he was leaving all of a sudden. Do-hyun then coldly told Howoo he was being insensitive and should leave him out of his dating life, before leaving completely. Howoo was left dumbfounded by what had happened when Yool suddenly told him he appreciated his effort. Yool then asked Howoo if he picked that movie on purpose. So he admitted that he invited Do-hyun on purpose, but the movie was chosen based on good reviews. The two then decided to continue watching the movie, when suddenly Howoo apologized to Yool. Yool, however, told him that he was free to push him away. Nonetheless, the gigachad hunk told him to do his best because he would also try his hardest. The next day at work, Howoo apologized to Do-hyun through chat, but was still stressed out about Yool's feelings. Just then, someone called out Howoo's attention, and it was a red-haired lady offering a coffee to him. She told Howoo what they had done during his absence, and he thanked her and decided to treat her to dinner. The red-haired lady then suggested treating her to dinner that day, so Kim also asked Howoo if he could join them. Howoo agreed, so the three happily decided to push through their dinner plans. The three decided to eat at an Italian pizza resto, and Howoo was reminded of his time with Yool, but he forced himself not to think about it. Just then, Howoo was asked what he had done during his vacation, and he said he had simply stayed home. After asking about some status stuff, Howoo told her that she had no girlfriend, which surprised her greatly. Kim supported her view about Howoo and asked him whether the person they ran into last time was his friend. Kim was referring to Yool, which made the red-haired girl feel very excited. Just then, Howoo was reminded again of his sweet moments with Yool. The red-haired girl reminded Howoo how handsome Yool was, but Kim chimed in to say he was intimidating in person. Howoo, however, disagreed because he wasn't afraid of Yool at all. While looking at the pizza, Howoo wondered whether the people might be exaggerating about the Espers. Howoo then revealed that he first met Yool when he saved him from falling debris. He blushed and explained that Yool was kind and considerate. The red-haired lady began to wonder if something might be going on between the two, which Howoo immediately denied. Kim noticed that Howoo turned red as he explained that he and Yool could not be in a relationship. Meanwhile, the red-haired girl did not make sense with what Howoo said, explaining that whether he was an Esper or civilian, he could always break up if things did not work out. Howoo looked at his glass of beer and started blushing again. After his dinner time with his colleagues, Howoo went back home wobbling from drinking too much. He wanted to get drunk to forget Yool, but it only made matters worse. Just then, he paused from walking because Yool was right in front of him. Yool looked at Howoo with disappointment, and Yool looked at him in awe. The gigachad hunk looked at him without saying anything, but suddenly turned around, leaving Howoo utterly confused. Yool came back to his place, recalling a toddler calling his name, and a smile spread across his face. Not long after, someone was knocking at his door, and it was no other than Howoo. Yool acted so coldly to him, so Howoo informed him about Moon's situation and told him to go easy on him. However, Yool was not ready to consider his suggestion, so he asked what his true intention was, which caught him off guard. Apparently, Yool almost never administered the Esper and Guide test, but did it once when he met Howoo. Back then, the young Espers were taking to each other when Howoo saw Yool walking alone. His eyes were shining in a blue color, while his cheeks were blushing so hard. Howoo was surprised to see such a reaction from him. It turned out that Yool had been obsessed with Howoo for 21 years and counting. Howoo then speculated that Yool was a pedophile, but he quickly denied it. The chair fell as Howoo continued talking, explaining the fact that Howoo was a guide. Yool got mad at him for his speculations, and his menacing aura scared the shit out of Howoo. Yool calmed down and leaned back in his chair, explaining to him that Howoo was a civilian. Howoo did not dare to continue with his topic. Meanwhile, Howoo was on his way to work when he received another present from Yool. It was a bunch of Howoo's favorite snacks and drinks. Just then, Howoo noticed some Espers approaching him, asking if he was not a guide. Howoo told them they were mistaken, but the Espers seemed not convinced at all. Suddenly, Howoo ran away as fast as he could, leaving the Espers confused as hell. Soon enough, Howoo stopped running as he hid behind the fire exit door. He grabbed his phone to call Yool and realized that he did not have Yool's phone number. Left with no other option, he tried contacting the bureau instead. His call was received, and he requested to talk to Yool, but the customer service thought he was just another prank caller, which he strongly denied. Howoo insisted he was not pranking at all, so the customer service accepted his request. Later at night, Howoo was exhausted from work because his manager forced him to work overtime. Just then, the twink NPC's eyes grew bigger upon seeing Yool right before him. Yool happily assumed that Howoo was waiting for him, which dazzled Howoo in the process. Howoo was then confused after Yool declared their impending date, which made Howoo blush. While talking in the middle of the night, Howoo became worried about the reporters, but Yool assured him that there was nothing to worry about. Yool's words kept playing inside Howoo's mind, which continued giving him a perfect blush. Little did they know someone was spying on them. Before entering the apartment, Howoo brought up that he called him through the bureau, but Yool seemed unaware of it. Howoo explained that he made that call because they did not have each other's numbers. Yool reminded him about the watch pager but decided to give his number instead. He asked Howoo what his concern was, so he explained that he was mistaken as a guide by two Espers. Howoo wondered if he was in trouble, so when Yool confirmed it, he was left stunned. Yool gave him comforting words, and Howoo somehow felt relieved. He smiled, assuring him that everything would be all right. Howoo looked him in the eye and wondered if he was serious or not. Yool told him not to overthink as he grabbed his hands and took his chance to riz him about surrendering his heart to him. The twink NPC blushed so hard and he was left speechless by what Yool just told him. Just then, Yool stared at his back and wondered if there had been a cat around the area. Yool then excused himself to go to a convenience store, but Howoo clung to his hand. Realizing what he just did, Howoo quickly held up his hand and told Yool that he would head home before bidding him farewell. The gigachad hunk then looked at the bush and commanded someone to come out. It turned out to be Howoo, who came to check on Howoo, wondering how Yool created him. Yool told him that Howoo was not a circus animal, so Howoo told him to let him off the hook. Suddenly, Howoo asked him if Yool had heard the news that the minister's daughter had manifested as a guide recently. Howoo clarified that he had not turned her into a guide. He told Yool he had to test their sync rate, so he had to date her soon, which Yool found pointless. Howoo started crying that Yool had to appease the higher-ups before revealing that he had been very busy keeping all the pesky guides at bay. Yool remained quiet, but Howoo suddenly asked him what his plan was after taking over the bureau. It turned out that Howoo wanted to get rid of the wall of the bureau and ban the imprinting processes. Howoo then wondered if Howoo was just okay, especially since Yool took too much interest in him. He told Yool that he was so obsessive but he was taking good care of Howoo, so he bid him farewell. Yool quickly turned in the direction of Howoo's apartment. Moments later, Yool entered his apartment and lay on his bed while having a deep thought. Howoo went out of the bathroom and Yool listened to his every step. Unfortunately, Howoo forgot to buy himself dinner, so he decided to eat some tuna instead. Yool shut his eyes as Howoo started eating his food, and he felt relieved knowing he was fine. Meanwhile, Howoo pondered what happened, but in the end, he told himself to snap out of it. Yool then blushed when Howoo finally went to his bed, which was a wall away from him. A week later, the bureau announced that Minister Deongchel's daughter Seonyoung had manifested a guide, and her sync rate with Yool was 72%, which was a remarkable result. The imprinting was announced to take place after Seonyoung reached legal age. At that point, Howoo recalled Do-yeon's words again about Yool only hitting him for fun. 1 week earlier, the door swung, and the Yool's team told him that he was late. Yool, however, told them that he had to take care of some stuff. Just then, Yool's hand slided and his face was giving a sleepless facade. Song-won mentioned about him getting a new guide soon, which he confirmed. Yool entrusted his duties to Song-won, who wondered how long he would be gone. Hearing that, Heejun was delighted by the idea that Yool won't be around for a while. Song-won and Taeshik felt like she was so happy for some reason. After Heejun expressed his delight at her temporary freedom, Yool dismissed them all. However, Taeshik and Song-won remained in their seats, so Yool wondered if they wanted to say anything. Song-won told Yool that he only wanted to see his face a little longer, while Taeshik seemed hesitant to ask. Nonetheless, Taeshik decided to ask anyway about Howoo because to him there was something unusual about him, yet he was not an Esper nor a guide. Taeshik revealed that he was familiar with Howoo's energy, so he asked Song-won the same thing, but he refused to say anything. Yool then asked Taeshik if he remembered where he felt the same energy. Taeshik revealed he was no longer sure, but he was sure that Yool felt something as well. The gigachad hunk played the I know nothing card, making Taeshik feel mistaken. When Taeshik left, Yool and Song-won were left inside, and Song-won wondered if Yool was the one behind it. However, Yool denied any involvement with it because he himself wanted to hide the truth. Hearing that, Song-won told Howoo that he had been so sneaky ever since, but also told him that he only learned them from managing his thoughts. Song-won revealed that the minister planned to have her daughter imprinted by Yool. Meanwhile, Song-won refused to do guiding to any Esper unless it was the strongest one, and she also belittled other Espers seeking for guiding. Earlier that day, the minister reluctantly agreed to her daughter's demand, but the man who administered the sync rate suggested other S-class Espers, Seon and Yunshin. When it was Yool's turn to do the sync test, he put his finger on the holographic screen, and the test almost made Seon collapse. The sync rate results were 65% for Seon, 49% for Yunshin, and 13% for Yool. After realizing that she was not compatible with Yool, Seon put the blame on Yool. Despite her protests, Yool remained quiet as he watched Seon's daddy dearest tolerate a spoiled brat. The man administering the test warned them that imprinting with Yool was too dangerous because of the low sync rate. However, Seon was unwilling to back down, so she tried her best to seduce Yool into developing a plot with her. Yool only looked down at her, so Seon smirked and brought up Yool's weakness. She tried to lean closer to Yool, but the gigachad hunk evaded her advances and went directly to the other two S-class Espers. Seon was delighted to see Yool around, and Yunshin felt the same way. Yool called out Seon for being rude, but she seemed pretty convinced he hadn't done anything wrong. Meanwhile, Yunshin was a gentler version of Seon. While Seon was bugging Yool from behind, Yunshin simply watched them. Just then, Yunshin noticed the minister and the administrator quarreling. The minister slapped the administrator in the face, so Yuchen asked the two if they should stop him. However, both Yool and Sion seemed not willing to do so. It seemed like the S-class Espers had bad blood with the administrator. The minister then ordered Sion and Yuchen to confiscate all of Yool's devices. However, the two S-class Espers were not willing to do it either. They tried protesting with the minister's command, but Yool stopped them from doing so, and he willingly let them confiscate all of his communication devices. The minister then accessed Yool's device, and when he saw Yool's pager watch, commanded them to confiscate it as well. The administrator then reminded the minister that the pager watch was meant for emergencies and that he should let Yool keep it. Apparently, the device could only connect to another pager from the bureau. The minister then dropped Yool's phone on the floor and stomped on it to destroy it. The minister reminded Yool that his life was in his hands, which Yool acknowledged. The administrator then ordered Yool to proceed to the isolation facility, where guides would arrive shortly. Inside the isolation room, guides were falling one after another after guiding Yool. However, Yool's eyes were still blue, which somehow frightened the next guide. She was unwilling to guide with Yool, but the administering guide told her that many guides would die for the opportunity. She reluctantly agreed to do so, but when Yool grabbed her hand, she instantly felt sick. She begged Yool to stop, but Yool continued, and the guide saw her life flash before her eyes. After that, another guide fell on the floor, and Yool's eyes were almost returning to black. When the last guide appeared before Yool, he told the gigachad hunk to go easy on him. The two stood before each other, and they initiated the guiding process. Instantly, the guide felt so sick, but Yool seemed satisfied and elevated their guiding process. Yool then squeezed the guide's hand, and Yool pushed him to his limit. After guiding with all the sent guides, Yool left their pile of bodies looking extremely drained. Just then, Yool's eyes turned black again, and he was not sure how long he could control his power. On the day of the press conference, the media were gathered around for such an important announcement. The announcer started the press con, and Yool stood up and stepped his way down to Xianyang. Yool gladly offered his hand, which boosted the ego of Xianyang. The gigachad hunk reminded her not to hold on to any hard feelings. Yool then looked at her with dead eyes, and the two, along with the two other S-class Espers, went to the stage. The media started asking them, and Xianyang was the first one to answer, followed by Yunshan. Just then, a female reporter raised Yool's issue about having no compatible guides, so Xianyang clung to Yool's arm and confidently revealed that they had a 72% sync rate. The announcer then supported the lie, making it very believable for the media. Yool was confident that Howoo would not see the broadcast, but he knew Du Hayan would let him know about it. The thought of it triggered Yool's eyes to turn blue again. Xianyang then whispered to Yool that other guides were willing to guide him for the next 5 years and that she was too busy to guide him herself. Yool smiled and agreed to her, which boosted Xianyang's ego again upon seeing how obedient he was. While the media took several photos of them together, Xianyang informed him about his accommodation. She then told Yool that they would be on national TV the next day, so he should dress nicely. Hearing that, Yool told her that he would keep that in mind. Moments later, the three S-class Espers went into their accommodation room, talking shit about Xianyang. Xian believed it was not fair to follow whatever she wanted, so Yool explained that their power lies in the number of Espers they command. Xianyang, however, was more pissed that their accommodation wasn't as impressive as she told them. Just then, Yanshin spoke, awkwardly asking the two if they would like to get something to eat. Xianyang grew excited and suggested they grab some beer. Yanshin's heart popped from the excitement, and his eyes sparkled when he suggested he could buy some beer in advance. Xianyang then told him just to buy anything he wanted to eat before moving closer to Yool to tell him that Yanshin was so innocent. Just then, Xianyang changed his tone and asked Yool if he wanted some dating advice from her. Xian suddenly teased Yool for having no date experience at the age of 30. Yool was embarrassed by the fact that she knew the posts about him online. He awkwardly looked at her when suddenly Xian seemed way beyond confused that someone like Yool was actually dating. Xianyang gave her a suspicious grin, but Yool activated his serious mode, commanding her to hand him the phone. Xianyang then bargained with Yool to tell him about his love life in exchange for phone access. The two then sat down and talked about Yool's dating life. Xianyang got excited upon hearing his story, but Yool told her that he would borrow Yanshin's phone instead. Yool was then pissed by Xian's warning to zap Yanshin's phone before he could borrow it. The gigachad hunk then answered her question one by one, and he told her that she was making it sound like he was having an affair. When Xian asked who the guide was, Yool refused to answer. She then asked if it wasn't a guide, and Yool immediately denied it. At that moment, Xian realized that Yool wanted to borrow her phone to inform the person about it. Xian's words started punching Yool 3 times in a row until he was knocked out. She then asked Yool about the person's age and learned the person was already 28. After that, Yool had a hard time answering which part he found attractive. Apparently, Yool loved every part of Howoo, so he told Xian that everything about that person was attractive. Xian had goosebumps upon learning that Yool was not dating a guide, so she reminded him that the person might care about how he received guiding. Sion then reminded Yool how he had to figure out a way to eliminate the monster. She then asked Yool for the person's number of the person, so Yool wrote it down on a piece of paper before giving it to her, asking her to tell the person that he would be back soon. After getting the number, Sion quickly ran to send the person the perfect text. Sion texted the number with BRB, explaining it meant be right back, pissing him off in the process and commanding her to hand him her phone. Moments later, Howoo assured Yool that he was okay, because they were not dating after all. Yool then asked for an apology, but Howoo asked him what were the sorry about. Howoo kept talking to him over the phone, but he hung up because he was on a train. Looking at Yool's number, Howoo started to rattle and started wishing Howoo bad luck. Soon enough, the phone vibrated, and he received a text, BRB, from an unknown number. Then another message arrived, confusing Howoo because it said he should carry what he had given him at all times and never leave it at home. Howoo thought that someone was just pranking him, so he texted the unknown number back and blocked it, feeling pissed off by the whole situation. The phone showed that the number was blocked by Howoo, and Saikyan laughed at Yool for getting blocked. Yool was too stunned to speak, and he started emitting a menacing aura. Before things could turn the wrong way, Yuchen arrived and Yool calmed down instantly. Yuchen, being the innocent Esper that he was, simply wondered what was happening. When night arrived, the three S-class Espers talked about Yool's date. Feeling left out of the topic, Yuchen couldn't help but cry and asked if this person was the one Yool was texting. Yool was not having it, so he told Saikyan stop using him as their topic. Saikyan realized that Yool was truly in love with someone, and she had no idea that Yool was kind of a hopeless romantic type of guy. Yool then pondered their comments and confidently told them he was indeed romantic. While they were having dinner, Saikyan suggested fixing the problem with Howoo. She then mocked Yool for struggling with the situation, saying that her life as a battery was better than a clown's. Just then, she mentioned that Yuchen had the worst skill since he was made to interact with monsters like a typical anime beast tamer. Yuchen then asked if it was okay for Saikyan to talk BS, since some people in the corner were listening. Just then, Saikyan stopped drinking and looked at Yool, asking him if he would do something about it. As Yool's eyes turned blue, his water magic engulfed the two spies, and just like that, he drowned them with his water magic. As Yool shut down his eyes, his magic disappeared, and the two spies dropped unconscious on the floor. Yool moved closer to the two unconscious bodies, and he grabbed them both by their collar, telling the two S-class Espers that he would handle them himself because he had enough of them. The gigachad's steps echoed in the silence, and the weather outside began to rumble. Seiyan had a bad feeling about it, but she smirked and told Yunshin that it was a good opportunity for them, so Seiyan asked to use Yunshin's phone. Elsewhere, in the middle of the night, Do-hyeon and Howoo watched the interview of Yool, when suddenly Do-hyeon turned off the television. Howoo felt so devastated after watching that video, so Do-hyeon asked him if he wanted to stay at his place for a while. Howoo declined his offer, telling Do-hyeon that he was a grown-up and he could handle himself. They then cheers again, and before they knew it, they already finished several bottles of booze. While Do-hyeon was deep asleep on the couch, Howoo laid down on his bed. He was lost in his thoughts as he recalled a memory he had with Yool. However, Howoo was so pissed, thinking that Yool was such a liar and realizing that he fell for him harder. His phone started vibrating, so he checked who was texting him at that hour. The twink NPC became speechless as he read the message, that if they got lost it would be a serious problem. Howoo thought that it was another prankster who kept chatting him for not responding to her. He told the sender that he would block them, but they kept initiating a conversation. When Howoo finally replied, Sion introduced herself to Howoo, who quickly acknowledges her as one of the S-class Espers. Howoo wondered why she was texting him and how she got his number. After some explanation, Sion asked Howoo if Yool and him were dating, which he denied. However, when Sion asked if he was Yool's boyfriend, Howoo blushed and face-palmed himself from embarrassment. Just then, Howoo realized something, so he quickly looked for the pager watch that Yool gave him when he recalled the message earlier. Howoo felt an extreme relief upon realizing what really happened, so he unblocked Sion and asked her why Yool used her phone earlier. Howoo became suspicious when Sion explained that Yool was being monitored, so she explained that the Bureau was the one behind it all. Howoo recalled Yool's face and confirmed about their high sync rate, and the two had a conversation about sync rate that no one cared about. Sion explained that imprinting would mean that a guide could no longer guide anyone but the imprinted Esper. Yool then asked about the imprinting process that only adult could do, so Sion explained that the imprinting was kind of inappropriate. Nonetheless, Sion assured him that Yool would not imprint with Sion before bidding farewell. Just then, Howoo noticed the thunder outside rumbling like a wild beast. Soon after, Howoo took the pager watch, tried to navigate it, only to realize that Yool was the only contact in it. Howoo then wondered if Yool would answer if he would use it to call him, and just like that, he accidentally ended up contacting Yool anyway, and the ringing continued. Howoo was shocked at what happened, and he panicked on how he could hang up the call. Just then, it was answered, and Yool was already on the line. Soon enough, Yool asked Howoo if he needed some help. making him feel guilty from all the overthinking he did. Howoo confirmed it, and Yool apologized for being busy, but promised to visit him soon and reminded him of what he told him before about him being serious about him. The heavy rain continued to pour when suddenly ice came pouring down as well, making Do-hyo wonder if he could go home with that situation. Ice began falling heavily on Do-hyo's car, and he knew that Yool was the one behind it. Meanwhile, Howoo was just speechless as he observed the rain, so Do-hyo wondered what was going on in his mind. Just then, Do-hyo whispered on Howoo's ears, sending him chills down his spine. When Do-hyo asked if he was listening, Howoo apologized for not paying attention. Do-hyo asked Howoo about his watch, and Howoo seemed could not tell him what it was. That said, Do-hyo realized that something was going on, so he confronted Howoo for what happened while he was asleep. Howoo explained that he just got untouched with Yool, revealing that he called him. This made Do-hyo lost his cool, thinking Howoo had no pride at all. The twink NPC confirmed all of Do-hyo's speculations, making him fumed in anger. Do-hyo had enough and realized that Howoo was the biggest idiot he ever met. The two then had some conversation under the heavy rain, and Do-hyo reminded Howoo to always put himself first. Howoo reluctantly agreed, so Do-hyo bid him farewell. While walking away, Do-hyo turned around and told Howoo to take care of himself, reminding him to be smart and not do anything stupid. As the rain continued procuring down, Howoo let a sigh of relief when suddenly a drop of rainwater touched his nose. He then wondered what Yool was doing at that moment, because if the weather was caused by him, then he should be worried about him. Meanwhile, in the guiding room, a guide trembled upon seeing Yool, because he knew he could not guide him at all, especially with his overwhelming power that manifested around him. The storm continued brewing around the bureau, and the cars in the area were taken away by the flood. Meanwhile, in the guiding facility, a guide trembled in fear, knowing he could not guide Yool. The gigachad hunk was about to initiate the guiding process when suddenly a doctor arrived, asking Yool why guiding was not working for him and allowing the guide to leave. Yool smiled at him and told him that he should know it himself. Apparently, the doctor was still paid even if he made a new progress at all. Yool then told him that he would go berserk again and asked him if it was not exciting for him. He then reminded him of what happened back then. Apparently, the doctor was one of the people who came to get him that day. Yool told him that time flies so fast, as he was no longer the youngest member of the bureau, but he currently held the top position in the research team. Just then he told Yool to get out and leave the city immediately and never come back. Yool then asked if he was afraid of him, making the doctor falter from his threat. The gigachad's hunk power surged around him, telling the doctor that he thought he did not fear anything. The water level started rising, and the doctor asked him if he thought they should all die together. Yool then shared his sentiments about accepting guidance from people who do not understand him. Soon enough, someone burst in, and it was no other than the angry minister, who called Yool a beast and was forcing him to accept guiding already. Yool then threatened him that he would move to another city, making the minister burst in anger. Just then he noticed some people moving closer, and they were none other than the two other S-class Espers. Yool was there standing in front of them when Sion looked at him with a menacing glare, telling him to dry him off. Yool agreed to do so, and Sion told him to stop the annoying rain already. In an instant, Sion dried up, so she asked Yool if he was planning to self-destruct. The gigachad hunk then looked her in the eye, telling her she would see it herself soon. Their conversation was suddenly interrupted by Yunshin, who was asking Yool to dry him as well. Yool ignored him, making him feel bad, while Sion told him she was more important than he was. The minister could not believe what was happening, so he started to reprove them all. Just then, Sion gave him a little electric shock, causing the minister to fall on the floor. She started taunting him as she charged with electric power all over her body. Moments later, Yunshin looked in awe as he stared outside as the doctor left the bureau. Yunshin then thought that everyone would run away, and Sion thought of the same thing. Meanwhile, Yunshin tried to reach someone on his pager watch, and he looked at Sion as his device started ringing. His call was answered by Sion Woo, and he gave him the cue to carry out their plan. Sion Woo then confronted him for going too far, the rain becoming so severe that it flooded the city, forcing the Espers and guides to fully deploy to help the civilians. Sion Woo said only Howoo's apartment was untouched, but Yunshin played the I know nothing card. He told Yoon to stop playing dumb and ended the call to go back to work. Sion realized that Yoon's lover was a man, so she became a bit confused. Apparently, she expected Yoon's lover to be a small, fragile woman. Just then, Yunshin excused himself as he would call Jeon Woo. Sion then told him to call her if he went berserk, so she could snap him out of it. However, Yoon smiled and insisted on calling his guide instead. Sion asked him who would be willing to guide him, so Yoon thought of a smiling Howoo, telling her that he promised to come right away when he needed help. As the rain continued pouring down, Howoo stared at the window. While he looked at his reflection in the glass window, his watch pager started beeping. It started showing a GPS location. Soon enough, Howoo talked to the pager watch, but Yool was speechless. That said, Howoo asked him if something had happened, but he was breathing heavily. As he called his name, Howoo got weirded out by his voice. Back then, it was also raining heavily outside, and the young Yool's eyes glowed in a blue color. Yool's father was lashing out at his wife over the odd things they were experiencing. He insisted that a monster like Yool had to die, but they wondered how they could kill him. They think that doing so might get them killed in the process. Yool's father then had an idea to eliminate him by leaving him without a guide. He also suggested hiring someone to feed him while they live elsewhere. Yool heard everything, and he was heartbroken to learn that his own parents were planning to eliminate him. Days had passed, and Yool's eyes glowed even more when suddenly, a young Howoo appeared behind the curtain of the bed where Yool was resting. At that moment, Yool went speechless, yet he felt a pleasant summer warmth. Young Howoo asked him if he was sick because he was always in bed. He visited him the next day and offered to read a book for him. Day by day, the two became closer to each other, and Howoo even told him that he would ask his mom to take them there, which Yool agreed to. Howoo promised it to him, and just like before, Yool was hoping to be saved by him. Back at the present, Howoo went against the flood and braved the storm. While moving, Yool was talking to him using the pager watch, assuring him that he would be there for him. Howoo passed through the wild flood, but he stumbled and fell. Despite that, he tried his best to stand up again, but he got his foot injured in the process. Not long after, he reached the facility, but he seemed very tired. Nonetheless, he decided to move forward, and when he opened the door, cold breeze welcomed him. Howoo noticed that the entire facility was almost frozen. Howoo began to worry for Yool. That said, Howoo quickly looked for him, and he wasn't even scared at all. When he reached the frozen fountain, his eyes grew larger upon seeing Yool standing beside a massive ice crystal wall. Yool seemed feeling very weak, so Howoo felt extremely bad for him. That said, Howoo decided to take a step and move towards him. Howoo stopped maintaining the ice crystal wall, so the water started rampaging. Seeing that, Howoo rushed towards Yool, and just before the water would wash them away, Howoo managed to reach Yool. The flood went wild, but suddenly, a massive towering tornado saved them from drowning. Inside the tornado was Howoo leaned closer to Yool, and just like that, the twink NPC kissed him, and the guiding process activated in the best way possible. Howoo felt a tingling sensation, so Yool asked him if it was painful. He then told Yool that it felt strange, and Yool was happy that it was not painful for him. That said, Yool asked Howoo to help him a little more, so Howoo closed his eyes and got ready for another lip therapy. Howoo then gripped Yool's sleeve and eventually released it. All of a sudden, the heavy rain stopped and the flood quickly subsided. The sun shone as if nothing bad happened at all, and Yool went out lifting Howoo like a Disney princess. Yool looked at Howoo's face as he fell unconscious on his shoulder. Later that evening, Howoo was not feeling well as a side effect of guiding Yool. Howoo decided to drink some water when suddenly he saw Yool's jacket wrapped around him. Howoo sniffed it before putting it beside his bed. The twink NPC stood up and he saw Yool inside the room. Yool could not meet his eyes straight because he was reflecting on his actions. The gigachad hunk then asked him if he was okay, so Howoo told him that he felt a little weaker. Howoo recalled what happened earlier and asked Yool what happened. Yool assured him that he did nothing strange to him. The gigachad hunk looked him in the eye and told Howoo that he was welcome to touch him however he wanted. Yool then bowed his head, so Howoo reached for his face and he felt a warm feeling. Howoo was surprised that he was no longer as cold as ice. The twin NPC flinched his finger, so Yool grabbed his hand, telling him not to be afraid. Their eyes looked at each other and they locked in their hands like lovers. Howoo was then surprised to see that something was happening, so he asked Yool if he had become a guide. Yool then explained that Howoo was a guide, but he could not guide other Espers like regular guides. Howoo then removed his hand from Yool's and asked him if he had nothing to say to him. Yool was caught off guard by his question, so he sincerely apologized to him. He asked Howoo if he hated him, but Howoo remained silent. Howoo asked if Yool was not being monitored, so Yool informed him that the monitor had fled the city. Just then, Yool forced Howoo to go back to bed for some rest. After that, he turned off the lamp to let Howoo sleep peacefully. All of a sudden, Howoo heard loud bangings on his door, with someone threatening to destroy it if he did not open it. Howoo checked if Yool was still awake, and the threat started sending chills down his spine. When the voice started counting, Howoo stared panicking and he was about to lose his mind. However, Yool started hugging him, and he heard the door open. It was none other than Seon-woo, and right behind him was Seon. The two of them continued talking until they saw the two lovebirds cuddling in bed. All Howoo could say was hello, and he felt so embarrassed. Howoo took a peek and saw Sideron and Siderwoo standing before them. Sideron confirmed Howoo's identity, and she told him to just let Yool sleep. Sideron and Howoo had a conversation, and Sideron could not believe that Howoo really fainted. She then tried asking Siderwoo, but he told her that she would not get anything from him. While the two were talking, Howoo was just watching them. Just then, Yool told Sideron that if she was afraid of the consequences, she should not ask questions. Yool then got up and greeted Howoo with a good morning. He leaned closer to Howoo's ears and asked why they were around. Sideru told Yool that he was just there because he stopped Sideruan from destroying the door. He then reminded Yool to clean up the mess he made, and Sideruan agreed to it. While talking about some work-related stuff, the two Espers were just watching Yool hugging Howoo. Suddenly, Yool asked Howoo if he was hungry, but Howoo told him that he needed to go back to work. Howoo's batter ran out, and he told him that he would take a taxi to go to his work. Seeing that, Sideruan told Howoo to hand her his phone, and as expected of her power, she managed to charge the battery instantly. Yool was so amazed by her power, so Sideruan explained that it was usually her job to charge up high-voltage transformers. Howoo thanked her, but she told her not to worry about it and gave Howoo a very suspicious expression. He then bid them farewell and went to work while the three Espers listened to his call to his boss. Apparently, despite the whole city going into shambles, Howoo's office was fine, so he had to show up. Moments later, Howoo talked to Yool and he commended him for being a great driver. Yool had no car of his own, but driving was a piece of cake for him. It was then revealed that the car belonged to Taishik, which made Howoo feel bad for him. Yool then looked at Howoo and told him that operating machines was easier than using his powers. Just then, Yool dropped Howoo off at his office, but before that, Yool turned to Howoo and looked at him romantically. Yool leaned closer to Howoo and he blushed so hard again upon seeing his face move closer inch by inch. Howoo slowly closed his eyes, only to find out that Yool was only removing his seatbelt. The twink NPC felt too embarrassed, so Yool laughed at him. Howoo then moved out of the car, feeling a little annoyed at Yool. Just then, Do-hyun texted him about the news, which Howoo knew already. It turned out that Do-hyun's parents received a call from the bureau because, apparently, several of its researchers had run away. Do-hyun seemed disappointed with Howoo's reaction, but Howoo seemed unsure how to react. He was asking on behalf of his parents, who received an offer to work for the bureau. That said, Howoo told him that he would ask Yool about it. When Do-hyun started throwing shade at Yool, Howoo remained speechless, and he wanted to inform him that he had become a guide, but decided not to. Howoo then found himself torn about how to reveal the truth to Do-hyun. Nonetheless, Howoo decided not to tell him at all, and told him that Yool would pick him up after work. That said, Do-hyun told him that if he really liked him, he would not stop him. Howoo then read Do-hyun's final message about giving them both good luck for their relationship. The twink NPC thanked him, and he put his phone down. Howoo once again wondered if he really liked Yool, or if he was even doing the right thing. Apparently, the only reason why Howoo kept pushing Yool away was that Yool was an Esper while he was just a civilian. However, since he could guide him from then on, Howoo believed that it would be fine. However, he could not stop asking himself if he genuinely liked Yool. The sun was setting, and Howoo was about to go home when suddenly he saw Yool standing outside waiting for him. Yool asked him about his work, and Howoo thanks him for picking him up. Yool opened the door for him and told him that he would drive him home. Howoo looked at him with innocent eyes and smiled at then kept him with a sweet smile. Just then they left, and Howoo asked if he had the AC on, explaining that he got so cold easily. Yool then told him that he would keep that in mind before revealing that the aircon was off. That said, Howoo felt awkward thinking that he might have offended Yool. On the other hand, Yool simply smiled at Howoo, making Howoo feel guilty even more. Nonetheless, Yool told him that in that way they could both stay cool in the summer, and he could give him his coat in the winter. Howoo told Yool that getting hot easily wasn't really the problem, so he asked if he had a summer uniform. Yool, however, revealed that he was wearing that uniform in any season. They continued talking about the possibility that Yool would become the new minister of the bureau. However, that responsibility carried a lot of tasks too, like different uniforms for different seasons, and getting rid of the wall around the bureau. Yool then told him that he would know about his plans when he became the new minister. Just then, Yool announced that they were home, which happened to be their apartment, which Yool really missed. Yool and Howoo continued talking as he parked the car. Howoo gave a deep sigh, asking Yool if he could hit him just once, so he bowed his head, confusing Howoo in the process. Yool willingly agreed to his request, making Howoo wonder why he was not saying anything. Howoo then told Yool that he liked someone who knew how to take care of themselves, and he was hoping that he would do the same. The twink NPC clarified that what he was saying is that Yool ace of those criteria. Yool blushed so hard, followed by a genuine laugh because his efforts were not in vain. Later on, they prepared a lot of food to share together, making Howoo notice that it had been a while since they had dinner together. Howoo appreciated the taste of the food, telling Yool that he could be a chef with his great skills. He then noticed that Yool opened the window and the air that flowed inside was so refreshing. Howoo then suggested that would make some noise as well, because he was way too quiet. Yool then suggested they make some noise together, so Yool agreed to their talking time. Time had passed and it was time for them to part ways, so Howoo thanked him for the dinner. Yool called him and Howoo happily responded, when suddenly Yool pulled him closer, asking him for a sleepover. Howoo started blushing so hard as Yool asked him to spend the night with him. Howoo was caught off guard by the sudden invitation, so Yool explained that they should sleep over at his place. The twink NPC then reiterated that he was just living next door. But Yool used his teary eyes to convince him. Howoo couldn't seem to say no to him, making Yool feel very happy. Later on, Howoo's dreaming about a blue ocean that shone greatly. In his dream, an unknown hand was touching his face, fixing his buttons and patting his shoulder. Normally, Howoo woke up after the hand touched him, so he was confused why his dream continued. Just then, Howoo noticed that where he stood was a dimension, and that something grabbed his Excalibur. Howoo blushed as he was begging for the unknown to let go of the grip. Yool jolted awake from his dream, completely weirded out by the randomness of his dream. Looking around him, he came to the realization that he was not at home and that he was sleeping beside Yool. As Howoo tried to reach his face, he wondered why he hadn't realized how good-looking Yool was. Howoo began touching Yool's face when suddenly he bit his finger before asking him how long he'd been awake. Yool wanted him to wake him up using a different way of waking him up apart from his finger. The gigachad hunk then rizzes the twink NPC by leaning closer and making him blush. Moments later, Howoo guessed that Yool loved biting people, so Yool assured him that he liked doing it to him. Yool asked Howoo to be patient with him as he was a first-timer in almost everything. Howoo started feeling hot about Yool's invitation. Nonetheless, Howoo told Yool that he needed to go home, so when he opened Yool's door, he was shocked to see Yool's smiling face. Howoo refused Yool's offer, but the gigachad hunk insisted on doing it anyway. He also reminded Howoo that he had left his pager watch and told him to make sure it was charged and to carry it at all times. When Howoo looked at his pager watch, he heard the voice of Yool calling out to him. Howoo explained that using the pager watch made him feel a bit nervous, so he suggested using his phone instead. Yool then revealed what happened to his phone, so Howoo realized that it must have been taken away from him during the incident. The two then walked along each other and they talked about Yool's desire. Moments later, on the rooftop of the building, Howoo was ringing his dad's number. Howoo talked to him to check how he was, so his father assured him that he was totally fine. Unfortunately, his dad seemed to have trust issues with the Espers. That said, Howoo talked to his dad and told him that he wanted him to meet his friend. Howoo then informed his dad about him changing his phone number and assured him that he would call him very soon. Just then, Howoo recalled his sweet moment with Yool, who clung to him like a baby. Meanwhile, Howoo was wondering if everything would be okay. One day, a scared seller handed over the latest phone model to Yool, who seemed interested in buying one. The gigachad hunk looked at the phone and recalled his conversation with Howoo about matching phone numbers. While Howoo was also thinking about it, Yool suddenly appeared before him, bringing two phones for them, which shocked Howoo. When Howoo questioned him about buying two phones, Yool fell silent. That said, the gigachad hunk leaned closer to him and asked for Howoo's phone. Yool smiled despite Howoo's disapproval of having the same mobile phone as him. Just then, Yool looked at Howoo's phone and crushed it before apologizing as if it was not intended. Being caught off guard, Howoo could only cry as Yool bought two new mobile phones for them. After processing the payment receipts, the two received two matching mobile phones. Howoo, on the other hand, became worried as they might accidentally mix up with each other's phone. Soon enough, Yool called out Howoo for spacing out and asked him which number he wanted for both of them. Howoo asked if it had to be the same number, so Yool confirmed it to him. Howoo began scratching numbers and Yool watched him carefully, then happily told him he would go with his suggestion. Yool easily figured out that the chosen numbers of Howoo were their birth dates and had their numbers prepared for them. Moments later, outside the mall, Yool was looking at his phone with Howoo as his sole contact person. Yool then began talking about Howoo's upcoming birthday and how he wanted to celebrate it with him. While looking at Yool, Howoo suddenly became sad at the thought of visiting his dad. It turned out that back when he was younger, Howoo came home drenched in rain. He saw his father getting drunk in the kitchen, and Howoo revealed that his birthday always happened during the rainy season. It was also near the death date of his mother, so it became meaningless to him. Back at the present, Howoo told Yool that he would not visit his father on his birthday. Yool agreed with him after carefully listening to his story. Howoo then asked him if they could go on a date the next day, so Yool happily agreed and told him that there was a place that he wanted to go with him. The twink NPC asked him where they were going, but Yool told him that it would be a surprise. They held hands and Yool assured Howoo that the place was exactly what he needed. Moments later, they met an old gigachad named Say, and he introduced himself as the head of the training school. Howoo became confused big time, and Say thought that he had no idea why he had been brought there. When they sat all together, Howoo started punching Yool, who pleaded not to get mad at him. Yool then used his teary-eyed face card to calm Howoo and explained to him that it was actually very important. Soon enough, Yool talked to Say about teaching Howoo the basics of self-defense. Say asked him why he did not want him to teach Howoo any guiding, and Yool only replied with his glaring blue eyes. Realizing the situation, Say decided to sip his drink and stay quiet. Say agreed with Yool's order, so he only required Howoo to come during the weekends only. Yool then showed Howoo around where some espers and guides were sparring as part of their training. Yool told Howoo that he was taken there when he was 9 years old and trained there until he was 20. The gigachad hunk then sadly told Howoo he had no family when asked whether he missed them. Hearing that, Howoo felt sad and assured him that there was someone who missed him. Yool then lifted their hands and told him that it would be nice that way. Everyone stopped sparring when they saw Yool kiss Howoo's hand. Yool noticed them, so he called Howoo, leaned closer and whispered to him that all espers were animals. Howoo blushed and at the same time was shocked by his revelation. That said, Yool then told him to be careful. To Yool, whether it was out of pity or love, he only cared about Howoo liking him. He could feel Howoo's sweet emotions through the imprint, and he was not letting anyone else have him, expressing his strong desire and his possessive nature. Yool wanted to complete the imprint, but if that happened, Howoo would know about his ugly feelings towards him. That said, Yool wondered how much of him Howoo was willing to accept, and if he would still love him the same after knowing his true self. The following day, Howoo and Yool were dating outside, and Howoo put Yool's meat inside his mouth, enjoyed every bit of it, and chugged it down his throat. Meanwhile, Yool was just sitting there smiling as he watched him savor his tasty meat. Howoo then brought up about him learning self-defense in the Bureau's school. They then talked about the training and compared it to a light exercise. Howoo doubted it considering Yool was an Esper, so Yool told him that he was no longer sure himself. The gigachad hunk then told him to train hard or develop his stamina, telling him that it was a fun activity. Yool told him that what really matters is that he would have records of him training there. Just then, Yool stopped and looked directly at Howoo before gently smiling and wiping the food crumbs on his face and eating it himself. Moments later, the two went their way to the facility, where they shared conversations and laughs along the way. Upon entering the main entrance, Howoo was left dumbfounded by what he saw. The place was filled with frames that contained pictures of espers and guides who had served humanity ever since. Howoo then stopped at the photo where the three S-class espers shared one frame. As usual, the twink NPC was staring at Yool's handsome younger self in the photo and wondered why he was barely smiling at the photos. Howoo then pulled out his new phone and pulled Yool's face closer to him, before telling him to lean toward him a little lower. Howoo then snapped a photo of them together, where Yool was showing a bright, warm smile. Seeing that, Yool asked him to send the photo to him because it looked cute. Howoo, on the other hand, was pissed by the fact that his shot became blurred and wanted to take another one. However, Yool stopped him from doing so and begged him to send it to him. The gigachad hunk snatched the phone from Howoo, who was obviously mad. Yool then asked Howoo if he would delete it, which he confirmed. Nonetheless, Yool still sent it to him and told Howoo that he looked cute in it. After receiving the photo, Yool saw Do-hyun's message, making Yool's mood shift in an instant. That said, Howoo remembered that Do-hyun was waiting for his reply. Just then, Yool asked Howoo who the guy Do-hyun was talking about. Howoo was caught off guard, so he admitted that Do-hyun was referring to him. Realizing the situation, Yool asked him if there was something that Howoo wanted to ask him. Howoo then told Yool that Do-hyun's parents were actually researchers, admitting that he promised Do-hyun that he would ask him whether to let them accept the offer or not, which Yool approved. The two talked about the researchers in the Bureau, where Yool revealed that if they were invited, it would mean they were very talented. Howoo let a sigh of relief and assured Yool that Do-hyun's parents were definitely good people. Not long after, Howoo entered the school for his self-defense training, where Yool showed him several pieces of gym equipment. Yool assured him that staying there for 2 months should be enough to register him as a guide in the Bureau. Yool then showed him the newest exercise machine, when suddenly, Howoo asked him what he would do after being registered as a guide. The gigachad hunk was left speechless, so he revealed to Howoo that he arranged everything for him to always be by his side. Then he told Howoo that he needed to qualify as a guide so he could let him debut as his guide. Hearing that, Howoo thought that he could finally help Yool as a guide while recalling their sweet moments together. Little did they know, someone with purple hair was watching over them. Meanwhile, Howoo thought of his past convo with Yool about a very unique Esper that had a good sync rate with him. That said, Howoo agreed to do his best and qualify as a guide. Seeing his newfound determination, Yool couldn't help but laugh at his cuteness. Just then, the two of them promised to always keep their words to each other. The two went straight to Sa for Howoo to start his training that day. Right away, he started lifting the contract and read the terms and conditions in order to improve his twink body. Soon enough, Howoo started yelling after seeing Yool's name as his instructor, so Sa asked him what the problem was. Howoo told him that Yool was his assigned instructor, which Sa confirmed right away. Yool did not waste any time, and he proceeded to sign the contract. Just after he signed the contract, Yool told Howoo to sign it too, before giving him a suspicious smile. Yool then told him that he would help him train for the next 2 months. The two engaged in a conversation talking about why he took the trainer's job, so Yool told him that he would not leave him alone in that place. The twink NPC looked him in the eye and the two engaged in a staring contest. Yool then smiled at him and took Howoo's hand as a sign that the two of them agreed on the contract. Howoo smiled back and the two of them went straight to the training room. Moments later, Howoo was gasping a breath as sweat was flowing all over his body. But Howoo seemed determined to do his best, making Yool feel proud of him. Not long after, Howoo collapsed and hugged the ground, so he lay his back on the floor and started panting heavily from exhaustion. His eyes, though, showed no sign of giving up, so Yool offered his hand to help him stand up again. Howoo then grabbed Yool's necktie and told Yool to let him lie down just a little more. Howoo's mood then shifted and he pressed his hand to the floor beside Howoo's face. Yool wanted Howoo to come closer to his face, so he lay his body on top of him. Their eyes met and the two of them felt the strong desire to kiss each other. As their lips were ready for another cycle, Yool's hand locked in Howoo's. Just then, Howoo stopped him from escalating things into plot development. However, Yool was not in the mood to listen, so he dug in for another one. Howoo freed himself from his grip and the liquid in their mouths started flowing. The gigachad hunk was blushing from the heated momentum, so he kissed Howoo's forehead and cheeks before kissing his ears. Howoo dropped unconscious after that, and Yool told him that he needed to take a shower. Their eyes met again, and Howoo immediately felt awkward for what they had done. Yool then gave him his predatory glare, but Howoo simply gave him a teasing smile. That said, Yool started pouting like a child before Howoo leaned closer to him to tell him that he would take a shower. Yool watched him go away, and Yool realized that Howoo was finally his lover and his guide. In the shower room, Howoo was washing his body properly, and the water started dripping from his body. Meanwhile, Yool lay down on the floor, and he listened to Howoo taking a shower. While the twink NPC was taking a shower, Yool put his hand on the light of the ceiling, as he controlled himself from developing a plot with Howoo. The next day, Howoo went back to work, and he felt energized from his workout. He then gave a sigh of relief from not having to drag an exhausted body to his work. However, his mind kept flashing back to the intimate moment that Yool and he shared. Just then, Howoo asked Kim if there was something he didn't understand, but he seemed to be fixated on something else, so he told him that everything was fine. Seeing his reaction, Howoo wondered if he regretted lending him his cushion. Just then, it was already 6:05 p.m., and Howoo quickly logged out from his computer and grabbed his bag before thanking Kim for lending him his cushion. Howoo then left, leaving Kim to sniffle for his dear cushion. As Howoo exited the building, he was exchanging text messages with Yool. That said, he dialed Yool's number and asked why he suddenly wanted to pack his lunch. Yool told Howoo that he already bought a lunchbox for it. Howoo finally exited the building, and he was looking left and right, searching for Taishik's car. Meanwhile, Yool was inside the car, and he told Howoo to simply follow the ice that reached his feet. While talking over the phone, Yool asked him to guess what he bought for the first time. Soon enough, Howoo reached his destination, where there was a brand new car. After knocking on the window, it opened, and Yool told him he bought a new car so he would stop taking the subway. The gigachad hunk winked at him, telling him that he felt disappointed back then. The two were stopped by the traffic light, so Yool asked Howoo if he was just okay from his training. He told him to tell him everything that needed to be changed in his training routine. Howoo then told him that there's nothing to worry about before asking Yool if a donut cushion could help ease muscle pain. While listening to Howoo, Yool could not help but laugh before guessing that he was referring to Kim. Realizing it himself, Howoo became so shy about it, thinking that Kim thought he had hemorrhoids. That said, Howoo told Yool that Kim got the wrong idea before shifting the conversation to Yool wanting to make lunch for him. Yool simply told him that he just wanted to do it for him, making Howoo fall for him even more. Howoo then thought of Yool's unconditional love for him, making it very impossible not to give his heart to him. When the stoplight turned green, Howoo thanked Yool. The very next day, Howoo opened a we-made packed lunch, which surprised him a lot. His red-haired female workmate wondered why he had been packing lunch lately. As she opened his food, Howoo revealed to her that his boyfriend insisted on packing his lunch. Hearing that, she became so shocked that he dropped her sandwich. She then began interrogating Howoo, making him feel embarrassed. Just then, she asked Howoo if he was not upset, considering that his boyfriend was an Esper who needed a guide. Howoo made it clear to her that he was just alright before recalling what Seda told Yool about not teaching any guiding to Howoo. He then wondered if Yool wanted him to register as a guide but did not want him to learn how to do it. Just then, the red-haired girl snapped him back to reality before expressing how jealous she was of him. The twink NPC continued wondering about it, so he chatted with Yool, who seemed very busy. That said, he decided to contact someone who could help him in his situation. The following day, Howoo went to a nearby coffee shop and he sat there patiently waiting for the person he had invited. Just then, the door opened and Howoo happily waved his hand to the person. It was no other than Sibyeon, who happily smiled back at Howoo before asking why he wanted to see her. While Sibyeon wondered if Howoo needed some advice from a friend, Woo-Chan arrived at the same cafe along with his guide, Jeon-woo. Howoo then wondered if Sibyeon had invited them as well, which she confirmed, since their workplace was just nearby. The four of them sat at the table where Woo-Chan began getting clingy to Jeon-woo, his personal guide. Jeon-woo introduced himself to Howoo, and Howoo did the same thing. Just then, Howoo dropped the bomb about his concern about being a guide, which shocked both Woo-Chan and Sibyeon. Luckily, Woo-Chan brought Jeon-woo, who can answer anything about guides. Woo-Chan explained that even though they were Espers, their knowledge about guides was limited. That said, Jeon-woo asked Howoo what he wanted to know. Howoo admitted that he only became a guide recently, which means that his abilities manifested late. Jianwoo then asked if he was staying in the training school and wondered how Safe was doing lately. Howoo told him that he was not sure because he was not staying in the school. Jianwoo then wondered how he was being trained to be a guide. That said, Howoo admitted that it was the very reason why he wanted to meet up with them. Realizing the situation, Jianwoo decided to help him, so he asked him to grab his hand for a moment, and Howoo did so. Jianwoo taught him the basic form of guiding, which Howoo tried to learn properly. Suddenly, he felt an electrifying sensation flow from his hand, shocking him in the process as the pain traveled throughout his body. Seeing that, Jianwoo became speechless and wondered whether Howoo was really a guide. They then discussed Howoo's ability as a guide, which Jianwoo would like to verify again. However, Seom arrived and told Jianwoo that Howoo was indeed a guide. The four of them sat together and had their drinks, when suddenly, Howoo noticed a spare cup of coffee. Seom then revealed that she ordered the coffee for Yool, who was about to arrive any moment. Just then, they all looked at him with his dazzling princely arrival, and Seon found his action really romantic. Yool then entered the cafe and approached their table. The gigachad hunk sat beside Howoo and smiled after asking if he was not intruding on them. Yool asked them what they were talking about, so Jianwoo started the conversation. Yool sipped his coffee and put it down before touching Howoo's finger. The gigachad hunk took the opportunity to riz Howoo by kissing his hand. Jianwoo could not believe that Yool finally had a guide, so he asked Yool if he was aware of Howoo's condition. Yool smiled and assured him that he knew more than anyone else, so Jianwoo gave him the opportunity to confess the truth. Yool then tapped his cup and apologized to Howoo first for keeping the truth away from him. Howoo seemed confused by what Yool was talking about, so Yool revealed that he really did become a guide, but only because his path opened because of his energy. That said, Yool explained that his ability did not manifest naturally, which made Howoo wonder when his path had opened. Yool revealed that it happened during their first meeting, which made Howoo realize why weird things had been happening to him since that day. Having said that, Howoo realized that Yool set him up to be his guide, and he was saddened by all the lies. Yool wiped Howoo's tears, admitting that he had approached him on purpose. The gigachad hunk knew that Howoo might no longer believe him, so Yool explained that because of what happened to him, he was not the same with any guides. The twink NPC could not draw in Esper's energy, which he could only do reverse guiding. Sigurd explained that reverse guiding was done against the guide's will, meaning the Esper would control the guiding, which allowed the Esper to use the guide's body like a tool. Sion then asked How if he was wondering why Yool hid it from him, which made Howoo wonder if he was so easy to read. Sion then looked at Yool and told Howoo that he should hear it from Yool himself. While many people passed by outside the coffee shop, Yool began his explanation. Apparently, Howoo looked right at him with no hesitation and didn't think of him as a monster. Howoo then thought that he felt that way only because he became a guide. Yool assured him that was not the case at all, and that he would never lie to him because that was the line he would never cross. Howoo listened to Yool as he explained how he was so greedy at first because he wanted to spend more time with him, only to hold back when the moment came. When Howoo asked him what he was afraid of, Yool told him that he got scared that he would leave him. Hearing that, Howoo felt bad for him because it felt like the GOAT top G in the world knelt before the most common NPC in the world. It almost felt like Yool had a desperate look on his face and he was willing to kiss Howoo's hand and foot just for him not to abandon him. Howoo then wondered if what he was feeling towards Yool was love. But either way, Howoo patted his face and told him that all he needed to do was to apologize. Howoo then hugged Yool, and the gigachad hunk felt a strong urge to hug him back, making the three other people around feel like they were watching a BL drama. Howoo apologized for involving them in his mess, but Sion assured him it was not a big deal at all. Sion expressed his delight at witnessing a helpless Yool. Just then, Sion stood up and answered the call for her to go back to work. But before leaving, Sion told Yool that even he could not stop all the rain that was going to fall. Yool asked her if that was a warning, but Sion assured him that she was just giving him advice. Sion further told Yool that even if he tried to shield the precious people in his life, they would still get drenched in the rain. Soon enough, Yunshin and Gyeonwoo bid them farewell, leaving only the two of them behind. Yool and Howoo were fidgeting on the table when suddenly, the gigachad hunk asked Howoo if he wanted to see the ocean. Howoo was speechless, but Yool offered his hand and told him that the ocean might help him sort things out, so Howoo agreed to do so. Moments later, the ocean breeze was running freely, and the two stood before a majestic sunset. As they stood beside each other, Howoo felt the breeze run through his body and smiled because it was not what he expected at all. It turned out that when Howoo was still in school, he watched a documentary about the ocean and learned how beautiful it was on the surface, but monsters lived within its depths. Howoo then looked at Yool and wondered if Yool was like an ocean. The twink NPC then asked Yool if guides do not like his reverse guiding, which Yool confirmed. He looked at Yool in the eye and told him that guides absolutely hated it. As the ocean breeze continued, the two talked about how a normal civilian could become a guide. Yool then riz him again, telling him how special he was. He admitted that he was so desperate to hide it, explaining that the Bureau was not really respecting the rights of all the Espers and guides, and that they were conducting experiments with them. Hearing all that, Howoo became too stunned to speak. Realizing that the Bureau did it to Yool as well, Howoo clenched his fist in anger. Seeing him get upset by what happened, Yool held his face and tapped his forehead, telling him not to be sad in that place. Yool then told Howoo that if he liked the ocean, he should focus on it at that moment. Howoo became speechless as he wondered when he told him he liked the ocean. Moments later, at Howoo's apartment, he was drying his hair from taking a shower when he chatted with Do-hyun, who immediately asked him if he wanted to crack some booze. Howoo then looked at the couch and realized that he did not really want to have Do-hyun over at his place at that moment. That said, Howoo insisted that he would be the one to go to his place, which surprised Do-hyun because that was not their usual routine. Nonetheless, Do-hyun agreed on his decision. Howoo told him that he would be ready to go in 10 minutes, while Do-hyun told him that he would get the beer. After getting ready, Howoo pressed the elevator button to go to the ground floor. While waiting for it to open, he was thinking of his wrist, which felt a little bare without his pager watch. However, he felt awkward about wearing it to Do-hyun's place even though he was not going there to do anything bad. Howoo thought that it should be fine not to wear the pager watch for a while, when suddenly his phone received a notification, which was a message from Yool. Howoo wondered if it was just a coincidence, so he quickly turned around to check if he was being spied on. The twink NPC knew to himself that he came out quietly, but he was considering the fact that perhaps Yool had heard him because the timing was a little suspicious. Meanwhile, inside Yool's apartment, it was dead silent, and only the splash of a dripping water was heard. Upon listening to the door, the steps, and the notification sound of Howoo, Yool figured out that he was going to see Do-hyun. That said, he started chatting with Howoo, but he simply typed his name. Yool seemed unhappy with the situation, and his emotions began to manifest as energy around him. He even asked Howoo through chat not to be too late. The gigachad hunk continued chatting with Howoo with a sad vibe because he was not comfortable not having Howoo within his reach. That said, he started calling someone over the phone as he moved to the balcony of his apartment. The ringing continued as he looked outside the apartment. It turned out that he was looking for the walking Howoo outside the apartment complex. Someone answered the call, and it was no other than Esper, and at that moment, Yool gave a sly smile. Suddenly, rain started pouring down along the way, and Howoo reached the bus stop. Upon exiting the bus, an umbrella was raised above his head to protect him from getting soaked in the rain. It was none other than Do-hyun, who happily fetched Howoo from the bus stop, telling Howoo that he had arrived at the perfect moment. Just then, Do-hyun gave Howoo his spare clear umbrella for him to use, which surprised Howoo low-key because he was just about to tell him to bring one. Do-hyun asked him what was going on, so Howoo admitted that he was dating Yool. Howoo wondered why he seemed not surprised at all, so Do-hyun revealed that he kind of anticipated it already. Do-hyun explained to Howoo why he thought that way, but Howoo seemed oblivious about it. He even pointed out that it was obvious since they were still hanging out together after what happened, which made sense to Howoo. As they go to Do-hyun's place, the rain continued pouring down. Moments later, the two were a little drunk from chugging down some booze down their throat, and Do-hyun told Howoo to slow down his drinking. Do-hyun then wondered why Howoo was acting that way when he should be happy that he and Yool had just started dating. Howoo thought of the same thing, so he released a deep breath and fell face down at the table, making Do-hyun wonder what the problem could be. Do-hyun started interrogating Howoo, asking if Yool cheated, if he dumped him, or if he was a two-timer. Howoo denied all of his accusations as he looked at his reflection in the glass of booze and admitted that he became a guide. Do-hyun then wondered how on earth Howoo became a guide, so Howoo looked at him and decided to tell the truth. After the revelation, Do-hyun dropped his glass of booze out of disbelief. He then stood up and yelled at Howoo, telling him that Yool clearly approached him on purpose, making Howoo wonder why he thought so. Do-hyun was mad about what he just learned, and he started pointing out all of Yool's suspicious actions, explaining why Espers could not be trusted, before chugging down his booze like a wild animal. However, Do-hyun's mood turned serious, and he asked Howoo why he was letting him get away with what he did. Howoo then clinked his glass of booze and told Do-hyun that he already had fallen for him. The twink NPC became speechless, and his expression says a lot about how confused he was. That said, Do-hyun stood up again and asked Howoo if it was just really okay with him. When Howoo asked him what he meant, Do-hyun brought up Howoo's dad, who hated Espers so much. Do-hyun also pointed out that his dad hated guides as well, making Howoo become speechless. He then asked Howoo what he was going to do, but Howoo revealed that he had no idea at all. While the picture of Howoo and his mom appeared in Howoo's memory, he was thinking that his mother's death might have something to do with the Espers. Howoo could not hide this from his father forever, but he knew that he could not just tell him that he had become a guide on the anniversary of his mother's death. Howoo revealed that he would go and visit his father to see how he was doing, so Do-hyun asked him if he wanted him to go along. The twink NPC appreciated Do-hyun's offer, and the two decided to continue drinking. Howoo revealed that he would sleep over at Do-hyun's place and told him to prepare some toiletries for him, which Do-hyun reluctantly agreed to. Meanwhile, at Yool's apartment complex, he was talking to Moon about a specific address that he would give. While Yool was talking to him, he commanded Moon to go there and keep an eye on Howoo and just let him know if there would be some problems. When Moon asked him if all he wanted him to do was just to inform him, Yool coldly asked him if he was allowed to ask questions of him. That said, Moon asked Yool how long he should follow him instead. Meanwhile, Yool was in deep thought about something else, thinking about himself, waiting to see if it would turn out to be a short or long battle. Kim Dongchul may have stepped down now, but he had been in power in that city for over a decade, so it would be dangerous to underestimate him. Nonetheless, he told Moon he would find out later, since all he wanted him to do was watch over Howoo, and he was excused from his Esper job, which Moon agreed to. Just then, Yool started using his pager watch and expressed how hurt he was that he had left it at home. Yool's eyes showed sadness, and when he closed his eyes, his mood changed, telling himself that before he reunited with Howoo, he wanted to ignore the imprint on purpose. However, Yool seemed to have decided on something as he gave a sly smile, telling himself that he wouldn't have to hold back anymore. Yool pictured the image of Do-hyun and Howoo walking under the rain, telling himself that no matter where Howoo was in that city, he could find him. The gigachad hunk was sure that Howoo would not like it if he found out that he had already imprinted on him, and he might not even love him anymore if he found out how it happened. However, Yool no longer cared about love because all he wanted was for Howoo not to think he was a monster, and not to push him away. At that moment, Yool thought about the day that was about to come, and it was a new beginning for him, but a nightmare for Howoo that he had forgotten about. In the past, while they stayed in Yool's place in the middle of the night, a young Howoo told Yool that he liked the ocean and that they should go together. Yool agreed to Howoo, and they looked at the book that had waves and seagulls. Just then, someone knocked on the door, and it was none other than Howoo's mother, who came asking if Howoo was bothering Yool. The two kids looked at her, and Yool assured her that Howoo was not bothering him, and Yool pointed out that she got off work early that day. Howoo dashed towards his mother, who told Yool that she had prepared a dinner for him and would like him to eat it. Meanwhile, a jolly Howoo told his mother that he and Yool decided to go to the ocean together, asking if she should come with them as well. His mother told him that he couldn't go to the ocean because it was too dangerous, making Howoo feel sad because the picture book said it was amazing and that they should all go together. Seeing him like that, Howoo's mother reluctantly agreed, making Howoo happy again, as he told Yool that her mother would come with them too. Meanwhile, Yool was speechless upon witnessing their mother and son relationship, which he envied so much. Yool's eye turned purple, and he wondered if his hypnosis had grown weaker, so he tried to use it by force, only to feel strangely weak and painful. Seeing him like that, Howoo quickly freed himself from his mother's grip to go for Yool, which shocked his mother as well. Yool knew that it was a different kind of pain that he had never felt before. As his body trembled, he knew that it was not the same pain he felt after using a lot of energy, and he felt like he was bursting with energy. At that moment, Yool unleashed a very powerful magical energy that manifested as water and ice, freezing everything around them. Howoo's mother hugged him to protect him from the impact of the strong magical surge. At that very moment, Howoo was horrified upon witnessing Yool's ice magic that engulfed the whole area. In an instant, the whole mansion froze, and the bureau started investigating the area. They entered the frozen mansion, and the cold breeze welcomed them. Inside Yool's room, the mother and son were lying unconscious on the frozen floor, while Yool looked at them to see if they were just fine. Yool's face started freezing as well while he called Howoo's name. He was trying to reach out to him, but Howoo was unconsciously lying in her mother's arms. Just then, someone from the bureau wearing a yellow suit arrived and witnessed the scene. Howoo looked at him with his angry blue eyes, making the person flinch by just his mere glare. The man contacted his fellow investigators and revealed their location. The person informed the investigation team that the boy's guard was too high, so he would try to talk to him and bring him down, but his fellows knew it would be dangerous. He told them that they should not have brought him there if they were too worried for him, before his fellow told him that he was just a trainee who had not even graduated yet. Meanwhile, the person admitted that it was his fault that he had sneaked him there, but he was sure that he would do just fine. Amidst the situation, Howoo was heavily breathing from too much cold, and the person told Yool that if he left him like that, his friend would die before introducing himself as Taeshik, a healer. Taeshik confirmed whether the power belonged to him. Soon after, Taeshik moved closer to the mother and son. As he removed Howoo from his deceased mother, he was thinking that the explosion was too powerful, that it had razed half the city to the ground, so it was a miracle that the boy was still alive. Just then, spikes of ice appeared before him, and Taeshik told him that he did not care even if the child would die. However, Taeshik pointed out that, unlike him, Yool cared about the child. Hearing that, Yool calmed himself down, and Taeshik used his power to heal Howoo. However, while healing him, he suddenly stopped and wondered what was going on with Howoo's body before realizing that the kid's body had completely changed inside. Taeshik felt chills down his spine upon witnessing such action. He then asked Yool what on earth he had done, but he simply stood before him like an emotionless puppet. Yool remained silent and his ominous glare at Taeshik continued. At that moment, Taeshik looked at Yool and he knew that it was not a matter that he could handle on his own. Just then, Yool asked what would happen if the people below them saw Howoo, making Taeshik become speechless for a while. Nonetheless, Taeshik looked at Howoo's body and lifted it, thinking that the situation was just too unfortunate. Taeshik knew that since he was not a guide nor an Esper, he would become a lab rat for the Bureau for the rest of his life. Taeshik told Yool that there was nothing good that would happen to him if that were to happen. His colleague asked him what happened, and Taeshik told him to just get there and take a look at himself because he couldn't explain it with words. Just then, Yool cast a magic on Howoo, where a glowing line bound their body together. Yool asked Howoo if it was him whom he was afraid of. At that very moment, Yool felt that his connection with Howoo was very faint, so he stroked his forehead and asked him again if he was afraid of him. As Yool could fear that Howoo was feeling, Taeshik's fellow wondered what had happened to his confidence about calming the child down. Yool continued staring at Howoo as the glowing line continued binding them. Taeshik's fellow told him that he would go to him after taking care of the stuff below. Meanwhile, the feeling of being connected to Howoo felt dreadfully satisfying for him. Just then, Yool coldly declared that Howoo was his from then on. Taeshik did not like his fellow's lack of urgency, and when he turned his back again, he jolted upon seeing a monster like Yool, asking him what he was staring at. He bravely moved closer to Yool, who was asking why Taeshik stopped talking and what would happen to Howoo. Taeshik informed Yool that Howoo would be sent to the lab, making Yool feel bad for what he did. Soon after, Yool asked Taeshik what would happen to him, so Taeshik informed him that when an Esper manifested, they would be sent to the training school regardless of their age. Taeshik further explained that Yool would also live there under the Bureau's supervision. Yool then asked Taeshik why Howoo was not coming with him, and why he would be sent to a lab. Taeshik then told him that it was due to the fact that Howoo had turned into something strange. He further explained that Howoo was neither an Esper nor a guide, and on top of that, he was no longer a normal civilian anymore. That said, Taeshik asked Yool what else they could use to describe Howoo other than strange. Taeshik told Yool that he would love to save Howoo, but he had neither power nor authority to do so. Yool then mumbled the word power to Taeshik before asking him if he would help him. Taeshik asked him what he could help him with, and Yool revealed that he would like to hide Howoo. However, Taeshik apologized to him for having no power to do what Yool wanted for Howoo. Yool, on the other hand, insisted that he had the ability to do so, and at that moment Taeshik reconsidered. As other people reached their location, Yool told Taeshik that he could sense 13 people running upstairs, and reiterated that he had the power. Yool knew to himself that it was his first time to control that many people at once, and if Taeshik refused to help, he would make him the 14th person. Taeshik groaned and Yool asked him if he would help him. He could only let out a heavy sigh and agreed to cooperate with Yool. Yool then only requested that he bring Howoo home safely, which confused Taeshik greatly. Meanwhile, Yool simply smiled genuinely after telling him his request. Not long after, someone opened the door and the person seemed surprised by what he witnessed, while Taeshik told him to come over. Behind him were two guys in complete gear, and with a grin he sighed at the sight of an even bigger mess. The man noticed that they were just kids and wondered why there were only two of them. Seeing him, Yool hugged Howoo tightly, while Taeshik awkwardly tried to explain the situation. Just then, Yool's eyes turned purple, and he activated his mind control power against all of them, making Taeshik stop him from doing so. Meanwhile, the team leader laughed at Yool, mocking his ability, and telling him that it won't work against him. However, after a few seconds, his defenses were penetrated, and his body stopped. While everyone was under Yool's mind control, Taeshik couldn't believe his eyes that a child could break through an A-class Esper's mental barrier. Yool told Taeshik that he would deny his presence there if anyone asked, and asked him to take Howoo home using the address he would give him. Yool knew that it was not yet the right time to keep Howoo by his side, so he did what he thought would be best for Howoo. Then, he kissed Howoo's forehead and promised that he would come to get him soon. Not long after, Taeshik took away Howoo, and in the middle of that chilling night he walked away from that frozen area. However, before that happened, Yool used his power to delete those bad memories from Howoo's mind, and used his magic to mind control the others into believing that Taeshik was never with him. Then, he instilled in their mind that only one child was found at the scene. Using his power, he sealed all those suppressed and altered memories in all of their minds. Then, he wondered how long it would take for him and Howoo to meet again. Just then, the team leader turned back to reality and asked Yool if he was the one responsible for that commotion. Yool was not spitting a word, and the team leader realized by the color of his eyes and abilities that Yool was a water-type Esper, and acknowledged the fact that he was too powerful for his age. Then, he invited Yool to come with him as he promised he would find him a place to stay. 21 years have passed since then, and for Yool it felt like such a long time. As expected, Yool had become more than powerful enough over the years, and he eliminated everything and everyone that got in his way. It wasn't time wasted, but if he had stayed with Howoo since they were little, he would not have reached the level he was at present. Despite all that, it couldn't be helped because after all, he was the one who created that situation. Back at the present, Yool knocked on a door, and when it opened, he told him that he had come to pick him up as promised. The next morning, Howoo woke up with Do-hyun still having a hangover, and it was almost afternoon. Just then, the twink NPC asked if he had a deodorant spray for clothes, to which Do-hyun responded. Howoo then asked him if he could use some of it, and he told him that he could find it in the shoe closet. He even told Howoo that he could use the whole bottle if he wanted, but Howoo told him that he didn't need that much. After sniffing his shirt, he checked the time on his phone, and Do-hyun stood up, offering him a ride home. Do-hyun thought he was late, but Howoo assured him that the bus ride would be enough. However, Do-hyun opened the door and insisted on giving him a ride. Soon enough, the two arrived at Howoo's apartment, and Do-hyun left immediately after. While Howoo was still yawning as he walked, the gigachad hunk was watching him from the balcony. He smiled at him, and the NPC twink noticed him too. Just then, he leaned on the balcony for a jump, which shocked Howoo. The Rizlord then took the opportunity for his flashy descent before leaning over Howoo's neck like a hot vampire ready to suck in his liquid. As expected, clumsiness took over, and the twink NPC fell like a Disney princess saved by his Prince Charming. Yool then looked at the time and told him to get ready ASAP because he would take him to his destination himself. Moments later, the two arrived at the facility, and Howoo's whole body quivered in fear. There, Jeonwoo asked him if he had gone home last night. Hearing that, Howoo looked at Yool, who was smiling at him genuinely. While he felt like something was off, Jeonwoo invited him to the gun training. Just then, Yool instantly turned into his cold mode upon seeing Jeonwoo holding his twink NPC's hand. He gave him a deadly cold blank stare, which Howoo immediately noticed. Howoo knew that Yool was not having it, and Jeonwoo noticed it too. Soon after, they went to the training ground and joined the other Espers in gun training. The guides were all surprised that Yool was there, so one of them asked him why he was there. Yool then told him that his guide wanted to do some gun training before kissing him on the head in front of everyone. The gigachad hunk felt genuinely happy for what he did, but the twink NPC felt extremely awkward. The Esper then told Howoo to start the training already. Jeonwoo guided him on how to aim his shot, but Howoo seemed not ready to hold a real gun. Jeonwoo then told him that hands-on experience is the best before guiding him in handling his real gun. He then told Howoo about the machine producing sound waves that shield the city from monsters. He even explained that for someone like him who worked outside the city, self-defense is a must. Just then, Jeonwoo positioned his gun, ready to click it with straight aim, shooting several bullets at the head of the target. When he put down his gun and walked away, Howoo's posture was corrected by the other Esper, who instructed him on how to do it as he looked at the targets. And just like that, the twink NPC activated his top G energy, ready to shoot his gun's load. The result is in, and Howoo managed not to shoot even a single target. Jeonwoo tried to cheer him up, but depression had already taken over the twink NPC's mind. On the other hand, Yool happily commended his good work, so Howoo was not bored at all. Jeonwoo stood there confused, seeing how the two were low-key flirting with each other. Just then, Jeonwoo remembered Yukin's reminder not to get too close to Howoo. That said, Jeonwoo simply watched the two lovebirds together. Moments later, the three of them went to a nearby cafeteria, and as they entered, they saw people rushing to buy food. Jeonwoo gave his order to the cashier before staring at the two lovebirds again. He then wondered if being with Yool was the best thing for Howoo. After choosing their food orders, the three sat at one table. Jeonwoo shared some of his early life events, back when he was still a normal baseball player. He was at the peak of his career when he was diagnosed as a guide. At that moment, he felt like his world was falling apart, and he could not believe it would happen to him. Howoo sympathized with him, but Jeonwoo told them that being a guide opened him to a whole new experience and earned him a lot of money. Moments later, their food was served, and Jeonwoo asked them about their taste. As usual, the twink NPC chugged down every single meat down his throat like he was not getting enough of it. Jeonwoo then asked Howoo about his college life, so the twink NPC stopped eating and pondered about it, before telling that he only remembered chugging down a lot of booze. Yool asked him if he remembered how he got home, which Howoo denied, explaining he always blacked out whenever he got drunk. Jeonwoo told him that he could totally picture Howoo in that situation and complimented his face card. Howoo firmly believed that the face card compliment should be given to someone like Yool. That said, he brought it up to Jeonwoo, making it very awkward for him. The gigachad hunk's eyes sparkled upon hearing Howoo's indirect compliment to him. That said, the Rizlord took the opportunity to flirt with his twink NPC. Yool looked at Howoo with his dazzling eyes, and Howoo could not stand it, so he looked the other way. Not getting enough attention from Howoo, Yool used his whisper-in-the-ear flirting technique, which Jeonwoo found very awkward. Having had enough cringe for that day, Jeonwoo excused himself from the two and dashed his way out. The Rizlord then asked him again what his prettiest body part was, to which Howoo answered to be his eyes. He told Yool that his eyes were like the color of how he imagined the ocean, leaving him caught off guard. Yool asked Howoo how he would feel if they were purple instead, which made Howoo feel confused. He then recalled Seonwoo's purple eyes and imagined them on Yool. The twink NPC told Yool that purple eyes would suit him well too. Hearing that, Yool was surprised, so he quickly stood up from his chair and told Howoo to go back to training. Howoo stood up and wondered if he had said something wrong before quickly following Yool. Little did he know, Yool's ear turned red from what he said. Moments later, at the training center, Hawaii came out from the bathroom feeling refreshed. He then pondered the idea of having a month and a half of training left. While walking, he wondered if he would get certified as a guide without proper training. Meanwhile, Yool was standing there waiting for him, and when Howoo got closer, Yool rustled his wet hair. Howoo then looked at Yool in the eye, and the gigachad hunk smiled at him and commended him for a great job. The gigachad hunk offered Howoo a back massage, which the twink NPC found very sus. Yool then held his hand and offered him to do some mattress live action, which gave Howoo a shiver down his spine. Ever since he became Yool's guide, he could literally feel the gigachad's energy penetrating his body. Whenever they touched, he could feel some time of liquidy stuff coming out of his manplot. Then the heat inside his body felt like running wild whenever they hug each other. Yool stood before him with his eye lock on Howoo, who thought that their way of guiding was different from last time. Hearing that, the gigachad hunk asked him if he wanted it the hard way, which irritated the twink NPC to his core. Yool then teased him, telling him that he could make him climax with his mattress skills if he liked. That said, Howoo threw his childlike tantrums at his hunk Esper. A sudden alarm on Yool's pager watch interrupted their flirting. Yool revealed the bureau would make him work, so Howoo asked him if he would go. The gigachad hunk asked him if he should answer it, and the twink NPC nodded. Seeing that, Yool started pouting in disappointment, but Howoo was clueless about his actions. Yool then switched on his Riz mode and told Howoo to wait for him when he got home, and as expected, the submissive twink reluctantly agreed. The gigachad hunk whispered into Howoo's ears about his hunk shirt's location before leaving him behind. Howoo then got mad and Yool enjoyed every bit of it. Moments later, while Howoo was walking alone, someone in a hoodie followed him. While checking his phone, the hooded individual standing behind him tapped his shoulder, making Howoo turn around quickly. He was an Esper named Gihong who looked like he was having trouble sleeping. Howoo recognized him as an Esper, and he knew that he had to be careful around him. Gihong immediately noticed Howoo's pager watch, so he confirmed if he was Yool's guide, which made Howoo feel sus about him. Gihong asked Howoo to give him the pager watch, which Howoo obviously disagreed with. However, Gihong activated his purple eyes and mind-controlled the twink NPC. Gihong laughed at him for trying to resist, and Howoo removed his pager watch. At that point, Howoo knew he needed to contact Yool, but his body was under Gihong's control. The twink NPC knew that he was still conscious, but his body was moving on its own. Gihong then took him away, and the two walked together. He talked about being the small fries in the industry that no one cared about before formally introducing himself to Howoo, who seemed to have his conscious mind with him. Gihong was impressed by Howoo's capability, so he planned to devour Howoo's memories but failed. Soon enough, another Esper named Hyoendaeuk who wondered if Howoo was really under mind control. They then moved to their car, and Hyoendaeuk opened the door for the twink NPC. Howoo didn't want to get inside, but he had no control over his body, so he sat down like a behaved child. He stared outside the window, thinking about their convo and wondering who Yoondol was up against. It turned out that it was Minister Dong Cheol, and Howoo realized that the old geezer wanted to take his power back. Jihong then told Hyoendaeuk not to think so much about it, but he couldn't help but worry. That said, Jihong gave him a cold stare, making Hyoendaeuk feel scared. Meanwhile, in the rearview mirror of the car, Jihong was looking at the twink NPC, who seemed very pissed. Nonetheless, Howoo realized that Jihong was too friendly for a kidnapper because he even gave him a genuine smile. Upon reaching the location, Jihong told Howoo to follow him. They then went to a specific hotel room, and while on their way to their destination, the twink NPC felt it was all so sus. Jihong used the keycard and invited Howoo inside the room. The twink NPC looks at Jihong, who promised that if he would behave himself, he would untie him. Howoo then blinked his eyes and realized that they had no plan to harm him, so he wondered why they had kidnapped him. Meanwhile, Jihong used his power and untied Howoo's hand from his chains before giving him a serious stare. Then Jihong invited everyone to sit first. Jihong told Howoo not to give them the scared look because they are only doing their job. Soon enough, Jihong revealed that he and Hyoendaeuk were both A-class Espers. He even revealed that they were both working for Minister Dongcheo. The twink NPC then asked him if he brought him there so he could threaten Yool, but Jihong only smiled. Jihong used his telepathy to ask Howoo if he believed something like that would work to Yool, to which he was not about. Howoo knew that his Prince Charming would save his twink damsel in distress, so Jihong asked him if Yool would let it slide. Howoo disagreed, which was agreed by Jihong as well. The twink NPC got pissed off by his rhetorical questions, so Jihong told him that he was simply asking for confirmation. Jihong then revealed that there was someone who believed that dirty tricks would work with Yool. Hyundake reluctantly agreed, and Howoo thought they were referring to Minister Dongchil. Just then Jihong noticed that someone was calling Howoo. It was the gigachad hunk, and the twink NPC thought that his timing was uncanny. While calling from another place, the Rizlord did not even hold back in flirting in the first few seconds. Howoo was pissed by his BS, which Jihong found very interesting. Jihong continued to listen to their convo, and the twink NPC was surprised that Yool was looking for him. Howoo told Jihong that he needed to go home already before Yool found out, but Jihong told him that there was a possibility that Yool would find him already lifeless. The twink NPC then asked him what he wanted, so Jihong told him that it was time for a serious convo. Little did they know, Moon had been monitoring Howoo for 2 days already, so he immediately informed Yool that his twink lover was kidnapped. Moon started to feel anxious as Howoo's life was like a ticking time bomb, so he wondered if he should do nothing at all. Moon then eavesdropped on their convo, where Jihong talked about them being in a tough situation between Minister Dongchil and Yool. Moon agreed with Jihong's predicament. Jihong explained to Howoo that they were put in a situation where they would surely fail, and consequences would await them afterward. Hearing his dilemma, the twink NPC acknowledged their serious problem. When Howoo asked them if they could not find a solution, a sudden surging force was about to reach the building. And just like that, the window shattered from an explosive smash, and Howoo could only protect himself from it. When the twink NPC opened his eyes, he saw Howoo descending from midair. Yool then told him to close his eyes. The twink NPC started fanboying towards the gigachad hunk as he elegantly descended from midair. Yool quickly wrapped Howoo around his arm and kissed him on the forehead. As he stepped on the broken glass shards, Gigong told him that it was just a misunderstanding. However, Yool was standing before him like a true menace. Just then, Hyundake activated his power and lunged towards Yool. However, the top G Esper simply held his hand and pointed the explosion at somewhere else. Seeing that, Gigong was terrified, and he knew it was also over for him. Yool then approached him and grabbed him by his hand. Howoo was in a duck-down position, but he decided to check what was happening. He saw Yool strangling Gigong to death, so he told Yool to stop it. Yool then told him to close his eyes, which left Howoo speechless. Hyundake was already knocked unconscious on the floor, and Yool continued to choke Gigong. Yool's eye turned blue, and he threw the unconscious Gigong on the floor. The gigachad hunk approached Howoo, who assured him that he was just fine. Yool then started at him and squished his face before realizing that he was really unharmed. He told Howoo not to worry about the two ugly losers because he would get rid of them himself. Just then, he picked up Howoo like a Disney princess before looking at the two Espers once again. Deep down, the twink NPC wanted to help them, but Yool kicked Gigong, sending him crashing onto the wall. The gigachad hunk even told him that he would destroy the entire city if they hurt him. Hearing that, Howoo flinched and looked at Yool, whose eyes turned blue again. Howoo apologized for the trouble, but Yool revealed that he abandoned an important guest just to save him. Not long after, Howoo asked Yool how he managed to find him, so he seized the opportunity to riz him again, saying it was the power of love. The twink NPC felt a little cringe out from what he said, and Yool reminded him of his promise to him. Outside the building, Howoo noticed Seungwon standing among the civilians. That said, the jealous Yool asked him if he was close with Seungwon, which Howoo denied. Meanwhile, Seungwon was delighted to see his captain safe. Yool then prepared to jump over the balcony, but Howoo insisted in taking elevator instead. Moments later, the twink NPC woke up in a room, so he wondered where he was. He looked around and saw the locked door, which he tried to open. However, he turned around and checked the window instead. When he roamed around the house, the twink NPC wondered where he was. Just then, he saw a drawing book on the floor and realized that the place was a kid's room. While wondering where on earth he was, Yool was watching him from behind. Howoo heard the opening of the door, so he quickly checked it out. Yool came out from the door and asked why Howoo looked startled. Yool stood before Howoo with a delighted and light demeanor, and he touched his face, asking if he was hungry. The two stood in silence as they engaged in a staring contest. Just then, the twink's stomach rumbled and admitted that he was hungry. Yool laughed at his innocence and held his hand after offering him a cup of milk. The whole house was organized, and in the kitchen, Yool gave Howoo his hot, fresh milk, telling him to drink it up to the last drop. Howoo gave it a blow and realized that the milk was worth it. After giving a taste of Yool's milk, Howoo was reminded of the rice cake that he received from Yool before. When Howoo asked about the temperature transition of the milk, Howoo told him that it was easy peasy for him. The gigachad hunk explained that he only used vibrations to trigger the temperature. Soon after, inside the luxurious house, Yool reminded Howoo to brush his teeth before bed. When the twink NPC asked him where they were, Yool revealed that it was his home. That said, Howoo realized that Yool was living in 3 different places. Nonetheless, Yool revealed to him that he rarely went to that place, and that he had a study there. Howoo imagined his study as a place filled with gold, and Yool was the prince who was reading the book. Seeing him confused, Yool explained that he did not buy the house with his own money. The twink NPC thought he was referring to a loan, but Yool revealed that it was where his family used to live. He then recalled his convo with Yool about him having no family. Howoo then assumed that the house was precious to him, which made Yool feel confused. The gigachad hunk then told him that it was precious to him, but not because of his family. To him, his parents were like heartless monsters, and he never once missed them. Yool's eyes became sad, and he continued explaining that the day he left for the bureau, everyone in that house died except for one person. Yool then locked in his gaze at Howoo and revealed that he had eliminated them all. The twink NPC couldn't fathom how Yool seemed to have no remorse in admitting to a crime. Just then, Yool quickly gave Howoo a back hug and apologized for scaring him. Yool then left him alone, and Howoo realized that he was not joking at all. That said, Howoo started becoming suspicious of Yool's true personality because he knew nothing about his past. He then opened the faucet and washed his face, when suddenly he imagined Yool standing behind him. The twink NPC acknowledged the fact that Yool was nice, kind, and warm, but also had a terrible temper. While pondering things about Yool, the gigachad hunk moved closer to him. Howoo was not ready yet to accept Yool as a whole when suddenly, he grabbed his hand and Howoo completely fell asleep. Yool then stared at his twink partner with his eyes full of worldly desires. When Howoo woke up, he felt the cozy blanket and warmth of the sun. As usual, Yool was there watching him sleeping, and he told him that he would ask his company to excuse him for that day. Hearing that, Howoo woke up deep down his core and realized that Yool was crazy. He quickly sprang from the bed and accidentally whacked his head with Yool's. He then bounced back from the injury, and he was completely knocked down, wondering why he was in more pain than the one he had headbutted. Yool laughed at Howoo's action and invited him to eat breakfast. The gigachad hunk then stood up first and went straight to the kitchen. While Howoo was left alone with a painful head, he was about to go outside when he suddenly noticed the notebook he had seen earlier. While wondering where he saw it, he flipped the pages of the notebook before closing it and putting it down. Just then, he left it there and exited the room. Outside the room, the twink NPC smelled the delicious food Yool was preparing. It was a sunny side-up egg, and Yool seemed very focused on cooking it. Howoo sneaked behind him to give him a jump scare, but Yool noticed him immediately, so he hugged him instead. As they locked gazes with each other, Howoo felt extremely awkward. Not long after, Yool finished plating Yool's breakfast, which made Howoo feel very impressed. As expected, Howoo was so excited to eat Howoo's meaty and tasty sausage and egg. Out of nowhere, the gigachad hunk asked Howoo if he wanted to live there permanently. The twink NPC raised his fork and Yool gave him a serious glare. Howoo then avoided his gaze and told him that he couldn't quit his job. He then changed the topic by asking Yool what happened to Gikong and Hindichok, so Yool explained it to him. Soon enough, the gigachad hunk squinted his eyes and smiled at Howoo, offering him to take him to his office. Later on, the entire week became terrible for Howoo because his manager believed that his kidnapping incident was a sign of misfortune, and he had to work extra every day. The twink NPC's eyes looked so tired from lack of sleep, and his negative vibes were sensed by his female colleague. His female colleague asked him why he was overworking again, but Howoo could only give her an awkward smile. She then gave him a chocolate candy to make him feel better. That said, Howoo began stretching and decided to focus even more to finish everything quickly. Later that day, Howoo went home running in the heavy rain. He dashed his way back to the apartment, and soon enough, he reached his unit. There, he noticed Do-hyun waiting patiently for him, so he entered the passkey and the two entered his apartment. Do-hyun bought some tteokbokki for them to share and told Howoo that he decided to meet him that day because it would be more convenient for them to go to their destination from his place. Howoo realized that Do-hyun only wanted to have a sleepover in his apartment, which made him feel embarrassed, thinking he wanted something else. That said, he told Do-hyun to give him a glass of water, and he quickly chugged it down his throat. The twink NPC put down the glass of water, and Do-hyun laughed at him for crying over a spicy food. Not long after, Howoo threw a towel at Do-hyun to take a shower, so Do-hyun took the opportunity to tease him about him suggesting to do plot development. Howoo was not having it, so Do-hyun decided to take a shower already. Not long after, Howoo was already asleep, and Do-hyun wondered why he was asleep already. Howoo woke up and told him that he was getting his bed wet. Do-hyun then turned around and lay down on Howoo's leg, asking him to dry his hair for him. However, after 30 minutes of stubbornness, Howoo decided to do it. Howoo then lay down on the bed and he did some side position before telling Do-hyun not to bother him anymore. Do-hyun started poking the twink NPC with his finger, so out of irritation he let him sleep on his bed. While in bed, Do-hyun talked about some ulterior motive BS and reminded him to be careful with dating an Esper. Do-hyun then gave him solid advice, explaining to him that if someone became interested in him, that person would die. When Howoo asked him why they would die, Do told him that Yool would definitely kill them because he knew from the very start that he was capable of doing so. In that situation, Howoo couldn't help but agree with him. The next day, Howoo's dad texted him asking if he would come, which made him wonder why. Then, after replying, his dad asked him when he would introduce him to his new friend. He then realized that he could not ever visit him with his new friend, and they continued texting each other. Howoo assumed that if he knew about it, he would be so excited to go. Nonetheless, he put on his necktie, sprayed his perfume, and rubbed it on his neck, ready to go to his destination. Meanwhile, a dazzling Do in a formal outfit arrived and tried to play it cool in front of Howoo, who low-key liked how he looked. Do teased him about not falling for him, which quickly annoyed the NPC twink. Howoo then wore his shoes and told Do to stop by a flower shop. That said, Do told him that they should get going, and Howoo followed right away. Just then, Howoo checked on Yool's door and noticed he was not around, so he went straight to the elevator. Do drove the car and they bought a bouquet of yellow flowers. While on the way, Howoo laughed so hard at the flower seller, who seemed to be into Do then started bragging about it with no touch of humility. To Howoo, Do had always been an important person in his life. That said, Howoo recalled his childhood memory. When he was still a toddler, he always passed by a lonely, sad boy, but it seemed like he could not remember his face. The only thing he could recall was the child's beautiful eyes. After parking the car, the two entered a columbarium, and there, Howoo's father was waiting for them. When he turned around, he immediately asked about Howoo's new friend. The twink NPC informed him that his friend couldn't make it, so he asked him about his life instead. His father then told Howoo to let him know if anything happened to him. He assured his father that everything was fine and that he should not worry. Meanwhile, his father couldn't help but look at him with worried eyes. His father couldn't believe that his baby toddler back then was now a fully grown man. However, deep inside, he wondered if he did the right thing for his son. Back then, the doctor told him that Howoo's trauma was severe and treatment might no longer work for him. Hearing that and seeing his son in a shocked state, Howoo's father was devastated. The doctor even told him that treating Howoo would take a very long time, so he had to be strong. At home, Howoo's father was feeling so devastated and was full of regret. While Howoo was asleep, his father was having the devastating if-only moment. Just then, the lightning flashed, and a young boy appeared before him. It was the young Yool, and he came for Howoo. Howoo's father looked at Yool, who gave him a chance to change something in the past. Yool offered to delete Howoo's memories of the traumatic incident. However, in return, he had to give him Howoo's future. Nonetheless, Yool entrusted Howoo to him until he reached the age he could protect him, promising to be back when it's the right time. Yool then moved closer to Howoo when suddenly, Howoo's father told him that if Howoo did not want him, he had to give up on him. Yool agreed to his condition and smiled. The deal was made, and Yool told him to take good care of Howoo before completely manipulating Howoo's memory. Back at present, Howoo and Do were paying their respect to Howoo's deceased mother. Howoo's father then clenched his fist because regretting what had happened in the past was useless. That said, he called out his son's name and patted his shoulder before inviting the two for a meal. Later on, Howoo was doing some gun training at the site and wondered why his father acted weirdly. It turned out that his father was very caring of him when they ate yesterday. He was looking after Howoo and he was so attentive to him. Back at the present, Woo commended Howoo's shooting skills. He acknowledged that it was just his second time, which meant he had a natural talent for shooting a gunload. That said, Woo demonstrated to him another technique, so he told Howoo that he should get into his position as he was ready to unleash his gunload on Howoo's target. Meanwhile, the jealous gigachad was seething in anger and was about to freeze everything like how Aokiji freezes Marineford. Just then, Howoo and Woo flinched as they noticed the air suddenly got cooler. When he looked at Yool, his face was saying the popular "it's not what it looks like," so Howoo told him to behave himself. Meanwhile, Woo suddenly moved away from him to keep himself from becoming frozen meat. Yool then patted his head and commended him for the progress he had made, making the twink NPC blush. The gigachad hunk told him that he needed to improve his stamina as well. Woo also added that Howoo needed to know how to protect himself and asked him what he enjoyed doing. Howoo was unsure about it, so Woo suggested that he visit the abandoned city, where there were black masses of flesh monsters devouring human meat and destroying the city even further. That said, survivors ended up gathering in one city, and the other cities were like abandoned ghost towns. Woo was not sure if Howoo would feel the same way, but he reminded him to tell him his thoughts when he returned. Just then, Yunshen called him, and Woo happily talked about their upcoming date. At that moment, Howoo suddenly recalled Hyun's words about Esper's possessiveness. Then the gigachad hunk and the twink NPC engaged in a side-eye staring contest. Woo ended the call and left the two in the training field. Meanwhile, Yool kept staring at Howoo's face, so he asked him if he had something on it. That said, the Rizlord told him that his face had irresistible cuteness on it, making him blush so hard. Howoo left the shooting field awkwardly, telling Yool they should go to the next part of the training. The next day, while Howoo was out of work, Kim asked him if he would go home soon. Howoo confirmed it and revealed that someone was going to pick him up. Howoo was caught off guard when Kim brought up his plan to celebrate Howoo's birthday. That made the twink NPC feel confused because everyone knew that Yool was dating him. That said, Howoo politely declined his offer, which pissed him off greatly. Kim turned around from Howoo and his pissed-off aura was sensed by their female colleague, so he came to Howoo's table and asked him about what happened. After knowing that Kim's insensitive offer, his female colleague felt so pissed. Howoo couldn't understand why Kim got mad, while his female colleague was sus about Kim. Nonetheless, the two went out of their office and she told Howoo to tell him right away if Kim would do anything weird. That made Howoo recall his past bad experience in the office when he was just a newbie. Apparently, his boss wanted to develop a plot with him, and the next thing he knew was that his boss was eliminated by an unknown person. Howoo then told her that Kim would not do anything weird, but she was still suspicious of him. While the two were talking outside, Yool was standing and waiting for him. His female colleague believed it was a serious matter, so Howoo assured her that he would be extra careful. Just then, Howoo noticed Yool, and he was bringing flowers for him, standing like the ideal boyfriend any gay twink dreamt of. Yool gave Howoo the flowers, and all the girls around them became BL fans. The twink NPC blushed and the female colleague greeted Yool, who did the same thing. She became speechless in the presence of Yool, and Howoo bid her farewell. Howoo then asked if Yool noticed how people tend to avoid him, and wondered if he would not like to know why and solve it. The gigachad hunk smiled and hugged him, asking if he hated how other people were scared of him. When Howoo confirmed it, Yool looked at him with contemplating eyes. They then talked about related research in the car, where they discussed why people fear them. Yool explained that it was related to the origins of the Espers and guides. 100 years ago, monsters originated from black masses. The gigachad hunk also added that the information given to the public was different, explaining that the black masses were found worldwide. Howoo then listened as he revealed that the only way to eliminate them was to burn them. However, Yool exposed that human research kept them from being annihilated. Seeing Howoo's disappointment, Yool asked if he wanted him to continue. Then Yool further explained that the black masses can mimic what they eat, and one of them ate a human. The resemblance was so uncanny that they thought they had trapped an actual human. The problem escalated when the monsters broke out of the lab and devoured everyone. That said, they believed that the monsters were living among humans in disguise. When Howoo asked why it was related to espers and guides, the gigachad hunk simply smiled. At that point, Howoo came to a conclusion in his mind. Yool then told the twink NPC that it was a good thing that he was handsome. Realizing the sad truth behind espers and guides, Howoo apologized to him. The gigachad hunk revealed that behind his 10/10 face card lies a rotten monster. When he looked at Howoo, he smacked him in the face to tell him that he was not a monster. The twink NPC told him that since he was a guide, he was a monster too, which surprised Yool in the process. Howoo then asked Yool if he was disappointed because he was not a good-looking monster. Yool was just so happy, so he took Howoo later that night to his home. The gigachad hunk created some sort of magical orb on Howoo's hand, which looked like a water sphere. It turned out that after racking his brain, Yool decided that the best gift he could give to Howoo was himself. Hearing that, Howoo's eyes grew wider and Yool looked at him with sparkly eyes. Yool thought that Howoo did not like his gift, but Howoo quickly disagreed. That said, the Rizlord kissed the twink NPC's hand, making Howoo close his eyes. Just then, Yool grabbed Howoo's hand and quickly dragged him inside the house, where the two engaged in plot development. The next morning, at the mattress sports event, the twink NPC was out of energy, and his whole body was covered in love marks. The gigachad hunk noticed that he was already awake, so he approached him with a breakfast he had made for Howoo. Howoo told him that he was exhausted, but Yool told him that it was just a warm-up. Soon enough, Yool put some bread in Howoo's curry and he fed it to his twink NPC. Yool then asked for forgiveness, but before Howoo could say a word, he shoved the spoon inside his mouth, filling his mouth with his creamy soup. After that, Howoo realized he had a job waiting for him. But Yool told him that he already fixed it and it was also his rest day, so he could simply rest in bed. At that point, Howoo noticed Yool's sparkling black eyes, so he extended his hand, touched Yool's face, and had a bed moment, promising to stay at each other's side. Soon after, Yool wanted it done under a contract notarized by a lawyer. After taking a shower, Howoo did a get-ready-with-me outfit check, making himself look like a top model with a massive bottom energy. When he turned around, Yool was smiling at him, so Howoo thanked him for the birthday gift. Turned out the gigachad hunk bought him a whole wardrobe for him. He decided to give Howoo a tour of the house, took his hand, telling him it would be their new home. Howoo went to Yool's bookshelves and marveled at the amount of books in them, thinking there were more books than furniture. Yool then told him that the house was kept empty for a reason. The red book took Howoo's attention, and he realized that those books were so hard to find, but Yool told him that it was not that hard for him. Apparently, whenever Yool went out on a mission, he brought them home. Not long after, the doorbell rang, and Sonwoo was waiting outside with a lawyer. The two welcomed them and they all sat in the living room, where Yool insisted on a contract that would force them to stay together no matter what. The lawyer then asked the gigachad hunk if he wanted the same contract signed by civilians, but Yool clarified that it was between an Esper and a guide. Somu looked at the two as the lawyer finalized the contract. Just then, Howoo noticed that Yool seemed anxious about something. The lawyer then told them she would meet them again to discuss their formal contract. After that, Howoo brought up how rich Yool was, so Yool told him to stop his BS and get back to work, leaving Howoo utterly confused. The twink NPC assumed that Yool was rich because he was an S-class Esper. Howoo then told him that Yool could have been swimming in money if he had not become an Esper. That said, Howoo wondered about it, thinking Yool was good at everything. He even thought he would make good money as a celebrity, but Howoo revealed that Yool had inherited a company that he explained was very small. Yool reiterated that it was indeed a small company, but Howoo thought of something else that was not small. Howoo then was informed that Hyun was very cheerful recently, all thanks to him. Apparently, she didn't have to guide Yool anymore, who was very notorious among the guides. The twink NPC was informed that Yool had a low sync rate with almost every guide, calling him a sports car with poor fuel efficiency. Sumo stared at them carefully and noticed how Yool was glowing outside, while Howoo seemed haggard. That said, Sumo figured out that they did some plot development last night. Seonwoo continued digging into information about their mattress sports event last night, making Howoo's heart skip a beat. Seeing that, Yool simply leaned on his twink NPC while Seonwoo looked at them with genuine happiness. When Seonwoo asked what their sync rate was, Yool told him they hadn't measured it yet. Seonwoo then looked at Howoo and assumed that their sync rate was high. Yool explained to Howoo that the sync rate referred to their compatibility and that they have to do it sooner or later. Just then, Howoo was left dumbfounded when Yool suddenly told him that it would be on that very day. They went to the facility where a silver-haired woman saw them and introduced herself as Hae-young. She immediately recognized Howoo, who was standing in front of Yool. While Hae-young wondered what he was doing there, someone wearing Crocs arrived, making Howoo look at him. The man was surprised to see Howoo in the facility, where he revealed that he had manifested as a guide. Yool then whispered that he should inform them of their relationship, making Howoo blush. The twink NPC introduced him as his boyfriend, and Yool smiled and introduced himself as well. The two were intimidated by Yool's presence, so Seonwoo asked whether they were ready to conduct the test they had requested. They used the beep card to enter the lab testing unit where they sat facing each other. Howoo seemed anxious and Yool noticed it, so he held his hand to ease his worry. The twink NPC closed his eyes, and the compatibility test started. Howoo felt like Yool's liquid was engulfing them as they held hands. The lab researchers were watching how their compatibility test manifested a massive glowing force. Just then, they suddenly heard their device start beeping, and it showed a null result. Howoo wondered if their test was over, and so he was surprised when he saw the result. While the twink NPC had no idea how to interpret the result, the gigachad hunk seemed a little disappointed. That said, Yool looked at the researchers and grabbed Howoo's hand. He then faced the lab researchers and told them to have a word with him in private. Before leaving the lab testing unit, he told Seonwoo to handle the rest of the lab researchers who had witnessed the test result. They then entered a room where the four of them talked. Yool told them that nothing strange had happened, but the man said it was impossible to have a sync rate of null. The man grew suspicious about the result, but Yool seemed to divert their attention to something else. Meanwhile, the two researchers also realized that Yool's eyes would not turn black without guiding, so they concluded that the guiding was legit. Howoo was depressed that the machine malfunctioned, and the man told her that he had never seen such a case before. That said, Yool asked them if they would deny what happened before their eyes. Hyung brought up Howoo's past kidnapping incident, telling Yool that the mind control Esper revealed that his power did not work properly on Howoo. The two also suggested that Howoo could have high resistance towards mind control, which Yool denied. That said, Hyung asked Yool why he was so sure considering he was not even a mind control Esper. She also asked whether Seonwoo had done something to Howoo, wondering whether Howoo had been forced into the relationship. The twink NPC then butted in, denying the accusation and explaining that they did not do anything to him. Hyung told Howoo he could never be so sure, since they could erase his memories, but Howoo stood by his belief. He then grabbed his hand and looked at him, telling them Yool would never do that. Hearing that, the gigachad hunk felt guilty but decided to proceed anyway. They then talked about some guiding stuff that no one cared about, explaining that a small amount of energy stays in the guide's body. The two researchers continued listening to Yool as he explained that Howoo was turning into an Esper, which surprised Howoo. Hyung told him that if his logic was right, then every guide would have been an Esper after some guiding sessions. That said, Yool decided to reveal to them about Howoo's special situation, explaining that he made Howoo an artificial guide. Hyung knew that there had been no success in creating one, and Howoo's case felt like it was planned out like a piece of a well-constructed puzzle. Realizing the weight of the situation, Howoo knew that they should keep the information hidden for Howoo's sake. Then they agreed to have their memories deleted by Seunwoo. Just then, the twink NPC decided to butt in and reassured Howoo that he would cooperate with the process. He then quickly turned to Yool and assured him that he was letting things happen because he wanted to. He even told him that even though he could do so, he knew Yool would not do that to him. Seeing how Howoo trusted him so much, Yool smiled. Howoo then assured him that he would choose to trust him no matter what. Howoo stood up from her chair and the two left them together. When the door closed, Howoo quickly turned his head to Yool, who seemed to look very sad. Seeing that, Howoo knocked on the table, making Yool's attention shift back to him. The gigachad hunk told Howoo that he was a mess, so Howoo wondered what was really running inside his head. Just then, Yool stood up and offered his hand to Howoo, asking him to go on a date with him. Howoo took his hand and the two had a walk outside, where Howoo asked him about his upcoming minister role. When Yool told him he had completed all the preparations, Howoo asked him if there was also an announcement about him. Yool explained that it would be broadcast nationwide, and Howoo began to recall why his father hated Espers. Nonetheless, they continued walking, but Yool couldn't help but wonder about it. Howoo had no idea why his father hated them, and he admitted to Yool that he could not remember anything before he turned 10. Feeling bad for him, the gigachad hunk put his hand on his cheek and assured him that nothing bad would happen. The following day, Howoo sat with his father as his father sipped his coffee. Howoo then revealed that he was dating someone, shocking his father in the process. The twink NPC revealed itself to be a kind, sincere man and an Esper. Howoo even revealed that he became a guide. Expecting the worst-case scenario, he looked at his father, but to his surprise, he was just chill about it. He was confused as hell when his father asked him why it had to be announced that way. Howoo asked if he was not mad, which his father quickly denied. He put down his coffee and told him to leave already. The twink NPC was left dumbfounded, wondering if it was just dreaming. Nonetheless, he left and texted Yool about the outcome. Just then, Yool called him to say that he was happy for him. While Howoo was in great relief, someone was watching him. Howoo sensed it, but when he looked at it, he saw nobody behind him. He told Yool about it and continued on his way, but the unknown person continued tailing him. Feeling his presence, the twink NPC dashed his way to the substation. Upon reaching it, he was catching his breath, but soon called Yool for an update before deciding to go home. Inside the subway station, Howoo wondered if he was just imagining things. However, when he continued walking, a man wearing an all-black outfit suddenly gave him a cold stare. Howoo flinched upon noticing it, and the man suddenly walked towards him. He told Howoo that he had to come with them. Just then, more unknown men grabbed Howoo, and one of them removed his pager watch, making Howoo wonder whether the man was an Esper. While the man was waiting for the order, Howoo wondered whether Dongchul was behind it again. They escorted Howoo near the subway entrance, where he was held captive by the suspicious man. The man told him that if he made any commotion, he would electrocute him with a taser. The man received a call in a car where they held Howoo captive with his eyes covered. The car started moving and Howoo was overthinking about his situation. Along the way, the driver noticed something chasing after them. In no time, the unknown thing was right behind them, and their car skidded on the road. They all felt the crash, and Karkun wanted to take the opportunity to isolate them all to outrank Truckkun. After the impact, Howoo removed his eye cover and noticed something outside the car. He realized that the thing outside caused the crash, so he looked for the stun gun and made his way out. Just then, the massive thing released a massive impact, scaring the shit out of the twink NPC. It turned out to be a monster, so an Esper used his power to blast off the menace. Howoo could only duck and cover as the blast took place, making Howoo wonder if the splattered black meat would pretend to be him. Howoo recognized the presence of an Esper, and he thought of giving it some guidance. Just then, the Esper dashed to Howoo's location, and the twink NPC looked at him. The Esper was under his own silhouette, and it was no other than Moon, who quickly grabbed him out of the car. Outside, he asked if Howoo was hurt, but all he noticed was the mess from the encounter. He then looked at Moon, so the Esper formally introduced himself to him. As usual, Moon seemed pissed, but he apologized for what he had done in the past. Howoo then smiled at him and accepted his apology. Soon after, Moon lifted the car door, where he saw the unconscious bodies of the kidnappers. Howoo insisted on saving them if they could before asking why Moon was there. Moon listened to all of Howoo's queries and confirmed them once and for all. Howoo thanked Moon for saving him before asking him how they could go back to the city. Moments later, Moon lifted one of the kidnappers and dragged the other on the road. Realizing the situation, Howoo knew that he had to walk on his own. Not long after, he wondered if it was just okay to leave Karkun like that, so Moon told him he would do something about it. He also told him that they were a team, which shocked Howoo in the process. After calling him Hyung, Moon felt embarrassed, so he quickly moved. At that moment, Howoo realized that his calm demeanor was a manifestation of his becoming an Esper. They walked the long road until they reached an area where people were standing by. It turned out that they were Espers, and upon seeing them, they quickly rushed towards them. Moon dropped the unconscious bodies, introducing himself as an A-class Esper from the central city. The guarding Espers had no idea of their arrival, so Chongmin grew suspicious of them. Moon then told them that Yool would verify their identity, shocking them in that instant. Chongmin requested a satellite phone and contacted Central City to request some verifications. He relayed the information that Yool could verify the identities of A-class Esper Moon and Howoo. Hearing Howoo's name, the man on the phone freaked out and immediately informed Yool about it. Yool opened the door by force, and he picked up the telephone with a menacing aura. Moments later, Howoo was confined in the nearest clinic, where he was tended by Moon. When he woke up, Moon asked him if he remembered anything. Apparently, after hearing Yool's voice, he fainted. That said, he asked how long he had been unconscious, so Moon told him that he had been unconscious for a day. Hearing that, Howoo recalled his work and he cried. But Moon told him that Yool fixed everything for him. He even informed Howoo that Yool would be appointed as the new minister. At that moment, Howoo realized that he had no clothes to wear nor a place to stay in that area. Howoo then sprang to Moon and asked him if he had extra money. That said, Moon informed him about a credit card from Yool which he can use as much as he wants. Howoo saw it like a beam of hope, but couldn't believe that Yool did that for him. Meanwhile, Moon was excited that they could use Yool's money, which further shocked Howoo. When Howoo expressed his worries about paying Yool back, Moon wondered why he would do such. That said, Howoo explained to him that borrowed money should be paid back. Nonetheless, Moon decided to split the bill with them so he would not feel too burdened. Hearing that, Howoo decided to buy some clothes first. In the nearest seaside mall, Yool and Moon entered the department store, where Howoo and Moon looked for some fits. Moon tried on clothes like an elite supermodel, making Howoo seem like a fanboy. He then took all of his chosen clothes to the counter to buy, surprising Yool in the process. Moon seemed unbothered and started munching on some snacks, which he shared with Howoo. The twink NPC tasted his snack, making Moon feel very happy. Meanwhile, while enjoying the tasty food, Howoo couldn't help but remember Yool's tasty meat. Howoo wondered how he would spend 2 weeks without talking to Yool. Before looking at his pager watch, Howoo's mood became sad, so Moon checked up on him if he was just fine. They then continued walking together to their accommodation. The next day, Moon was banging on Howoo's door to wake him up. Howoo got up and opened the door. He seemed a little sleepy, and he was only wearing a bathrobe. When he invited him to come inside, Moon told him that Yool would kill him if he did that. Howoo was still sleepy when Moon informed him about a call from the bureau, making him think it was from Yool. Moon denied his idea and told him that it was someone else who was staying in a hotel nearby. That said, Moon decided to give him a call and invited Howoo to go to the lobby floor when he was ready. Howoo closed the door and wondered why the said person wanted to meet a civilian like him. Moments later, Howoo joined them in the lobby, where he formally introduced himself. The man named Sangjin was an S-class Esper and the minister of that city. Sangjin apologized for his immediate intrusion, and the two engaged in a staring contest. To Qi and Howoo, a suspicious look which Moon noticed before leaving them both. Jialo was shocked when Sangjin recognized him as the gigachad hunk's guide. He explained to Howoo that for an S-class Esper, access to information was so easy. Apparently, Sangjin was waiting for Dongshel's downfall. He even told Howoo not to worry because Yool would not let anything bad happen to him. While the twink NPC felt awkward, Moon was watching over him from a short distance, eavesdropping on their conversation. While sitting, Howoo was informed about what was about to happen, so he clenched his fist and decided to ask a question. Sangjin then listened to his question, asking what would happen to Espers who attack civilians. He then told him the rules of the bureau, where the punishment would be execution. Sangjin set down his coffee and told Howoo that they should be punished for their crimes. Howoo then asked for confirmation about the punishment and remembered the 2 Espers who kidnapped him, thinking they had been executed. Sangjin then confirmed that they should have been executed for real, making Howoo feel devastated. Apparently, Howoo thought that they had just been imprisoned somewhere before, recalling what happened in the past with him and Yool. Nonetheless, Sangjin informed him that eliminating Espers had been avoided lately, giving Howoo a little hope. He then gave Howoo a phone and a pager watch he could use for the meantime, explaining they were equipped with GPS. Sangjin also revealed that he had hired some tour guides for him before leaving, and told Howoo to call him if he needed anything. Just then, Moon appeared like a very excited child, making Howoo wonder what his deal was. Howoo considered asking Moon, but seeing him very happy, he did not do it yet. Moments later, they went to the nearby beach where Moon was flexing his swimming skills. Nonetheless, Howoo was surprised that their civilian tour guide, named Freya, was as hot as the Espers. When he looked at Howoo, he awkwardly asked where the other tour guide who came with him. While Howoo was dying from awkwardness, someone behind him came dashing. It was an energetic tour guide named Hyun-hui who brought a lot of ice cream popsicles. He offered his food to them and he opened a water bottle to drink. Freya wiped the water splash on his face, making Howoo stare at them with envy. That said, he couldn't help but think of Yool again and their happy moments. Howoo's mood suddenly went sad, and as usual, Moon noticed his mood swings. That said, he moved out of the water and checked on him. The other two guys then invited them to leave if they were done swimming, and they all left the area. Moments later, Howoo was standing with his suitcase when someone tapped his shoulder. It was no other than Moon, who asked him what he was looking for. Apparently, Howoo was looking for the two tour guides, so Moon explained that they couldn't come. He even expressed his disappointment about leaving already because he liked the beach. Meanwhile, the twink NPC expressed his disappointment at getting tan skin. Nonetheless, Moon assured him that he would escort him home safely. They then walked together when suddenly someone approached them. It was Sangjin, and he looked so happy that the two looked happy, and Howoo took the opportunity to thank him. Sangjin then asked him if he needed some car sickness meds for their 5-hour travel time from that place. Soon after, Howoo was sitting in a car and he seemed to be daydreaming when suddenly someone knocked on the window. It was Moon who brought some meds for car sickness, so the twink NPC chugged them down his throat. Meanwhile, Moon told him that he would not take the car because his Esper skills would be more than enough for him to get home. As the city gate opened before Howoo's eyes, the Espers were simply flying above the car. Moon was flexing his airbending skills, making Howoo feel a little better. Just then, they all stopped before the presence of a massive winged monster. The Espers prepared to attack when suddenly the monster flinched, and a powerful energy began engulfing it. While Sangjin wondered why a monster had suddenly appeared, someone arrived. It had familiar blue hair and body, so Howoo looked at him. It was no other than an S-class Esper, Yunshin. Elsewhere in the central city, Yool was standing in front of several Espers under his command. Sangjin informed him about sending Yunshin to fetch Howoo. After hearing that, Yool's mood became calmer, but still with an element of sadness in his eyes. As he looked at the city gate, he recalled Howoo's cute face and his innocent reactions, remembering how he was holding his hand. The gigachad hunk wished that Howoo were an object he could possess. As he looked at his hand, he knew that Howoo was the only one who could make him feel back to normal. Sangjin then asked Yool what they should do with Dongchul. However, Yool simply wanted him to have Skonchang train as a guide. The cars were speeding back to the central city. Yool then started imagining Howoo in a chain, breaking his own collar lock. Meanwhile, the car arrived and Howoo got out of it immediately. On the other hand, Yool was still thinking that there would come a time when Howoo would break free from his restrictions. When the city gate opened, Howoo was standing behind it. Meanwhile, Yool was still thinking of how Howoo would walk away from him someday. Howoo was searching for Yool, so when he heard his voice, he quickly turned around. His eyes sparkled from so much excitement as Yool stood there before his eyes, welcoming him with open arms as Howoo lunged at him to give him a hug. They then felt very happy with each other's presence. The two were finally reunited, and Yool couldn't help but hold his face, making Howoo feel happy. Sangjin then chimed in on their conversation, giving them a genuine smile. Just then, Yool hugged Howoo as if Sangjin would steal him away. Yool the gigachad hunk was not happy when Sangjin told Howoo that he had been just a small kid when he first met him. To Sangjin, Yool had never changed in 20 years, but to Yool, he had changed considerably. Sangjin then talked about his re-evaluation, which Yool revealed to be the same year he became an S-class. Sangjin then admitted that he was not half as powerful as Yool, who confirmed the info. Howoo then speculated that Sangjin was very close to Yool, which triggered an intense face-off, with both of them giving ironic expressions. Yool smiled at him shortly afterwards, and in that place, Sangjin learned what happened to his fellows 20 years ago. Yool then left him to Seongwon, who reluctantly agreed to his order, especially when he saw his shift in mood. Seongwon immediately assisted Sangjin, leaving the two behind. Just then, Yool held Hwoo's waist and pulled him closer to him, making the twink NPC blush a bit. Elsewhere, they are preparing the press con for Yool's announcement. Sion was watching over the journalists, who started murmuring about the press con. Just then, the gigachad hunk made his grand entrance by arriving in midair and landing on the mini-stage with his dazzling presence. In an instant, all cameras began snapping photos of Yool, who was holding his very own twink NPC. The gigachad hunk gave a deadly glare at the cameras, making Hwoo notice that the cameramen dropped to their knees. Yool put him down and asked him if he was just all right. Hwoo was sweating from embarrassment, but Yool simply smiled at him. They then started the press con, where Hwoo was surprised when Yool held his hand romantically. The gigachad hunk happily talked in front of the camera as they held hands. Just then he looked at Hwoo and the two engaged in a staring contest. Hwoo's eyes sparkled, and soon enough Yool told him to wave for the crowd, who were enjoying the magical confetti. While the twink NPC couldn't believe what was happening, Sigun decided to show off her skills. That said, she punched the wall, destroying it in that instant and shocking Hwoo in the process. Sigun laughed at the commotion she created, while Hwoo was surprised to see Yool laughing genuinely. Yool and Howoo's photos were attached to the contract that Yool requested. The gigachad hunk showed him the contract, so the twink NPC read it all. Just then, Yool gave him a pen for him to sign the contract. At that moment, Howoo pondered about love, while Yool looked at him passionately. Nonetheless, Howoo still believed that the contract was very weird from the get-go. He pointed out some strange parts in the contract, but Yool insisted that there was nothing wrong with it. Yool looked at it, and Howoo explained that it was not normal. Inside that building, the gigachad hunk looked at him, explaining that once the relationship was over, his life was over as well. Apparently, Yool wanted to follow what was included in the contract, so Howoo reluctantly signed it. Upon signing it, Yool gave him a smile before standing behind a table and pulling one of its drawers to get something from the inside. These were Howoo's pager watch and their couple phone. Howoo quickly checked his phone and realized that Do-yeon was fuming in anger. Just then, he was calling him again, so he answered it, and Do-yeon was really very mad that his voice reverberated in that area. Howoo apologized for worrying him, so in his room at that moment, Do-yeon felt relieved that he was safe. Howoo then looked at Yool, who was giving him a paradoxical smile. He then reached for Howoo's phone and snatched it from him to answer the call himself. Howoo was not against it, so he started hitting Yool for doing so. However, Yool suddenly grabbed his hands, shocking Howoo in the process. Yool told Do-yeon not to cross the line, so Howoo slid himself and told Yool to give him his phone back. Yool gave him his phone, and Howoo walked out very upset. Outside, he tried calling Do-yeon out of frustration. Soon enough, Howoo's call was received by Do-yeon, who told him that Yool was a real prick. Howoo then talked to him and learned that Do-yeon once visited Howoo's apartment. However, Yool did not give him a satisfying answer about Howoo's whereabouts. The gigachad hunk then tapped his shoulder and tried to intimidate him. And just like that, the twink NPC understood what happened. Howoo knocked at the door, and when he entered, he saw Yool kneeling down before him. Yool was pleading with him not to be mad at him, so Howoo calmed down and started comforting his man-child partner. That said, he offered him open arms, making Yool's eyes sparkle. Just then, he quickly hugged him and told Howoo that he valued a lot of things in that city, which Howoo agreed with. However, for some unknown reason, Yool smirked like a villain. Days after the nationwide broadcast of Yool, Howoo quit his job and moved to the bureau's facility. He was scrolling on social media when he noticed comments from his classmates, which surprised him because he could not recall them at all. Nonetheless, he let that slide because Kim from his previous job was also interviewed about him. Though while this left him embarrassed as hell, Myeon texted him, telling him Kim was just jealous. Moments later, Howoo was slacking off when Moon entered his new place. He forgot to get his stuff from the office, so Moon offered to help him, but also gave him a sly smile. Moon was willing to do it because he had never seen a civilian office before. That said, Moon quickly went off for Howoo's stuff. Not long after, Moon arrived with his stuff, surprising Howoo at how fast he did it. Meanwhile, Yool was pissed off at how Moon called Howoo his hyung. Seeing that, Moon quickly made his way out of that room. Back at the present, Howoo woke up and did some stretching before checking the clock. The twink NPC tried focusing his skills as an Esper, but nothing happened. He ended up sulking on the floor with his disappointment. Then he positioned his hand and focused once again. He tried to imagine water bubbles like Yool's, but nothing happened at all. He even tried to imagine freezing a bowl of water, yet again nothing happened. Just then, Yool chuckled at him while doing his BS. That said, Howoo felt extremely embarrassed, while Yool enjoyed every bit of it. The gigachad hunk instantly froze the water, making Howoo awkwardly leave him alone. However, Yool followed him, so Howoo stopped him. Howoo couldn't look him in the eye, but Yool simply gripped his two hands. The twink NPC rested his head on Yool's chest, feeling very embarrassed. Yool touched his face and gave him a warm smile. Howoo told Yool that tomorrow would be his first day at work, which he confirmed before grabbing his body and throwing him in the bed for some plot development. In a dream, a young Howoo was dashing his way to a door. When he opened it, he saw an ominous presence inside it. Howoo tried to look at it, but it scared him so much that he ran away. The next morning, Howoo was confused about what he had just dreamt. That said, he looked suspiciously at a closed door. Inside the lab testing facility, Yool was quietly dozing off while sitting when Haeyoung suddenly shook him awake. Haeyoung wondered why he was so sleepy, so Howoo opened up about his weird dream. That said, Haeyoung wondered if it was due to the energy residue in his body. Hearing that, Howoo recalled another residue inside him, and blushed so hard that Haeyoung realized that he had done close contact guiding, that she even reminded Howoo to report any changes that he would notice. Just then, Haeyoung asked him if he did exercise, which Howoo confirmed. Hoblan. Haeyoung then added it to his report and put Howoo in some physical exercise. Moments later, Howoo was wobbling as he walked down the stairs from the exercise. Just then, Seonwoo saw him and called his attention, so the two sat down at a table, where Seonwoo gave some letters to Haeyoung. Haeyoung was surprised, so he took a seat and slammed the letter on the table in disagreement with mind control. Seonwoo explained that it was to test how well Howoo could defend himself. Hearing that, Howoo believed that Seonwoo would not harm him. Seonwoo then smiled as he used his mind control skill on Howoo, who was surprised that his hand moved on its own. Just then, his index finger poked his face, and Seonwoo raised his phone's camera, capturing him in that instant. At that moment, Howoo wondered why Seonwoo was smirking. Haeyoung then told Seonwoo to stop the BS, but he was persistent in doing his shenanigans. That said, he made Howoo do other poses, snapping every single one of them. Then he showed Howoo the photos he captured, making Howoo badly want to resist. At that moment, an alarm was triggered, and Haeyoung was surprised at Howoo's resistance. Seonwoo told Haeyoung that people would only make a desperate effort when they have a reason to do so. He was impressed by Howoo's ability to resist, and he knew that he would be able to resist Yool's power in no time. Haeyoung then refused to do so when Seonwoo asked her to keep Howoo's photos. That said, Seonwoo decided to send the photos to Yool, which shocked Howoo. Then he left, telling him that Yool summoned him. Meanwhile, Howoo was devastated to have been captured in those poses, so Haeyoung asked him if he was okay. After opening a bottle of water, Haeyoung explained the test results to Howoo, saying it was fair to say he was immune to mind control. However, Haeyoung told Howoo how she feels about him engaging with Yool. Apparently, a few days ago while she was with Yool, Haeyoung realized that there was so much research data in the bureau's basement. She then noticed a book containing top secrets, so she decided to flip through the pages. She read something that surprised her so much that she dropped it in that instant. Yool caught the book and asked Haeyoung if she had found what she was looking for. Haeyoung was in great disbelief after reading the book, so she confronted Yool about the research that she needed to do for him and Howoo. While talking to Howoo, she admitted that she was not happy with Howoo's involvement with Yool. Howoo awkwardly told her that she would only like to hear the positive comments, which Haeyoung agreed to do so. Haeyoung explained that Yool's power was continuously growing, and she compared them to two bottled water, one filled and one empty, which she associated with espers and guides. Haeyoung explained that for impure espers to become pure again, they use guides as their filters. However, a portion of the impure energy remains with the guide, which made Howoo ponder about it. Haeyoung explained that things are different for him because his retained energy is too high, and that espers should not be guided by him. However, the case is not the same with Yool because Yool's power is increasing even more. Just then, someone arrived as she explained it to Howoo, and it was no other than Yool. The twink NPC was surprised that Yool was listening to them. Haeyoung quickly left right away, so the gigachad hunk squished Howoo's face, asking him to smile for him. Howoo thought that Seonwoo was scolded by him, so he thought of deleting the photos ASAP. He positioned his hand in front of Yool, which he tapped. Yool thought he was asking for his hand, so Howoo told him that he was asking for his phone. That said, Yool gave him his phone, and Howoo felt something off. Just when he opened the power button, his photo flashed as Yool's wallpaper. The twink NPC couldn't believe it, so Yool told him that he was the only one who had his photo. When he slid the phone, Howoo saw that their photo together was the other wallpaper. Howoo was looking at it, thinking he wanted to delete that photo back then, but Yool saved it before he could. That said, he asked Yool why he had not deleted the photo yet, and Yool told him it was a moment worth remembering. The twink NPC wondered why a mere photo seemed very important to him. That said, the twink NPC returned the phone to him, asking him if he had come to tease him with his photos. Yool, however, revealed to him that Sangjin would be returning to their city that day, so Howoo wondered if he would not miss his departure. He told Yool that Sangjin would send him off, so Howoo knew that it was in less than 30 minutes. The gigachad hunk then asked him if he would like to go, and Howoo, with no hesitation, stood up to bid him farewell. That said, they both went to Sangjin's location. Along the way, Yool told Howoo that someone wanted to meet him, which made him anxious because something bad always happened when they were apart. Seeing that, Yool held Howoo's hand and used his beep card. Howoo wondered whether he should bid farewell to Dohyun's mom, and admitted he was not used to calling her doctor. Yool smiled and gave him a peck before telling Howoo to do it quickly. Howoo nodded and he quickly dashed his way to Haeyoung. Moments later, some people looked at the sky and Sungwon realized that it was Yool, who arrived along with Howoo. Yool then told Sungwon that he came to bid farewell to Sungjin. Sungwon looked at Sungjin and agreed to Yool's decision. How, on the other hand, Sungjin noticed them, so he talked to them and Howoo bid him farewell. Sungjin then told Howoo that he would also convey his regards to the tour guides, which made him very happy. Sungjin promised to do so and gave him a thumbs up before leaving. Just then, the Esper escorts started flying to accompany Sungjin. The sky was peaceful and the city gate was then closed. Howoo thought it would be nice to have a vacation in the southern city. He then looked at Yool and he looked back at him before grabbing his hand once again. Later that evening, a man was walking around a house where an old man was distressed. It was no other than Dongchel, who looked at the door where Yool entered with his ominous smile. The old man flinched, and Yool asked him if he was disappointed that he kept him alive. Dongchel felt fear all over his body, so he begged for Yool's forgiveness and knelt before him. The gigachad hunk looked at him with disgust, so Dongchel begged him to end his miserable life. Yool then revealed that he wanted to give him a chance, so Dongchel asked about it. That said, he told Dongchel how he could escape the city gate before tapping his shoulder and leaving him alone. As Yool walked away, Dongchel asked if he would leave Songyang alone, but Yool told him that he had no other option but to trust him. The next day, in Yool's house, he was cooking when suddenly, Howoo woke up with back pain. Yool greeted him with good morning and served his breakfast. Apparently, Howoo was filled with love marks from their recent plot development. While Yool felt bad for what he did to him, Howoo decided to eat instead. He then shook his head while recalling what happened last night. When he took another scoop, he accidentally dropped it in shock after learning in the news that Dongchel had run away. Howoo quickly asked if Yool had seen it, and quickly turned his head to the news on television. The news anchor reported on Dongchel's escape, and Yool told Howoo it was not a big deal. The news revealed that he was captured leaving the city in a car. Yool then wiped the spilled porridge on Howoo's pants, and while rubbing the stain, he assured Howoo that he never once lied to him, so he could ask him anything he wanted. Howoo looked at Yool after hearing that, and Yool looked at him the same way. At that moment, Howoo knew that he had to make a choice. Moments later, Songwon reported that Dongchel was already isekai by some monsters, making Yool feel relieved. Apparently, Songwon failed to keep him alive, so he asked Yool what to do with Seon-young. Yool then smiled and told him she had forgotten about her before asking Songwon what he was thinking. Songwon started sweating hard before awkwardly laughing at Yool. The gigachad hunk then stopped writing and told him that he would keep his promise to keep him alive. Songwon understood it clearly and gave his respect to Yool before leaving. Right after, Yool opened his laptop and started typing something. It turned out that he was accessing Howoo's files and realized that Howoo was truly becoming an Esper, triggered by Gihong, although he had suspected it during his rampage. Just then he paused and added more information about Howoo, but kept changing it depending on its credibility. He then continued scrolling through Howoo's profile and continued working on it. Yool then imagined Howoo's peaceful sleep and edited something once again. That said, Yool decided to twirl his chair because he didn't want to stop their guiding. Not long after, Yool saw Howoo walking along with Haeyoung, who seemed very close to Yool. Yool grinned, telling that Howoo would never be able to escape from him. Meanwhile, inside Howoo's dream, he stepped into a dark place where he continued walking until he noticed an open door where he was having fun with Dongkyang. As he moved forward, he saw a black door. When he opened it, he found a child inside. As he opened the door further, he saw that the child had purple eyes. The child stood up and threatened him, shocking Howoo in that instant. Voices were coming into his mind, telling him to open the door or keep it closed. Then he clearly saw the purple eyes as if he were being watched. That said, Howoo jolted as he opened his eyes, and Yool was there holding his hand. The lab researchers presented Howoo with a graph, explaining that everything was normal, but when he did close contact guiding, there was a difference. The twink NPC blushed upon hearing it. While Yool was so proud of it, Ho-young further explained that Yool was the only test subject, so the result was precise. Yool told them that they could never be so sure, so the other researcher assumed he was thinking of sharing Howoo with other Espers. Yool then smiled, telling them he would never do such a thing, which pissed off the two researchers. Nonetheless, Yool somehow mocked them for receiving the unimpressive report, which triggered the other researcher to talk back. Seeing them upset, Yool stood up and told them to keep up the good work. He then invited Howoo to have lunch together, but Howoo had been having lunch with Dongkyel's parent lately. The gigachad hunk used his manipulator skill to make Howoo feel bad for declining. That said, the twink NPC agreed to have lunch with him. Moments later, Howoo was sitting so relaxed when Yool arrived with a drink for him. Howoo then told Yool what he was dreaming about earlier. The twink NPC told him that there were tons of open doors, which Yool described as a strange dream. Howoo agreed to it and revealed that it was like unfolding his past memories. Yool reacted strangely to what he said as he looked at Howoo, closing his eyes. Howoo recalled every part of his dream, and he realized that he was like having a projector in his head. Just then, Howoo quickly sprang from his seat and claimed that it was his ability as an Esper, shocking Yool in the process. The gigachad hunk smiled at him and invited him to return to the lab. Soon after, they met the two lab researchers, who explained that mind control Espers are exceptional manipulators, with a well-organized memory system. The lab researcher told them that Howoo's explanation exactly described it. That said, Howoo wondered why he had mind control power because the lab researchers expected him to have water or ice powers. Meanwhile, Yool was just looking at Howoo like he knew nothing. The lab researcher was considering the fact that Yool has two types of power, so Yool having mind control was not surprising at all. Yool imagined Howoo being trapped inside behind a door and promised him that they would always be together. Later that day, Howoo went to his father's home, where Howoo wondered if he should have called him first. Apparently, he was thinking that the Esper with purple eyes was related to his mother's death. Just then, his father arrived and told him that he thought he would come home soon. He then invited him to go inside, where he served him with some food. His father invited him to eat, and they shared a meal together. He then offered more food to Howoo, which surprised him in the process. They then ate in silence, and after that he washed the dishes while Howoo remained seated, thinking about the question in his mind. Just then he stopped wiping the plates when Howoo asked for help. Howoo dropped the bomb by asking him what happened before he turned 10. His father sighed heavily and turned to him before sitting in a chair. He then started asking Howoo why he was curious about it, and looked directly into his eyes as he recalled his last moment with his beloved wife. His father told him that there wasn't much he could tell him, but Howoo pleaded to simply tell him what he could remember. He became speechless, and he looked down with sad eyes as he recalled the events of that unfortunate day. Back then, his father was ready to go to work, but he told his wife that he would come home early for dinner. Howoo's mother smiled at him and bid him farewell, so his father went straight to his work. However, later that day he got a call from the bureau that his wife Nyan had gotten into an accident. When he returned, he saw his wife and he dropped his phone. At present, the twink NPC looked at his father as he closed his eyes, trying to remember that unfortunate incident. Howoo wondered if his mom had left him to go to work, which his father denied, telling him his mother took him along with her. However, that very night an alarm was activated, so his father looked for it everywhere. When suddenly he saw a slightly open door and Howoo was lying on the bed deeply asleep. His father could not tell him more, so Howoo told him it was just okay. He then stood up from his chair and told Howoo that he was not a good parent before leaving him to get some rest. The twink NPC exited their house unsatisfied with his father's answer, but somehow understood why his father hated them so much. Howoo then walked towards the gate, still feeling deeply stuck. When he opened the gate, he saw Yool waiting for him outside. Howoo told him he hardly got anything from his father, so he invited Yool to help him look at the records of the bureau, but he disagreed. Howoo was shocked that Yool would not allow him, but on the other hand, he suggested that he look at the news articles instead. The twink NPC realized Yool was right, so he clasped his arm around him and thanked him. The two then smiled at each other, but Howoo grabbed him and looked at him suspiciously. Howoo's hand had slipped inside his pocket, and he realized there was something inside. He wondered if he would ask about it, and Yool realized that he noticed it. Howoo then grabbed it and asked about it anyway. Upon looking at it, Howoo realized that it looked like a ring box, which made him feel pressured. When he opened it, he noticed a weird-looking purple button item inside. He tried blinking, wondering what it was, so Yool told him that it was a magic button. When Howoo asked him if he could press it, Yool stopped him from doing so. Yool told Howoo that if his past memories were giving him a hard time, the item would help him deal with it. Then Howoo promised to be careful with it, and he closed it again. Howoo was browsing the internet for anything related to his memories. He then realized that Yool was right about the news articles, so he read the articles about Yool's family. The twink NPC discovered that Yool was the only Esper who awakened at a very young age. Reading that article made Howoo understand Yool even more. Nonetheless, he wondered why he couldn't find any article about major incidents during that time. He kept scrolling when suddenly Haeyoung chimed in, wondering what Howoo did during his break time. Haeyoung glanced at what Howoo was reading, so he informed him that Yool was associated with the Taeho group. He was surprised by the information as it was the biggest company in their city. After knowing that, Howoo quickly searched for more information about the Taeho group. This is where he found Yool's photo when he was younger, along with his parents Yeonhee and Yuhon. Howoo was left dumbfounded at how rich Yool was, and with Haeyoung's revelation about his fame as an orphan who inherited billions. Apparently, if not because of his fame, he would become a lab rat. Hearing all that, Howoo closed that window and felt bad for Yool, but also considered the possibility that his mother was a casualty of Yool's incident. Nonetheless, he disregarded the idea because Yool was not a mind control Esper. The twink NPC closed his eyes and tried to open the closed door that he had in his dream. That said, he was able to do so, and he entered that door, where he had heard two kids talking and laughing. Just then, Howoo crashed the device in his hand, and Haeyoung felt worried for him. After that, Howoo had a severe headache, wondering how much longer he could ignore his memories. Outside the lab facility, Howoo went to the nearest vending machine to buy some drinks. While Howoo couldn't decide what to choose, someone chose a drink for him. It was no other than Seon, who told Howoo to simply address him by his first name. Howoo took the drink and gave it to her. The twink NPC was then surprised when Seon noticed that he seemed very bothered. Seon offered to listen to anything that bothered Howoo before sitting and telling Howoo that he was a good listener. Howoo went speechless for a while, but deep inside he had been wanting to ask a lot of questions. Moreover, on the day Yool went out to meet someone, Howoo tried his best to still see the best in him. That said, he wondered if he could bury everything from his past and move on with his life. The twink NPC asked Steon how he would handle recalling bad childhood memories, involving the death of his family. Hearing that, Steon stretched her arms and told Howoo that her family was just parasites, explaining that there was a huge fuss when she became an Esper. In the facility, Howoo told her that there was no pressure for her to tell her story. Just then, Siwon cracked the concrete bench and told him that her family was poor as hell. On the outskirts of the city, a young Siwon was beaten badly, and he was even sold to the bureau. Despite the despair that he was facing, she was labeled as a useless brat who often got beaten to death. She endured everything for the sake of survival, and she grew up stronger than she ever was. At present, Siwon explained that she became the third S-class Esper in their city, and laughed hard, explaining that the second one was Yoon-chan. Howoo became confused about their ages, so Siwon explained that Yoon-chan manifested his power earlier than her. She further explained that after she manifested her powers, her photo was made public like Howoo's. Howoo then asked Siwon what happened next, so she explained that her family learned about it, and they put on a show with their fake story in front of the journalist. Siwon knew that all they wanted was money, and that she wished them all dead, telling Howoo that she would not want to recall anything about them at all. Howoo was shocked by her revelations, specifically how she planned to feed her family to the monsters. The twink NPC then revealed that he was scared that his memories would come back, knowing they were bad ones. Siwon then asked Howoo why he seemed bothered trying to recall his memories. Howoo confessed that he could not avoid them forever, because he knew that his memories would come back. That said, Siwon told Howoo to remember it as soon as he could, so he would no longer be anxious about it. Howoo then listened to her as she explained that it would come back to him whether he liked it or not. That said, she told him that even if it was hard to recall things, she would do it and move on with life. Just then, her phone rang, and the two decided to go to the lab facility. Along the way, Siwon asked for a copy of the imprinting contract with very enthusiastic energy. Howoo then assumed that he would imprint with her guide, which she confirmed, and Howoo congratulated her for it. Moments later, Howoo talked to Yool about his decision to look at his memory. Howoo seemed bothered when Howoo told him that he wanted to know it ASAP. The gigachad hunk then reminded Howoo about the button he had given him, explaining that once he recalled his memory and hated him so much, the button would help him deal with it. Yool then stood up and invited Howoo to dinner. After their dinner, Howoo fell asleep, and Yool simply watched him sleeping peacefully. Howoo held his hand and cuddled him. Howoo had his dream again, where he walked down a hallway and opened a closed door. When he opened it, his childhood memory came back to him, and he saw his classmates playing with him. It did not take too long for him to realize that it was his childhood memories as a playful kindergarten student. Howoo saw his toddler self running happily, when suddenly, he grabbed his classmate who was trying to fool him with his instant rules. Howoo got mad because it was not fair to him, so the two ended up fighting each other. The teacher calmed them down and called Howoo's parents to fetch him. Howoo asked his teacher if his mom would come, and not long after, she did come to calm him down. He told his mom that it was not his fault, so she gave him a look that believed in whatever he said. The two then went their way, and Howoo was informed about a sick boy whom he could play with. They entered the gate of the house where his mom worked and entered inside. Howoo and his mom knocked on the door, and he wondered what was inside it. There they saw Yool sleeping on a table, so Nayeon lifted him, and Howoo took a peek at his face. Yool was sick, and Howoo was told not to wake him up. While Howoo was flipping the pages of his book, he heard a sound that came from the awakened Yool. When he saw him awake, Howoo quickly went to him to touch his face and look at his eyes, which turned out to be purple. Howoo formally introduced himself to Yool, and the two engaged in a kids' staring contest. Young Howoo was surprised when Yool asked him if he wasn't scared of him. Howoo then looked at him and moved closer to him. Yool thought Howoo would hurt him, but he was surprised when he simply patted his head. Their eyes met once again, and the two hugged each other. Yool felt relaxed with him, while Howoo felt so happy to hug him. Howoo then wrapped himself with Yool's blanket, and Yool smiled at him, making Howoo blush. Just then, Howoo knelt down as he realized that the purple-eyed kid in his memory was Yool all along. He then recalled Yool asking him if he looked good, and how his eyes sparkled from time to time. He even recalled how Yool hugged him and how he complimented his eyes. Tears started running down his face as he realized that Yool had been part of his life since he was younger. Inside Yool's house, Nayeon knocked on his door, and she entered inside, only to see Howoo and Yool bonding closely. Howoo rushed to her, irritating Yool in the process. Just then, Nayeon was mind-controlled by Yool, making her ask Howoo if he wanted to go back tomorrow. Howoo then happily agreed to do so, making Yool feel genuinely happy. Howoo then rushed back to give Yool a hug. Moments later, Howoo activated his picky eater persona, but his mom told him to stop his BS. Yool then whispered to him, bargaining to make him something yummy if he would eat the food. After eating, Yool opened a candy for Howoo and he told him to stop crying. Just then, Yool looked at him with his dazzling eyes. Moments later, Howoo saw a struggling Yool who turned to him, telling him not to be afraid of him. Howoo hugged Yool and so he touched his face, held his hand, and hugged him. The next day, Howoo rushed to Yool, bringing his book to share with him. When he opened the door, Howoo noticed that the doorknob was freezing cold. Just then, the icy wind came out from the door, and Howoo wondered what was happening. There, he saw Yool sitting quietly on his bed, looking very bad. Seeing that, Howoo rushed to him to give him a hug. While they hugged each other, Howoo genuinely wished for him to get better, so he squeezed him even more. Howoo then fell asleep as he was gripping Yool's clothes. The next day, the two kids were looking at the beach in a book and they made a promise that Yool promised not to forget. Just then, Nayeon entered the room, so Yool asked her if she had finished her work earlier. Howoo then rushed to his mom with enthusiasm on his face as he told his mom about the beach. Nayeon told Howoo that the beach was a dangerous place, making Howoo feel upset. Seeing that, Nayeon reluctantly agreed, and Howoo told Yool that his mom would come too. At that moment, Yool's eyes turned blue, and Howoo noticed that something was wrong with him. Yool suddenly dropped down, making Howoo rush to him. Yool's body was starting to freeze, and a surge of ice power emerged from his tiny body, freezing everything around him. Nayeon protected Howoo from Yool's power, but Howoo was left shocked upon seeing his mom freeze before his eyes. Yool tried reaching out to Howoo, but his power was out of control. Just then, Howoo's mom died instantly, leaving Howoo in a critical condition as well. Howoo went speechless after discovering the truth, and he watched his younger self slowly lose consciousness. Days later, Yool saw Howoo sadly counting in a corner, so he entered his room through the window. Hearing footsteps, Howoo looked at the person and saw Yool soaking wet with his purple eyes. Yool knelt down before Howoo, but Howoo clasped his clothes, asking him if he was still in pain. Hearing that, Yool felt guilty while Howoo admitted liking and hating him at the same time. Just then, Howoo released his grip and fell on the floor, making Yool ask for an apology. Yool scratched the floor and touched Howoo's face, recalling how Yool made him forget everything. Then he cuddled Howoo and he closed the door, which contained all of Howoo's memories. Not long after, Howoo fell deeply asleep, while Yool was crying as he watched him sleep. At the present, Howoo woke up seeing Yool holding a cup. Yool asked him if he was feeling dizzy, but Howoo gave him a strange look. The gigachad hunk offered him water, which he refused to accept. Howoo stood up and Yool looked at him as he was fuming in anger. The twink NPC grabbed Yool's clothes, so seeing him that way, the gigachad hunk kissed him. Howoo quickly pushed him away and he looked at him with disgust on his face before punching Yool, which he evaded easily. Howoo was fuming in anger, so he quickly went down the stairs, but Yool put a coat on him, telling him not to wander outside for too long. He was controlling his anger, so he slammed the door as he left. Just then, Howoo called Do-hyun, who seemed not willing to meet up with him. However, he heard someone ringing his doorbell, and it was Howoo who banged on his door so loudly. Hearing Howoo's voice, Do-hyun quickly stood up and walked towards the door. When Do-hyun opened the door, he saw him looking distraught, so Do-hyun let him go inside and gave him a towel. Howoo wondered if he should break up with Yool, and not long after, he decided to end things with Yool, considering they had not imprinted just yet. He felt useless as he was a mind control Esper who couldn't use his power. The twink NPC recalled the day when a monster attacked the city, thinking everything was staged by Yool. He then recalled the hallway in his memory, where he entered an open door, only to see his childhood memories with Yool. Howoo noticed that some of his memories were truly shiny, realizing his brain was selectively recalling his memories. Just then, Howoo decided not to check his other memories, because he would break up with Howoo anyway. Whether he looked at it or not, Howoo decided to break up with Yool already. However, Howoo decided to look at it anyway, and inside it he saw his 9-year-old self sitting on a swing. While he was feeling emo, Howoo saw a teenage Yool approaching him. He then picked up his bag and gave it to him. Yool asked him why he was crying, but Howoo denied it. In that afternoon, Howoo was pissed off by Yool, and he kicked a stone towards him. Yool was so persistent, but Howoo was not happy with his presence. It turned out that Howoo felt sad when he ate his lunch along with his female classmate. Howoo was ashamed to show his food because he was the only one with no packed lunch. Yool understood his emotion and apologized that he was a useless fairy. In that amusement park, the two engaged in a staring contest once again. Suddenly, Howoo asked Yool what he would do if he wanted to conquer the entire city. Yool bowed his head and told Howoo that he would make it happen for him. Hearing that, Howoo laughed at him, thinking he was just kidding around. Soon enough, Yool bid him farewell, and his memories continued to get blurry. Howoo went out from that door and he felt dizzy, so he touched his aching head and sat in the hallway. Meanwhile, Do-hyun knocked on his door, when suddenly an aggressive Howoo went out, shocking him in the process. Howoo became paranoid, asking Do-hyun if he was just fine, and only calmed down when he confirmed that he was just okay. Soon after, Do-hyun asked Howoo about the button he was holding, and explained that it was a magic button. While Do-hyun prepared to go to work, Howoo apologized, but he seemed to be only feeling sorry for barging in yesterday. Do-hyun then told him that he would charge him for his damaged door, but before he could even go, Howoo lay down, saying that the button was driving him crazy. He had no idea what Yool was thinking, and he wanted to put an end to it. Howoo considered Yool's action to delete his memory as an act of kindness, but he also could not deny the fact that he killed his mom even though he didn't mean it. Howoo was confused as hell when suddenly, Yool rang the doorbell. The twink NPC moved closer to check who it was, when suddenly, he heard Yool's voice. Howoo composed himself and thought of the magic button. Howoo wondered what he was doing there, so Yool answered him and told him that he would do anything he wanted him to do. Howoo then brought up Yool's promise, revealing he wanted them to break up. However, Yool disagreed to do so, and he even dared him to run away if he wanted to do so. Pissed off, Yool completely removed the door and tossed it away. The neighborhood was alerted by the noise, and Howoo was shocked that Yool did that. Howoo used his magic power to create heavy snow around the city, telling Yool that he would be waiting. Yool stood outside, and Howoo asked him if he was threatening him, shocked that Yool would stoop so low. The gigachad hunk denied it and told him to show what a real threat looked like. Yool swished his hand and took the magic button, telling Howoo to press it. He then revealed he was willing to wait, but he was not sure if the city could wait as well. Yool then grabbed his shoulder and pulled his neck and started kissing him that instant. The gigachad hunk asked him to go home, but even if Howoo went home with him, the snow did not stop anyway. Howoo was contemplating a lot because he knew he had to make a decision or things would get worse for everyone. Yool gave him two options: press the buttons or simply give up. Howoo assured him that he would still be his guide even if they were no longer dating. However, Yool still refused to stop his BS. At that moment, Howoo was contemplating pressing the button, so he laid it down and told him that he had decided. In that snowy weather, Howoo told Yool his decision and was ready to press the button. Yool then moved closer to him, so Howoo closed his eyes and pressed the button. Howoo was surprised that nothing happened, and he wondered what was about to happen. Suddenly, Howoo heard the city's emergency alarm and the protective barrier of the city was deactivated. That said, the monster started going to the city, and Howoo was left dumbfounded by what had just happened. As monsters entered the city, Howoo dropped to the floor, while Yool reminded him of their contract. Just then, Yool destroyed the button, and the two engaged in another staring contest. The gigachad hunk gave him the contract, which Howoo crumpled. However, Yool explained the content of the contract to him, so Howoo brought up that they had not imprinted yet, so the contract was void. At that moment, Yool explained to Howoo that he had already imprinted on him when he was younger, so the contract was valid. Howoo was not convinced, making Yool feel very sad. Meanwhile, the chaos continued to erupt around the city, and even Yool had no idea how much time they had left. Just then, Yool's phone rang, and when he checked it out, it was Se-seung-won, who was calling him. Yool showed his phone to Howoo, and he was shocked by what he saw. The gigachad hunk then destroyed the phone, and Howoo blamed himself for everything. Yool then moved closer to him and told him not to be scared because he was there for him, before gaslighting him that he could fix everything if he chose him. Howoo started crying, but Yool told him that no one would know that he pressed that button. The twink NPC looked at the button again, and Yool told him to let him live, and he would fix everything. They engaged in a staring contest, and Howoo gave in and hugged him so tight. A week later in the city, Howoo saw the casualties of what Yool had done. All Espers did their best to keep their city, but the shield being down for 30 minutes left the city chaotic. No one knew that Howoo was the one who deactivated the city barrier. Soon enough, he knocked at a door to see Se-seung-won, who had become badly injured in the incident. Howoo gave him some juice, and the two talked to each other and stayed a little silent. Se-seung-won broke the awkwardness by happily telling him he was feeling better, but still Howoo felt bad that he broke his leg in the incident. Trudeau and Se-seung-won was showing hopeful vibes, while Howoo was showing hopeless vibes. In that clinic, Se-seung-won told him that he felt relieved when he was not reachable that day, confusing Howoo in the process. Apparently, Se-seung-won was worried about him, explaining that unlike Yool, he was more vulnerable. Se-seung-won told Howoo that he became Yool's standard for how he should live his life, shocking him upon hearing it. Apparently, Yool used to be the coldest Esper they had ever known, who gave fear to every single one of them, but not anymore. Se-seung-won told Howoo to live a long and happy life, so Howoo felt bad about his decision. Howoo was still contemplating whether he would ever be happy, but he knew that he would stay with Yool until his last breath. Howoo then stood up, looked at his watch, and bid him farewell. Outside the clinic, Yool was standing there waiting for him. As usual, he felt so pissed to see him, but Yool had no plan of leaving him alone. Howoo walked away, and Yool followed him like he always did. When the twink NPC turned around, Yool was standing there like an innocent kid. Yool grabbed his waist, and they walked together. While Yool smiled genuinely, Howoo looked at him thinking he still managed to trap him in his prison. They then stopped walking and Yool opened the car door for him. Ho did not know what to say because deep down he knew that he still loved him, so he entered the car instead. The cleanup drive after the disaster was done and Howoo told Yool to get back to work. A few days had passed since the incident. The Espers worked together to fix everything in the city. Yool reluctantly did his duty while Howoo was supervising him. Howoo checked the online board and profiles of new Espers and guides appeared. Songwon was in charge of dealing with them, while Howoo simply stayed wherever Yool was. While Yool seemed not motivated to do his job, Howoo recalled his conversation with Songwon. Just then, Yool finished his work and Howoo asked if there would be a new addition to their team. Seon chimed in on their conversation and asked them how they had been. Yool had no energy for her, but Howoo happily talked to her. Howoo was then surprised when Seon told him that he had imprinted with her guide. The twink NPC then asked her if she did it with consent, which made her think that Yool did it to him without consent. Yool told her to cut the crap, so Seon opened up about assigning many guides to her team. In that office, Yool shared about a promise he made, making Howoo feel a little awkward while Seon was completely clueless about it. Seon then told Yoon-chan to come inside along with Gyeonwoo. After seeing a ring on Sidian's hand, Yoon-chan cried out of joy and confronted her about the imprinting she did recently. Yoon-chan asked her if it was true that once imprinting was done and Esper could no longer receive guiding from other guides, which she confirmed. After Yool watched them talk to each other, he explained why imprinting could improve guiding. Howoo was just listening to him when suddenly, Yoon-chan asked if there were other benefits from imprinting. Sidian then responded, explaining that there were actually more downsides than benefits, because imprinting was like a vow to stay with each other until their last breath. Hearing that, Yoon-chan contemplated, but Sidian also told him that she could feel her guide's emotion, which fascinated Yoon-chan even more. Those words hit hard with Yool as he recalled his past when he made his grave sin with Howoo. Howoo then shivered and Yool quickly stood up to comfort him. The twink NPC continued shivering but told Seon that he was just fine. The three were confused as hell, but Yool told them to mind their own business. Howoo looked at the three before contemplating that he could go anywhere in the city. But he felt like being caged by Yool and he acknowledged the fact that Yool was in control of everything. The twink NPC knew that if he went out of Yool's control, the people in the city would suffer. Yool then smiled at him and he touched his face, making Howoo blush. Not long after, the four went on their way, leaving Howoo alone inside. Howoo sat down and composed himself. A week ago, the Espers continued fighting the monsters that entered their city. Yool led the Espers in fighting the monsters, and Howoo was just watching from behind, looking at him with sad eyes. The gigachad hunk quickly went to him, giving his hand for guiding. When Howoo gave his hand, Yool quickly pulled him closer and hugged him. The monsters started approaching them, so Howoo asked him if they were friends with Yool. Howoo was shocked when Yool revealed that the slime-like monsters were the same kind as Yool. That said, the twink NPC asked him if he was responsible with the monster that attacked him before. Yool couldn't say a word, so he only hugged Howoo at that moment. Howoo asked Yool if everything would stop if he died. The gigachad hunk asked him if he wanted to die, wanting to know everything about him. Howoo felt scared at that moment, but he knew that no one else would die if he disappeared. Yool hugged him tighter, and the two of them were left alone in that area. He then told Howoo that if he wanted to die, he should tell him first and foremost, telling him that his final moment also belonged to him. The snow still raged on, and Howoo was looking at a tall building. He then talked to Songwon, who informed him about Yool's upcoming birthday, which happened to be on December 24. That said, Howoo went to a mall to buy something for him. While in the crowd, someone called Howoo's name, and when he turned around, he saw Yool standing before him. Yool then invited Howoo to go somewhere with him, taking him to an amusement park. The gigachad hunk held his hand in public, and Howoo wondered if there was a ride that he wanted to get on. Yool was not sure, so Howoo led him to a Viking ride, which surprised him in the process. The two then took their time, enjoying everything they wanted in that amusement park. After that, the two sat down, telling each other how happy they were at that moment. The amusement park gave a happy moment that would stay in their core memories. The next day, Hee-hun asked Howoo about his recent date and browsed through his phone, showing a photo to Howoo. Howoo revealed that the photos were found on Yool's fan page. Howoo got curious about it, but before he could, Yool held his hand, stopping him from doing so. Yool pleaded with Howoo not to be too close with Henver, but Howoo told him that she was just a friend. The Christmas tree was assembled and decorated by Howoo, who put his gift for Yool under it. While Howoo thought that it looked so lame, Yool arrived. Howoo, his eyes sparkled when he saw a Christmas tree decorated by Howoo, who felt awkward upon seeing him, thinking that the tree looked bad. Just then, Yool cried, shocking Howoo in the process, so he decided to greet Yool a happy birthday. That said, Yool ran towards him and gave him a hug. Later that day, a new team member named Namtae arrived as an addition to Team 1. In the bureau, Namtae started working with Yool when he saw that Howoo was reading the same novel. He then brought it up to Howoo, who was surprised that he had read it too. Songwon listened to the two of them as they exchanged thoughts about it. Howoo felt enthusiastic as he finally met someone who had the same interest. Songwon was not comfortable with what he was seeing because he knew that Yool was not having it. Namtae then leaned towards Howoo, and Howoo even moved closer to him. Just then, Yool slammed the pen on the table, not happy with the sight. Namtae was genuinely happy with their conversation, and Howoo felt the same way. Yool slammed his fist on the table and started emitting an ominous aura that Namtae felt. The gigachad hunk became a true menace, and Songwon suggested that he run. Namtae was confused as hell when Yool stood up, fuming in anger. He then approached the newbie, who was almost crying because Yool was giving him a deadly glare. Yool suddenly hit him, hitting the cabinet and causing him to lose consciousness. Seeing that, Howoo chimed in and stopped Yool from doing worse. The two argued, and Yool seemed not ready to let things slide. That said, Howoo became even more pissed off at Yool's immaturity, and he lashed out at him, shocking both Seungwon and Namtae in the process. The two then quickly found their way out of that place, when suddenly Howoo tapped Namtae's shoulder, asking him if he was just okay. Yool simply looked at them with a cold expression, scaring Namtae even more. Seungwon and Moon advised him to keep a distance from Howoo. Not long after, Namtae's shout reverberated inside the infirmary. Yool was looking at his wallpaper, feeling so sad depressed upon recalling how Howoo and Namtae engaged with each other. It had been a week since he lost it on Namtae, and how Howoo stopped coming home. Yool completely lost it, and his eyes showed how sleep-deprived he was. Outside, the weather was not giving, and Howoo continued to ignore Yool, who looked completely unwell. The gigachad hunk wondered what was running inside Howoo's head. He knew that they were not in a normal relationship, so he wanted their imprint to be perfect at least. Yool wondered if that was too much to ask, when suddenly Howoo and Namtae's moment flashed in his mind once again. Yool struggled to stand up, but he moved towards Howoo to apologize. Howoo looked at him and he noticed that Yool was staggering, so he rushed to him to catch him from falling. Moments later, Yool was taken to Haeyoung by Howoo. Yool then opened his eyes only to find Howoo fuming in anger. Haeyoung thought that Yool was such a psychopath, so he left the two alone. Howoo then confronted Yool for what he was doing to himself, so Yool asked him if his life mattered to him. Text off, Howoo smacked his mouth, causing it to bleed. Yool told Howoo that it hurt, so Howoo told him that he would get some ointment. However, Yool grabbed his hand, telling Howoo to treat his wound. He even suggested that Howoo lick it for fast healing, but Howoo only thought about how he left Yool for a week. That said, Howoo gave Yool a kiss to compensate for his shortcomings. The two then hugged each other, and Howoo told Yool to get some sleep, but he ended up staying to keep him company. The next morning, Howoo woke up first, with Yool peacefully sleeping beside him. In the lab research facility, Haeyoung completed his assessment, making Yool feel happy that he was back to normal. He then denied having insomnia, so Haeyoung wondered why he didn't sleep for a week. As usual, Yool kept it a secret and left Haeyoung alone in the lab testing unit. When he walked outside, Yool felt better but knew that his imprint with Howoo had weakened. After contemplating it, Yool saw the Team 1 members waiting for him outside. They grew closer to each other, and Yool saw them having fun when Howoo noticed him. Yool then genuinely smiled at him, and the two walked towards each other.